starts with the end of it all. We see a battlefield where everybody's dead. We see the hand of someone laying on the floor, nearly lifeless while holding a broken red gemstone. Fire and ash surround a young warrior, wearing a black outfit, a yellow headband and a red scarf. His face is covered in blood, with his forehead drenched in it while his mouth is leaking blood as well. During his dying moments, this warrior remembers how he was humanity's strongest warrior, and he begins to realize that he's dying too. He wonders to himself whether he even deserved to be called humanity's strongest warrior, how he almost killed all the 7-finned demons. However, when it turned out that in the steel of the ancient kings, there would be a final 8-finned demon, it took him by surprise, and he lost the battle. He tries to get up using all his strength, but memories of the 8-finned demon destroying all humanity on the battlefield haunts him. In that moment, a red flying demon floats down near him while he thinks about how it's all his fault this happened, because he failed to live up to his title of the strongest warrior of humanity. As his eyes begin to close for the final time, he can see the demon's hand reach out towards him. Before his life ends in utter darkness, he sees a spark of light as it begins to brighten, before an explosion of light covers his vision. In an instant, our hero wakes up amidst a group of young men all shouting the word salute. His eyes widen as he realizes he's in a completely different place, and he begins to question whether he's in a dream after dying. He looks around and realizes that it looks too realistic around him. He touches his face and begins to cry out in his mind, thinking about where his rugged face and well-built physique went. Who is he, and where is he? Those are the questions that overtake him, and the answer to that is simple. This is the Helios City, a huge wall of city covered by a surrounding wasteland. He seems to be inside some sort of a training facility, standing with the rest of the recruited cadets who aim to become warriors. A man with blonde hair and a blonde beard stands in front of the recruits, and he begins to address them all. He tells them that they must all understand what taking part in the warrior exam will signify for them. He explains that the word warrior signifies two things, protection and hope. This man's golden eyes seem to omit wisdom. He looks as if he's seen many battles. After all, he was Helios City's 3rd squadron leader, Jai Yaotang. He gives a rundown of what happened 60 years in the past, when the 6 enormous steels of the ancient king brought the apocalypse right to humanity's doorstep. He tells the legend, how thousands of demons poured into their world and slaughtered almost every human that they could find. However, despite being brought to near extinction, humanity persevered. The brutality of the demons taught humans how they must adapt if they want to keep being in this battle, so they came up with a new form of gear to battle them. They named it grafting equipment. This is a piece of tech they created by harvesting the internal cores of the demons, and afterwards they utilized by giving humans strength that would match that of the demons. Then came the strongest warrior of humanity, Aang. He was the king of all men, and he was in charge of all the warriors around the world. Aang and his army of warriors battled against the strongest demonic wave that the world had ever seen. It was a long battle, feeling almost endless as it lasted for many weeks, but as we know already, humans lost and humanity was plunged into darkness. Fortunately, humanity managed to strike the demons back enough to buy themselves 60 years of peace and progress. After hearing this, our protagonist realizes that it has been 60 years since his demise, and that he has been reincarnated into the future. The squadron leader continues talking about the losses that humanity suffered, including their strongest warrior, Aang. He recalls how Aang lost to the strongest of their enemies, the 7-finned demons. This was the war that showcased humanity's perseverance even in the darkest of hours. However, our protagonist has a strong internal reaction to hearing this, thinking how the strongest demon was not the 7-finned demons, but rather a single 8-finned demon that no one knew existed. He wondered how humanity still did not know the full extent of the enemy's capabilities. Meanwhile, the squadron leader is still going on about the war, and how it paved a new way for mankind, and finishes off by asking the recruits whether they know the meaning of being a warrior yet or not. The warriors scream in agreement, but he notices our protagonist being quiet and lost in thought. The squadron leader approaches the protagonist, towering over the little guy with his huge physique. He starts scolding him for not knowing what a true warrior is and asks him his name. The protagonist is flustered for a bit, wondering whether to tell the squadron leader that he's actually the incarnation of the history's strongest warrior, Aang. He questions whether anyone would even believe that he's Aang, due to the physical body he reincarnated into being weak and skinny. However, before he can answer, the squadron leader looks surprised as he notices that our protagonist has the same name as the legendary warrior on his badge. He insults him further, saying he's just a stupid boy who doesn't have a warrior's spirit, before grabbing his shoulder and punching him really hard in the face. Aang goes flying away, as he realizes that his new form is by far a huge downgrade to his original body, as it was unable to react to even a basic attack like that. The squadron leader begins to leave the room after telling Aang that he'll keep an eye on him during the warrior examination. He instructs all of the warrior examinees to head to the examination grounds for the physical fitness exam. One of Aang's comrades checks up on him, and Aang is just glad he's alive. The young man introduces himself to Aang and tells him his name is Lan Snow. Meanwhile, far in the room there's a female warrior examinee standing, who makes fun of Aang for having that name and being so frail. She comes closer and makes even more fun of him by saying that having the same name as the great hero Aang wouldn't make him as strong. This was Sidu Liu, another warrior looking to battle the demons on the open field. Aang is pissed at this behavior, wondering what his name has anything to do with her. Lan Snow tells him that she's the most promising warrior in the whole batch. They call Sidu Liu the unsmiling Rakshasa. Not to mention, she's also the firstborn child of the most notable martial arts family in Helios City. Aang begins to wonder why the name Sidu sounds familiar to him, while Lan Snow helps him get back up on his feet. While getting up, they notice a flash behind them. It's a girl with pink hair taking their picture, captioning it a dazzling display of brotherhood. Aang looks at the curvy young woman and asks her who she is. Meanwhile, Lan Snow is seemingly more interested in knowing if this was the person taking photos earlier. She introduces herself as Makoto, who interpreted Lan Snow helping Aang as a bit of a romantic thing. It didn't take long for the two to realize that this girl may not be the sharpest tool in the shed. The scene switches to the fitness test venue, and Aang seems to be having a lot of confidence now. He thinks that even though his body might be frail now, he is still the ultimate warrior nonetheless. He thinks that the test is going to go by quite easy, and that he can obtain monstrous grades. The first test is a long-distance run, an endurance test meant to examine stamina prowess. The race begins. Aang dashes as he is quite confident in his ability to run super fast. He thinks he will break a record. However, the only record he breaks is being the slowest person to reach the finish line ever. As it turns out, this body was in a much worse state than he had imagined. The second stage of the fitness test is about explosive arm strength, and he ends up spraining his wrist. In the third stage of the fitness test, he barely jumps 1 meter, for which he gets called an idiot by Sidu Liu. Not only did Aang place last on the fitness test, he ended up getting the worst results in history. He's disappointed, but Lan Snow is there to console him. While Makoto is disappointed that if Aang fails, she won't get to take more pictures of him and Lan Snow together. One of the invigilators converses with the squadron leader, asking him if Aang should be removed due to having horrible results. The squadron leader is a man of discipline, so even though he doesn't have any hope in Aang's abilities, he gives him the chance to participate in the second round of tests, knowing that it would probably be his final assessment. The second round of tests then starts, where each of the candidates are going to be tested for their synchronization with the grafting equipment. This makes Aang smile, because he knows that the augmented strength from the suits might be able to help him. He had the highest synchronization rate 60 years ago. So, even though he has an unfit body, he might be able to synchronize well due to his willpower. He is visibly determined to show his true prowess, as the warrior examinees are told to proceed into the testing venue. Aang feels a bit flustered looking at the new look of the grafting equipment after 60 years. The suit is much lighter than before, and looks much more comfortable. Meanwhile, on the stage we see Sidu Liu being examined for her synchronization with the grafting suit, and she gets a 39% synchronization rating. Everyone is shocked because of how high it is, admiring how she's from a martial arts family and how beautiful she is. Aang doesn't get the hype though, but Sidu Liu removes the connecting cord and walks off the stage, looking all dazzling as she leaves the room. However, looking at things from her perspective, we see how anxious she gets over her performance. She forces herself to calm down and keep her cool. Aang, on the other hand, is somewhat impressed by her prowess, thinking about how she got a 39% synchronization rate even on just the assessment. Lan Snow and Aang have a conversation about how they feel about Sidu Liu, with both showing appreciation of imposing force hidden beneath her slender body. Lan Snow notices that Aang isn't nervous at all about this second exam, and Aang tells him that he's used to it. That answer definitely surprises Lan Snow, but Aang stays quiet. As the tests go on, rookies are seen feeling intense pain as they are assessed for their synchronization rates with the grafting equipment. The demonic core has a big impact on the body, so there's a major burden that the body must endure at first, to reach that 10% synchronization rate to pass. However, a lot of the rookies were unable to withstand it, with some even giving up due to the pain. Still, both Lan Snow and the pink-hair girl Makoto end up passing, with Lan Snow reaching a 24% synchronization rate, and Makoto getting a surprising 30% synchronization rate, which no one expected. Squadron leader Yao Tang is happy that they've found some good rookies with actual potential. His assistant tells him that they indeed have better rookies compared to other C-rank cities, since this assessment alone has seen 6 rookies with over 30% synchronization already. They might be proud about having a good batch of rookies, but there's some bad eggs too, according to squadron leader Yao Tang. For example, a weakling like Aang. As Aang begins to walk up on stage, he starts noticing that everyone is looking at him, but that doesn't deter him from his goal. He's ready to show everyone his true capabilities. He walks up towards the stage and puts his hand on the strength core, a shining bright red gemstone like the one he clutched while he was dying in his previous life. It seems that demonic cores can be categorized into 6 variations. Red is what represents strength. Yellow represents defense. Green is for healing, and blue is for agility. However, the rarer two are purple and black. Purple represents imaginary power. Meanwhile, black represents time and space. Both of these are extremely hard to find, especially the black core. Aang reminds himself that the most important thing is willpower as he puts the core into his suit. He's ready to show the strength of his willpower, which determines how much pain the body can take from the demonic core while also showing off the user's mastery of it. They connect the cord to Aang's core, and a huge bright red spark fills the room, going so far that it even reaches the lounge. The selected rookies are surprised to see such a strong reaction from the demonic core, and to see Aang as its user. The synchronization rate ends up reaching 40% in an instant, and the number is still going higher. He can feel the pain of it all, but he's ready to show how strong his willpower truly is. He pushes himself further, forcing his body to its absolute limit. The number goes up to 60%, leaving the squadron leader in absolute disbelief, as he wonders whether there's been equipment malfunctioning of some sort in the calculating process. The number keeps climbing higher, from 70% to now 80%. Aang was in his element now. He was feeling the power pulsate through his body. But in an instant, it all shut down. He felt himself losing all of his power and being pushed back into a powerless abyss. The red core began to crack, and it just snapped. The core had broken, and the cord automatically ripped itself out. Aang fell to the floor, realizing that this body simply cannot withstand his true power. The number falls down to 10%, the exact synchronization rate that is needed to pass the test. The people who are assessing him come to the conclusion that the red core was malfunctioning, which increased the number to such a high degree before breaking. They all breathed a sigh of relief for some reason. Aang had barely passed though, according to the squadron leader's assistant. Everyone starts making fun of him in the testing venue, but Lan Snow quickly rushes to Aang so he can help his friend out. He asks his buddy if he's alright, and Aang is seemingly in a state of unconsciousness as he agrees. Sidu Liu is breathing a sigh of relief more than anyone else, glad that no one else is as dazzling as her in this whole examination facility. Aang is just glad that he managed to pass, which is all he needed. As Lan Snow takes him back to the lounge, Makoto doesn't miss a single chance to grab photos of the two guys together. Later in the lounge, Aang wonders to himself about what happened. He clearly had enough willpower to manage an 80% rating. But something came out from the depths of his heart that sucked all his power away. A demonic core of even the lowest level shouldn't have cracked like that, which dumbfounded Aang. The squadron leader comes into the lounge and congratulates everyone for passing the second round of assessments. Now, it was time for the final round, the practical tests. This would be the most difficult of all tests, as the rookies would have to battle against a real demon for the first time in their lives. This scares every single one of them, but most of all it's Aang, who thinks that he is going to die. They all leave the room, but the squadron leader notices something on the floor near the area where Aang was sitting. It's a small piece of a red core. This makes the squadron leader feel a bit more curious about Aang. There was something about his determination that truly captured the Yao Tang's attention. He now wondered what Aang would show him in the final test, named aptly as the hunting in the fog beyond the walls. Birds fly above Helios City, as its walls ensure its safety from the outside world that has been overtaken by demons. Not many are confident enough to step outside the comfort of these walls, but warriors are meant to take that leap of faith. The compound door had been opened, as our young rookies were to take a step outside for the first time in their lives. The compound door is slowly lifted upwards, letting the bright rays of the sun in. Aang wonders about how the humans have started to live inside such isolated places, while the rest of the rookies take in the outside air for the first time. He was given a new strength core for his grafting equipment. However, he still believes that it wasn't the core that was the problem. He can sense that something in his body rejected the power. He wondered if it was a side effect of the transmigration. But he has no time to worry about that right now, as he had to take this test head on. Aang takes his first step outside of the compound door and into the real world away from the comfort of the city. As soon as he took his first step outside, he felt a sharp shiver going through his body. Something got notified of his presence. It was like a radar, a notification for demonkind to know about Aang's presence in the world. We see a ripple effect as more demons begin to know about his existence, until it reaches a deep dark cave. There, a dark shadowy demon wonders how there could be a demon that can outrank him. At that moment, Aang could feel something deep inside his heart, a dark presence inside of him, as he felt the demons and saw them. He heard a voice behind him, asking him if he was going to move. It was Sidu Liu, seemingly annoyed by the protagonist for blocking her path. Lan Snow follows right behind her, and asks him if he's doing alright. He wants to answer Snow's question, but one of the instructors tells him to quickly gather up into a group. Since everyone else had already left, looks like these four will be part of the same team. Makoto asks Aang if he was aiming to form a team with them all along. He wants to clear up his intentions, but Sidu Liu cuts him off and tells him to not bring the team down if he's going to be a part of it. She then has an internal conversation with herself about how she was worried that no one would want to team up with her. Snow encourages Aang and says that they must do their best in this training, while Makoto takes a selfie of her newfound team as they walk away. We see one of the steels of the ancient kings, the Dispelling Steel. This black steel made of solid stone texture contains a special substance within it, which is used to dispel the fog. The instructor then tells the squads that they must take on the final assessment in groups of 4, where they will hunt in the fog. The teams then receive a hunting dagger to kill demons. They also received a small device with which they can dispel the fog, made out of the dispelling steel. The assignment is quite simple. The teams would have to make their way to the designated locations that have been marked with flashing lights and insert the device in the flashing lights to dispel the fog. Once that is complete, they must hunt down as many finless demons as possible. The assessment will be based on both individual strength and team cooperation. This final trial is the most terrifying one of all. They wouldn't just need good physique and fighting skill, but rather the mental fortitude to overcome tricky situations and challenges that are ahead of them. They would also need to learn how to work together as a team, because that would be their only way of surviving this test with the best grades. They would to scan the area properly, then fight demons that first appear to earn the title of warrior. The exam was going in full force, and up at the top of the wall, a woman with a gorgeous body and attractive face was looking down at them. She speaks about the batch of rookies being quite promising, but her current target is none other than Sidu Liu, due to her family name. This is none other than 2nd Squadron Leader Dada Gel. She asks the 2 men next to her on what they think. The 1st Squadron Leader Joel is also interested in seeing Sidu Liu's growth. However, the 3rd Squadron Leader Yao Tang is still curious about Aang, as he mentions him to his comrades. He proposes that Aang is worth watching out for. You see, Yao Tang had sent the red core that Aang used during the synchronization exam for testing. It turns out that there was nothing wrong with that core. It left him wondering what had happened, but Gel cuts him off by calling him a funny name, which annoys Squadron Leader Yao Tang. Anyways, Dada starts asking whether the demons were graded properly, because she wishes to ensure the safety of the rookies first and foremost. Yao Tang tells her that they've consistently checked over and over around the vicinity, and only no fin demons were found around Helios City. Joel reminds them that if a one-fin demon does appear out of nowhere, they must ensure that they protect the rookies at any cost. After all, they are the future of humanity. It is now the turn of our heroes group to finally undertake the practical exam. The team of Aang, Snow, Makoto, and Sidu Liu are seemingly prepared for it. Aang is ready with the dispelling device in his hand, but Sidu grabs it from him and starts running, telling the rest to follow her. Aang is a bit annoyed at her attention-seeking, but he does as she says and tells the rest to follow her too. They run through the fog, prepared for the dangers that they might be subjected to. They could see the flashing light, which was their destination. They run hard and fast, but Sidu Liu is someone who enjoys showing off. Once they are near their destination, she leaps high up into the air and does a backflip, landing on her feet and planting the dispelling device into the objective. Dada is pleasantly surprised by Sidu Liu, stating that even though she has a green recovery core, she has a huge amount of stamina. Without her realizing, a group of demons begins to rush towards her. However, the squad is right behind her, as Aang tells Snow to use his defense core and break through their attacks. Snow leaps into the air this time, and lands right near the demons. His landing sends a shockwave that sends the demons flying into the air and blocks the battlefield with his shield bubble. This impresses Squadron Leader Yao Tang, who is amazed at Snow's ability to use his core powers already. Aang does a flourish of his dagger and tells Liu and Suju to kill a demon each. The girls were already prepared and need no instructions. All 3 of them rush towards a demon separately and begin their fights with them. From this point, we see the fights in 3 pieces. The first round shows us Makoto versus a finless demon. The demon seems to be fast, but using her agility core, the girl dodges the attacks thrown towards her. She somehow manages to get atop the demon and kicks it so hard that it flies down towards the ground, where Snow is ready to punch it in the guts. The demon gets rocketed several meters back, killing it on the impact. Up on the wall, Squadron Leader Joel is admiring their teamwork, and he remarks on how the agility core has improved the girl's movements by tenfold. But it seems like her agility wasn't the only thing he was looking at, and Yao Tang was the first to reprimand him for his pervertedness. The second fight is between Sidu Liu and a larger demon. It's not a big deal for her though, as she simply jumps onto the demon and stabs it with her dagger. Her dagger begins to fill the demon's body with explosive energy, giving it large bulbous calluses while it shrieks in pain. She then jumps off of the demon, lands on her feet and simply says boom. The green explosive energy inside of the demon explodes, completely decimating the monster. The third fight is between Aang and a fighter demon. Unlike the others, Aang has a strategy in this fight, which is to strike the 3 vital points of a demon. He would first strike the neck, causing a massive injury to its breathing. Then the chest, which houses some of the most important organs in the body. Lastly, he would cut the demon's abdomen, causing it to bleed out. He would quickly take this demon out within a few hits. He tries to execute those hits, but he failed to finish off the demon, due to the frail human body he's having to handle. Since there isn't a lot of power this body can draw from the core, he decides to use this battle to test his limits. He rushes towards the demon with every ounce of his being, wanting to truly put his body to the limit. The demon reacts to this move by furiously throwing an unexpected punch aimed right at Aang's head. Aang is surprised, but he reacts quickly to dodge the right hook. He pushes his knife to stab the demon's ribs, but the demon knew his game plan. Aang only got a tiny cut into the demon's rib when he realized right away that he didn't respond to the attack fast enough. The demon brings its leg forward and tries to kick him, but Aang safely moves underneath it to dodge once again with the grace of a warrior. He then uses this opportunity and flings the knife into his other hand while staring directly into the demon's soul with his terrifying stare. He pokes again, this time aiming at the demon's gut and successfully managing to cut it once again, but his hand-eye coordination was too weak for it to be a destructive blow, despite being fatal. The demon's mouth drips green blood, signaling that it was bleeding internally. In an act of desperation, the demon throws its whole body towards Aang. However, it only gets cut up even further. Then, Aang uses his body weight to make the demon trip. While it falls face first on the ground, Aang maneuvers himself to slash at its mouth. The demon falls to the floor as Aang lands on his feet. Lan Snow, Makoto, and Sidu Liu are watching him show off his skill, flipping his knife around. Lan Snow notices that Aang seems to be toying with the demon, while Makoto is too busy taking pictures and Sidu Liu is preoccupied feeling insecure about Aang's skill. Aang's skillful antics catch the attention of the squadron leaders, especially Dada Gel, who asks about him from her comrades, stating that he is impressive. The first squadron leader, Joel, notices that Aang is moving like a veteran, someone who has had experience in this line of work. Squadron leader Jai Yaotang is simply looking, unsure of what to think of this young, scrawny kid. The monster stays on all fours, bleeding as its whole body is cut up by Aang's poking and stabbing. Aang is bent over, holding his knees and taking a breather. He comes to the conclusion that his new form is weak. He knows that he cannot use any of his older skills, and he runs out of breath quite fast. He's done testing himself at this point, so he decides that it was time to put an end to the demon. He rushes towards it, with an intention of executing the monster right then and there. Suddenly, he hears a voice whispering the word, "Emerge." The ground strikes open. Right in front of Aang's eyes, a pink fang-shaped root protrudes from within the ground. It stabs through the demon's chest as a pool of roots come flowing out of it. Siuju notices that they've been encircled by roots, as there seems to now be a powerful entity among them. A hand rips through the demon's back. Then, another hand comes out of it, as each hand grabs one side. In a flash, the demon is ripped into two, as another creature walks out of its entrails. Aang is terrified. A look of confusion, question, and terror take over his face. This xenomorph-looking entity has no eyes, a bony face and large teeth. It pulls its head out of the back of the dead demon and lets out a loud roar. The squadron leaders chilling above the walls notice the commotion as signals are sent to them through a colorful smoke. The smoke travels to three of them atop the wall, and it affects Jai Yaotang the most. His face is filled with fear as he realizes that this wasn't just a regular demon case, but rather something much more terrifying. This was a one-fin demon, and there were students stuck around it. The other students are running away from the roots, panicking and yelling for their lives, begging to be saved. Joel and Dada Gel both jump off of the wall in an effort to fend off the threat themselves in this situation. Loud gusts of wind, smoke and dust take precedence over the whole location, as Dada Gel and Joel are both running at the fastest speed possible to help the rookies. They find the rookies running away, and Dada tells them to head to Jai Yaotang, who will escort them to the city. The one-fin demon finally steps onto the ground and notices that he's surrounded by humans. But he states that he smelled a demon. Aang is confused by this. He wonders how this could be. How could a human smell like a demon? The demon scans them all, looking at each one intently and wondering which one of them is what he was looking for. It starts to walk towards them slowly, looking at as menacing as you'd expect. Sidu wonders if that's a one-fin demon. She realizes that it looks nothing like the others. Fear begins to take hold of her mind, as she begins to imagine herself getting destroyed by the roots and unable to resist the pressure. The demon walks to where Aang stands, who is sure that his current body could not take on this monster. Aang is sweating from nervousness. He's realizing that this is how normal warriors must feel when they face a fin demon. The demon reaches its hand out to Aang. 4 balls of light begin to emerge out of its fingers, as it states that it will bring them all. A white laser beam comes out of its hand and attaches itself right to their forehead. They seem almost hypnotized, completely paralyzed of all their bodily movements. They fall to the ground and pass out. The demon is ready to take them all. However, it notices a crack in the root structure and is taken aback. Bursting through the crack in the root come our heroes, Joel and Dada. Joel screams at the demon, telling it not to touch the rookies. The demon simply responds by throwing even more roots towards them to block their path. It says bye, and the ground beneath it begins to sink. The demon smirks as it says goodbye again, covered by roots. A huge hole in the ground forms and it falls into it along with the rookies. Dada and Joel are just stumped, shocked to realize that it just took 4 examinees with it. The hole in the ground is vast and deep, surrounded by large tree trunks. They notice that next to the hole in the ground, cracks are beginning to emerge, almost as if they were a trail leading to the one-fin demon's location. Joel decides that they must go after it anyhow. In the middle of a forest, surrounded by cliffs and large trees that block the lighting, we see Dada and Joel staring at the trail that was potentially leading them to the one from the demon. Dada is confused. Despite Jai Yaotang's multiple checking and examinations of the arena, a one-fin demon appeared in this place. It just seemed impossible. She knew how careful and cautious he was, which made this even more mysterious. They didn't know what the protocol was, and something like this had never happened before. Suddenly, Joel can hear his name being called out from above, as we see squadron leader Jai Yaotang jumping into the scene. He lands on the ground, and immediately asks about the kids who were taken. He scolds the two for stopping, and says that they should keep chasing them. Joel tells him to calm down, and mentions how the tracks had stopped here. Dada says that the one-fin demon probably started digging underground once it got to this point, and says the area up ahead is uncharted territory, so it would be unwise to rush in. Jai Yaotang is obviously very shaken about this, blaming himself and feeling a sense of guilt. He thinks about a past memory, a traumatic event that shaped his personality. Someone dear to him was taken from him by demons, and he has never let go of that. He rages and punches the ground, breaking it apart into many pieces. He blames himself, saying that it was his mistake to not check properly. Joel and Dada are staring at their comrade, as he blames himself for things that weren't in his control. Joel says that they should head back to the city so they can stop some of the panic. Dada mentions how all three of them cannot be away from the city, and that they should send an exploration party to check the surrounding areas for clues and other one-fin demons. She attempts to help her comrade by putting her hand on his shoulder and telling him that none of them wanted this to happen, but they must keep their composure. He pushes her hand away and tells them both to head back first so that he can search for a bit longer. Joel is a bit annoyed at first, and he almost yells at his friend. However, he's cut off by Dada, who just tells Yaotang to return before sunset. He looks back at her and says that he knows. He runs away into the forest, trying his best to pick up the trail again. Dada talks to Joel, saying that he wasn't going to listen to them anyways. Joel acknowledges this. He knows that Jai Yaotang hasn't been the same ever since his little brother was dragged away by a demon in the past. Dada's melancholic eyes note that if Jai Yaotang's younger brother were alive, he'd be the same age as the examinees. She knows that the children reminded him of his younger brother. Deep underground, inside of a cavern-like structure, Aang wakes up. He opens his eyes and looks at his comrades, questioning where they are and assuming that they're underground. His comrades are around him, but they're also tied to pillars just like him. He can feel breathing directly behind him as the creature has its mouth opened, asking Aang if he's woken up. Aang looks back quickly. He notices that he's able to understand the words of the one-fin demon. The demon acknowledges that Aang is different because he woke up so much quicker than the others. It's fascinated by our hero, and Aang has no idea what to expect in this situation. Suddenly, he feels the demon's hand grab his face. The wooden pole that he's attached to breaks when the demon grabs him. With its hand on Aang's throat, it asks him why he smells like a demon. It wonders why a human would smell stronger than a one-fin demon. Aang's bleeding from his face, confusingly asking what the demon is trying to say. Suddenly, the crystal inside of Aang's suit surges a blast of red energy and sends the demon flying back. Aang lands on the ground with his knife in his hand. He rushes towards the demon, ready to strike a killing blow that would end its misery. The demon decides to clap back as it strikes with its sharp claws. Aang dodges the attack, doing a backflip to safety. He was now locked in a fight with the demon, as he thinks about how easily he could have destroyed the demon if he was in his original body. The responsibility of saving his friends, it lingered over his mind. So, he decided to send it and rushed at the demon once again. He notices that this is a red-cored demon, owning an agile body and flexible joints. It can react quickly to any attacks and respond just as fast. However, its joints are vulnerable to attacks as well. The demon stares at Aang, telling him his efforts are futile as he runs towards it. As Aang is rushing, the demon quickly attacks with its sharp and long claws. It pierces through Aang's chest, and for a moment, it looks as though Aang will not survive this demon's powerful stab. Thankfully, the demon only managed to strike him in the shoulder and pierce through his body. However, Aang knew that this would happen, and it was his only moment to find a weakness. With its claws impaled into his shoulder, its joints were now vulnerable to an attack. Aang strikes right into its shoulder joint, stabbing through it with his knife. He pulls at it with utmost ferocity. This power move results in our hero tearing out the demon's arm. It squeals in pain as its arm has just been dismembered. Aang smiles. He knows that he has an upper hand in this battle now. He's killed one-fin demons before, and this shouldn't be an issue for him. However, the demon simply chuckles before it strikes again, and this time punches Aang right through the chest. The hit is so massive, it makes him bleed from the mouth. Aang goes flying across the room until he hits the wall, causing a small crater to form around him. He lays on the ground, with his chest bleeding and his body on the brink of unconsciousness. The creature talks about how even if Aang knew its weakness, it's a wood-type demon with a red wood core. If there's one thing that our hero didn't know, it's that it can heal itself. Aang is shocked. He only knew that green-cored demons could heal themselves, and he did not know what a wood-type meant. Terror takes over his face as he realizes that perhaps after a century, the demons have also evolved. The demon stares at our hero and gestures him to come forward with its finger. Roots began to protrude from the wall, impaling our hero's body, puncturing through his organs, and sending Aang back into the demon's hands. The demon held him by the head as our hero glared at it. The demon doesn't understand what Aang is, and decides to just let him die. Aang is now on the verge of death. The pain is too much for him to even breathe. He can't believe he's about to die like this after being reincarnated. He thinks about his comrades, wondering how he has failed them as they will also die. He knows too well how it feels to have comrades die. He had seen it in his previous life. He apologizes as he's ready to breathe his last breath. However, a voice from within him states that it cannot accept this. The one-fin demon inspects the body and notices that Aang is dead. The demon wonders if it eats Aang, will it evolve? So, it decides to eat Aang. Just as it's about to put its gnarly jaws upon his face, something happens. Something awakens inside of our hero, and it's the spirit of a powerful demon. His body surges with such powerful energy that it sends the demon flying back. The voice speaks to our hero, talking about how he cannot die or its plans will go to waste. The crystal laced into his suit begins to awaken. The voice inside of him wonders how its last sliver of consciousness is being used like this. The one-fin demon senses the presence of this terrifying force within Aang. A blast of powerful energy begins to emanate from our hero, and the one-fin demon makes assumptions on how it could be a 5-finned or a 6-fin demon. Aang begins to float out of sheer power as the voice within him laughs at the fact that the demon thinks it's such a weakling. His body begins to transform, his feet and arms turn red, and claws began to pop out where his fingernails were. His body turns into that of a demon, a powerful red demon with silver hair and horns that would terrify anyone. Suddenly, from within Aang's body, an explosion of powerful energy surges through the ceiling, tearing through it and lighting the entire room red. The blast is so powerful that it can even be seen on the surface. The effects are so strong that they are affecting other demons, tearing them to shreds and absolutely disintegrating them. The whole area has felt the impact of this explosion. Right at the core of it was Aang, his body now transformed, with a powerful demonic energy surrounding it. This new form of Aang began to talk to the one-fin demon. It mentions that it is the only 8-fin demon in the world, the Crimson Crystal's strongest existence. It is the king of all demons. The one-fin demon begins to have a nervous breakdown as it realizes who it is up against. Aang commands it to kneel, and the demon falls onto its knees. Aang once again commands it to speak his name. The demon states in its nervous and broken voice, the Crimson Fin King. We see the terrifying yet majestic form that our hero had now taken. He was the demon above all demons. As the 3rd Squadron leader searched for the missing examinees, he patrolled the area as a strong gust of wind came his way. The gust of wind was so strong that it almost pushed him off his feet. He grabbed onto the ground and made sure that he didn't lose his footing. He suddenly saw a green dragon-like demon, and he rushed past it. He landed right next to it, and in a fit of rage he decided to attack it. He punches the demon so hard that his arm impales it and blows up its internal organs. Another demon attacks him as he does this, and he dodges the attack. He reacts with a kick that breaks the demon's jaw. He then slams the demon into the ground and puts his foot through its neck. After killing these demons, the squadron leader realizes that he's finished patrolling the area. There were only 2-fin demons in this area, and the kids were just not here. He has a worry on his face, as he knows that he must continue looking for them. He looks up into the sky, thinking about his brother, as he knows that he must find the examinees before nightfall or they could lose them forever. Suddenly, he sees the explosion behind him. The explosion caused by Aang's transformation, and a red beam of crimson energy surging towards the sky. The explosion and its shockwave took the area by storm. It was an energy wave so big that it crumbled the buildings, the ground, and even the monsters that were in its vicinity. The squadron leader protected his face and his eyes while wondering what this energy wave was. He looked towards the direction of where it came from and wondered if the kids were there. Meanwhile, in the underground bunker where the one-fin demon had taken the examinees, we see total domination. Aang in his newfound form as the Crimson Fin King flies down to the ground and lands next to the one-fin demon. The demon is kneeling, its head and arms on the ground, as it calls Aang its king. The Crimson King wonders how he didn't think that the sky would be this dark even after his return. He asks the one-fin demon a question and commands it to answer. He asks it that ever since he vanished, are the demon lords still those 5? The one-fin demon answers in agreement, stating that the demon lords are the same, with no change in their positions. The king comments on how they're seemingly living quite peacefully with each other, which, strangely enough, makes him burst out with laughter. He assumes that they've forgotten about what they did to him 60 years ago. He is disappointed in the body he chose. He selected this body because it belonged to humanity's strongest soldier, but he didn't expect that it would be so weak after reincarnation. Furthermore, he is disappointed in the fact that his last consciousness has been wasted in a situation like this. He needs to make this human awaken completely so that he can make his appearance once more. He's angry at the fact that Aang is so weak. It feels to him as though his patience is being tested. He has to now wait for Aang to slowly awaken and understand the concept of the Fin memories. The Lesser Demon asks his king whether he meant the memories that they use when evolving. The Crimson King talked about how fins show prominently on their bodies, and the more they have, the higher their strength and level is. He talks about how the leader of the Dark Clan grew new fins, and demonic evolution requires those fin memories. He states that this is why demons are ahead of the other races, and how the human warrior called Aang is currently just like all of the other fin demons. The distinction between them is that a regular demon requires devouring someone of the same kind to evolve, whereas Aang just needs to devour demons of higher level than him. This is how he will acquire the Fin memories and evolve into a higher being. The Crimson King glances at the one Fin demon and marks him as a present for Aang. The demon begins to plead for its life, saying that it will support and do anything that the Crimson King requires. He begs that he will help him awaken. The Crimson King points towards it and grabs it with telekinesis. He stares into the lesser demon's soul and states that it's not worthy of any of that. He points his finger upwards, destroying the demon and readying him for consumption. The Crimson King only sees the demon's worth as an aid for the human warrior to awaken his first Fin memory. He addresses our hero, saying that it has prepared the first step for him. He then commands Aang not to disappoint him when he levels up in the future. And finally, he begins to leave Aang's body, asking him to awaken step by step until he reaches the 8th Fin stage. The Crimson King will wait in his slumber until then, and only when Aang fulfills his promise will the Crimson King awaken once more. Aang falls onto the floor, kneeling as the crimson crystal in his chest begins to glimmer. The Crimson King begins to vanish, and so does Aang's human form until we see him wake up in his original body. He lays there on the battlefield, next to one of his comrades who refers to him as his king. The soldier doesn't want to die, saying that someone is waiting for him to return. Aang reaches his hand out to him, promising him that he won't die. He promises the soldier that he will help everyone survive. He grabs his fellow soldier's hand, as both of them are taking some of their last breaths. The soldier's soul leaves his body as he tells Aang that they've all already died. He sees a deformed and mutilated face of his comrade from the previous life, as it asks him why he's still alive, despite everyone else being already dead. Thankfully, this was just a nightmare. Aang wakes up in a bed in his scrawny young boy body. He holds his head, glad that it was only a dream. However, that relaxation quickly dies when he realizes that it was a memory that took a more gruesome form. He hears Lan Snow's voice call out to him as he removes the curtain and enters the room. His squad has come to pay him a visit. Sidu Liu, Lan Snow, and Makoto, they're all glad to see him awake. Makoto leans in close to his face, staring at him. Her big sparkly eyes stare into his soul as she asks him why his hair looks different. She wonders if the demon was the cause of that. He doesn't know what she's talking about and is overly conscious of how close she is to his face. He then asks if all of them are okay, and they say that they're fine. He asks them if they remember how they were taken to the demon's underground cave. Behind one of the curtains stands squadron leader Jai Ya Tang, who notes that Aang remembers something. As the curtain is pulled away, we see not only Jai Ya Tang, Joel and Dada are there too, and they demand to know everything that happened in that cave. Now, as Aang lay there on the hospital bed, he had to answer for everything he had experienced before losing consciousness. The 3rd squadron leader questioned him about what happened in the cave, and everyone wanted to know what had happened. Aang noticed that the other 2 captains were present here. These were probably captains stationed outside of the city walls. He questioned why Captain Jai Yao Tang was there. The 2nd squadron leader, who we're going to just name Jessica Rabbit, jumps into the conversation and says that her precious Tang Tang was the one that brought them all back safely after the chaos. Tang Tang doesn't like being called that, and he tells Jessica Rabbit about it, but she just teases him more. The squad is looking at it feeling all weird. The 1st squadron leader, who is the epitome of the good-looking tired of his life guy, says that they were found outside a cave. He tells them how they were all unconscious and just laying there helplessly on the ground. He was glad that the one Fin demon wasn't anywhere near them, otherwise they would have been dead, according to him. Jessica Rabbit tells him that the other 3 in his team woke up pretty fast, and the only one that was in a coma and also had significant changes to their hair, eyes, and body was Aang. Aang stares at his face in the mirror. He can sense the mark of the Crimson King upon his face, but he doesn't know yet. Meanwhile, Jessica Rabbit starts pushing him to tell them everything he remembers. He can't focus though. He wonders what happened to his hair. He feels completely unrecognizable to even himself. He doesn't remember anything that happened in the cave, aside from trying his best to fight that demon. After he was almost killed by that tree demon and went unconscious, he had no recollection of what happened. For a moment, he questioned whether he should come clean about everything. Should they know that he had been reincarnated? It didn't make sense. If they knew, it would turn into a whole big thing. And they won't even believe him because he has no recollection of what even happened to him. He had to use his identity as this new version of Aang to make his move and clarify everything. Aang tells them an elaborate story, saying that he briefly woke up and saw that he was in a cave, after which he passed out again. He says that's why he knew that there was a cave, but he knows nothing else, only waking up again right now at this hospital. Tang Tang does not believe him, but he questions himself too. Maybe he was overthinking this whole thing. Maybe Aang wasn't a sussy baka like he thought. Yet there was one loose thread, the blood splatter on the wall in that cave. No mere mortal could have caused that. Whatever happened in that cave had Tang Tang feeling like a detective wanting to get to the very deepest tunnel of this case. The emo boy rolls in next to our hero on his moving stool, asking him if his name was actually Aang. He notes that our hero shares the name with the legendary warrior Aang, and judging from his results on the different tests, he can sense that while Aang's foundation might be weak, he's too calm and composed when fighting demons. He looks Aang straight into the eyes and asks him if he's fought a demon before. Aang goes completely defensive, saying that he just has an interest in fighting and that he gathers details and analyzes all the different kinds of demons for their weaknesses. Jessica Rabbit notes that he's the theory type and asks Tang Tang to cultivate a warrior like Aang. The phrase, cultivating a warrior, quickly reminds our hero of the tests, and he inquires everyone about his results. Makoto tells him that he passed his warrior test splendidly and that they are still part of a team as well. Snow tells him that the accident was considered fate, so the captain made them a team. Makoto is excited to keep working with Aang, but Sidu Liu is quiet because she's not the center of attention anymore. Of course, when she does open her mouth, she tells him that they're already behind the other teams. Aang wonders why that's the case. How could they have fallen behind if they survived such a hardcore demon? Tang Tang chips into the conversation, saying that every team needs to pass so they can do missions and gather points. Since he'd been unconscious for 3 whole days, their team has 0 points. Our hero screams out loud. He couldn't believe that he had been unconscious in a coma for 3 whole days. The squad begins to ready up. They gather their gear and put on their battle suits, ready to get back to work and make up for the days that they had spent resting. The crowd is spectating. They were awed as they looked at these young warriors ready to embark on their journey, suited up for battle. Their captain was standing in front of them, and he told them that he would explain all of the rules to them. Firstly, he congratulated all 4 of them on officially becoming warriors. Not to mention, he also congratulated them for being safe and sound after facing a one-fin demon. No, he stated that they have been grouped together as a team under his care, which means that squadron leader Jai Yao Tang was now the captain of their team, the captain of their ship, the butter to their toast, the ice to their drink. Anyways, he mentions that he's currently in charge of 9 teams, and he wants this group to stand out among them. The imposter, Aang, asks the captain what it means to stand out from the rest in this case. He wondered why the rules to becoming a warrior had become so complicated. Before, in his day and age, as soon as you became a warrior, you were sent to the battlefield so you can make a name for yourself as a demon killer. Lan Snow asks Aang if he knows about the small team point ranking system, which our boy surely doesn't. Sidu Liu was just as annoyed as ever, calling him a newbie who doesn't know anything, while thinking that he's going to drag her down. It turns out, they were currently the lowest ranking team. Tang Tang mentions that the reason for this system being created was so that they can stimulate healthy competition using the point ranking system. This would help in improving all the warriors under each captain's charge. Tang Tang further elaborates, stating that since he has 9 teams under his charge, they would be competing with 8 other teams. They could obtain points by completing missions of varying levels, and the more points they score, the higher their ranking would end up being. At the end of every month, the teams with the most points, along with 6 small teams and the subordinates of the captains in charge, will enter a small competition, and the first place team will receive a reward. Of course, since it's a ranking system, each team on the lowest place will be punished. They'll essentially be demoted to the cleaning crew, and would have to wait a whole month for the next batch of last place teams to arrive. Aang thinks about how convenient that is, thinking about how the streets are so clean because of that ranking system being in place. Tang Tang finishes his speech by saying that these are the rules for becoming a proper warrior. Since the demons keep evolving, the warriors must learn to adapt without relaxation. He appoints Sidu Liu as the team leader because she has the highest points in the test. I gotta take a break here and admire the phenomenal art in place. Lan Snow has no objections, neither does Makoto. Meanwhile, Aang is boiling like a zit with jealousy, remembering that he used to be the strongest warrior of humanity and wishing that he would have been chosen as the leader. Sidu walks up front, to bow her head and take responsibility as the leader. She states that they will complete their mission, while bursting from happiness on the inside because she was chosen as the leader. Tang Tang tells them that since it's still afternoon, they should go and decide what kind of mission their team will take. He also suggests them to look at the points from all the other small teams, just so they're more aware of the shit show they were in. He also reminds them that they will have to accustom their nano wing battle suits in actual combat, so if there are any problems, they should let him know. He dismisses the squad and walks away, wishing them good luck as they salute him and show their respect. Sidu immediately takes charge and tells them that they should go look at the mission board, talking about how they're 3 days behind. However, the team is going in the exact opposite direction. Makoto tells her to wait, since they have something much more important to do first. This sends Sidu in a frenzy of confusion. She panics and wonders if she's made a wrong decision 3 seconds after she was made the leader. Turns out, God bless this art, Makoto's priority was to take an official first photo of them as a proper team. Sidu was annoyed, but she can't fight the majority anyways. Meanwhile, Aang is wondering about the small teams and thinking about the situation. At the end, he comes to the conclusion that this might not be that bad after all. Their first official photo as a team is taken, and it's a splendid portrait if I may say so myself. Scene switches to the 3 team captains as they hang out on a balcony diving deeper into the situation at the cave. Tang talks about how there were signs of an unknown demon's blood splattered everywhere inside the cave as the emo boy lights up a smoke. He asks Tang if he's implying that one of those 4 kids could manage something as big as that. Tang comes clear about how he was feeling quite sussy about Aang. You see, he had a nose for this kind of thing, and his nose felt incredibly sensitive from our hero. He could sense a familiar yet unknown stink from the MC, and it was a feeling that wouldn't let up. Jessica Rabbit jumps on Tang's back, teasing him about how he's overthinking things again. As she's riding the buff Tang, she mentions that their small team looks quite strong and tells him to take care of them so he won't lose to her teams, but Tang was being serious. The emo boy takes another puff of his cigarette, listening to this conversation nonchalantly. He tells Tang to keep an eye on them, specifically on Aang. If there was anything suspicious about him that he can find and prove, then he should tell the other 2. Otherwise, he should put his doubts to rest because he was probably overthinking it. Our hero stares at the city center's mission board, looking through the remaining missions available for them to take. It turns out there were only high-ranked missions available, and they could earn 10 points for each of these. Lan Snow jumps in, telling him that these missions were the most difficult ones in terms of level. Makoto theorizes that these are the only ones left because no one else picked them, and because they are the most difficult. Sidu was staring at the board, not really saying anything, but thinking quietly, contemplating. Lan Snow talks about how B-ranked missions have 6 points, meanwhile C-ranked missions only have 3 points each, which makes the higher-ranked missions most attractive. However, the lower ranks were much more safe and secure, while the highest rank was always going to end with severe casualties. Aang understands. He's no idiot. He understands danger when he sees it. As Aang starts talking about what they should do, Sidu walks up ahead of him towards the board. She immediately grabs all 3 pieces of paper with the mission instructions on them, as Aang finishes saying that they should take on all of them, in perfect synchronization with their team leader, Sidu. After the deliberately slow few moments, it's time for some kick-ass action. We see our heroes running through some rocky terrain. It seems that they are outside the city walls and heading towards their mission objective. As they're running, our hero decides to tap the red stone on his chest and his suit to activate the nano wing suit abilities. Immediately, it starts to do something as his suit starts to glow yellow and the stone begins to empower it. Sharp claws begin to emerge from his back as he's surprised to see the power of the nanotechnology. Soon, those claws turned into wings which give him a boost in his running speed. He quickly moves ahead of the rest, running straight towards a gigantic rock. In a flash, he carves through the rock in one smashing sprint. He stops, remembering to think about the nano wing disintegrating and reassembling itself into a weapon. This sends currents flowing down his arm, right towards his hand. Quickly, a dagger emerges in his hand, and he understands how the nano wing suit works. As he's holding that dagger, he realizes that the nano equipment technology has truly evolved in the past 60 years. Sidu asks the squad if they're ready, and they all acknowledge that they indeed are ready for the mission at hand. Their targets are 2 non-fin demons, and she suggests that they kill them both in one go. She gives her squad the terrifying look of a true-born leader, telling them to strictly follow the plan and to head out now. They all started running towards their target, ready for an incredible battle that will give us a thrilling look at their abilities once more. The demons realize that they're about to be ambushed, so they take up their own weird little battle stances. They roar out in anger, their eyes glowing red as they're ready for a fight of their lives. As they are zooming towards their targets like Naruto in a filler episode, Sidu can't help but think about how they must make quick work of this because they have 3 more missions to complete. Things start to go according to plan. Snow heads out first. Using his abilities, he will be the first one to block their line of sight. He smashes into the ground, pulling out a huge chunk of the rock beneath him to block their lines of sight and confuse them. The demons can't tell what's going on due to the ground emerging in front of them as a wall. Aang and Makoto are now going to come around from the side, so that they can incapacitate the 2 monsters. Things were going to need perfect timing for this to work like Sidu had imagined. Indeed, that is exactly what happens as both Aang and Makoto make their entrance to take on 1 demon each. These 2 spearheaded the attack and carved through the legs of these demons. They essentially rendered them immobile. Demons couldn't run away anymore, doesn't matter how hard they tried. As he hits them hard, Aang knows that he's about to see these dumb creatures flail about, since he has now destroyed their knee joints. The monsters scream out in pain, their legs were broken and they couldn't do anything about it. Out of the blue, Lan Snow jumped in for another attack. Pulling out from underneath them, he raised both of his fists against the demons. His fists connected with their chins, breaking their jaws in a powerful strike that shook the earth around them. Now that they were flying in the air, with their throats vulnerable and their bodies immobile, it was time for the team leader to finally strike from above, giving us a phenomenal view of the battle at hand, along with a few other things. With her sword in hand, she was ready to attack and end this thing in one fell swoop. A barrage of slashes took over the space, as the team leader carved into the demons like butter. When she landed on the ground, she knew that she had done her job and that this was the end for these non-fin demons. Her special ability, the overload treatment, began to apply on the monsters, as each cut she applied to their body began to overload with green energy, turning them into living bombs. The two demons exploded, their blood and guts splattering around in the air as Sidu Liu stood in the middle of the chaos, looking as flawless as she always does. The fog in the area begins to dispel, and the area turns stable. This was thanks to Makoto bringing the device and using it after the demons had been taken care of. This cleansed the fog, and cleared the area of any visibility issues. Lan Snow wiped the sweat off his forehead. He knew that this mission would be much more difficult, but it was so much harder than what they had encountered before during the examinations. He was just glad that the mission was finally over. While checking out the non-fin demon remains, it seems that one of them had dropped a red core. Makoto picked it up, looking all proud of what they had accomplished during this easy-peasy battle. The team leader, Sidu Liu, looked around at the squad and thanked them for their hard work, telling them that they've received 10 points. Meanwhile, Aang was still in awe by the high-tech tools at their disposal when he saw that the missions they get completed were automatically removed. Makoto talks about how tech these days mainly focuses on the demons, and how there's a chip in the mission that's linked to the point leaderboard in the city. The leaderboard automatically updates with the points received once the mission is completed. They had completed a mission titled Dispelling the Fog outside the city, and she wanted to take a gander at the other tasks on their itinerary. Makoto immediately noticed that the next two missions were going to be much harder. One of them required the squad to capture 3 non-fin demons alive, while another one required them to collect 10 non-fin demon cores. This depresses our blessed Makoto. She feels worried that despite killing non-fin demons all day, they've only obtained 3 cores with 7 more still to be found. She's also worried about the fact that they'd have to capture demons alive, which is going to be the hardest mission of all. Lan Snow jokes that it definitely won't be easy for them, but he acknowledges that the other teams are also working hard to earn points. Man oh man, Sidu Liu blesses our screen again with a whole new plan to acquire more points. She talks to her squad with a determination in her eyes, telling them that they will finish their remaining missions and take on more high-rank missions, aiming straight for the top, no time to dawdle. This boosts the morale of the group. Makoto starts taking pictures of their leader, and Lan Snow is fueled by the passion to reach the top. However, he wants to know the thoughts of his dear friend brother Aang. Firstly, Aang tells him to just call him by his name, because they're close comrades who don't require any formalities. He tells them that they're right, the other squads are probably working hard to earn points as well. He knows that it'll be hard for them to catch up if they don't pick up the pace. Aang feels a weird sense of nostalgia at this moment. He never thought his heart would have any empathy ever again after living for more than half a century across 2 lifetimes. He never even imagined that he'd regain his youthful passion after spending time with this crew, but the unyielding stubbornness of these young warriors had inspired him again and made him quite energetic. He gives them all a smile, looking into their eyes with joy as he tells them that they should try to complete a mission before sunset. He tells them it's time to go and solidify themselves as the best squad under Tang Tang's captainship. In that moment, everybody was excited. Of course, Sidu Liu was more excited than anyone. Despite being a little mad that he stole all of the cool lines even though she is the squad leader, she's finally warming up to him. Sunset seemed to be closing in, and they still had to complete their mission. Lan Snow was done tying up a demon, wrapping a large thick cloth around its mouth to keep it in check and keep it controlled. Another demon had already been captured and lay behind it. It seems that the squad had captured 3 demons alive, which means that their mission was complete. 2 of the demons were green, looking like large dinosaurs. The last one was red, and he looked more like a gorilla. Sidu Liu noticed that they ran out of tranquilizers used to capture non-fin demons. They only had a few special bullets for it anyways, but they made it work. Aang came up to Sidu, looking at her toying with the gun and wondering what the hell even was that. She spun the gun around in her hands, explaining to him that these guns were created using nanoparticles. They were used to tranquilize demons. It's a beginner weapon for the nano wingsuit, but creating and using this weapon was way more complex. Aang sat down near the tied-up demons, thinking about how tranquilizer guns were now strong enough to capture demons. He remembers how in the past, they had to beat the shit out of them to knock them out with sheer brute force. they would have to hurt them so bad to knock them out that researchers would complain that they did permanent brain damage to the demons. Snow noted that it was good they finished capturing the demons before they used up all of their tranquilizer bullets, and that their mission was finally complete. As they stood around a sea of demon corpses, Snow finds it funny that they had to kill an entire group of them in order to capture just 3. Makoto was feeling hella sleepy at this point, and mentioned that they must return to the city before sunset, stating that it was a rule that if they failed to follow, they would be punished for sure. Nothing can top the thickness of the law. The power of the law. Makoto tells them that they should head home and have some dinner before the sun sets. This sends Aang into an existential crisis, where he wonders if the current version of him even has a home. Sidhu mentions that she also has to head back to the dojo quickly because she's a stickler for the rules and doesn't want to mess anything up. Now, all they had to do is use the locating system to send coordinates back to the researchers, which will mark the mission as completed once the research team retrieves the passed out demons. This is when Aang notices a murderous aura in the area, but before he can ask his squad, a red laser comes flying through as they just stand there. It was a bullet, and it mercilessly carved through the demons that the squad had taken a whole day just to capture alive. Aang felt it coming, but the situation was already completely fucked. Sidhu couldn't believe her eyes. The whole day's tiresome efforts were completely wasted in one invasion. The demons they had captured with so much effort were now dead. Blood poured out of their mouths as a large bullet hole encumbered their face. The smell of gunpowder surrounded the air as they heard an annoying voice. It belonged to someone cocky and competitive, who told them that he cannot let them complete this mission. Makoto and Lan Snow started looking around immediately, as all 3 of their captured demons lay dead, while Aang scouted the surrounding with his peripherals. It was a different squad, and their leader was annoyed that Aang's squad of rookies had taken all the height-ranked missions from the mission board. The guy wearing a gas mask, looking like Bane from The Dark Knight Returns, said that him and his squad were planning to take those, and Aang's team had just made an enemy out of them. The situation was worse than ever. Not only were the captured demons now dead, but our heroes were also being targeted by a different squad. Aang has a calm attitude in this situation, and he simply asks them who they are. Apparently, this was the squad that joined Tang Tang in the last assessment. I'm not sure if the guy meant his name was Black Gun, or if the whole squad was called that. In either case, these guys were seniors to our heroes, and they were one of the 9 squads at the top. The red-haired guy asked the woman next to him how many squads joined Tang Tang this time around. She leaned down towards him and told him that 3 squads joined him this time, which surprised him. The thing is, these seniors were egotistic, and they wanted our heroes to pay respects to them before starting anything. The seniors jumped off their positions and ran towards our heroes. They immediately stopped moving as soon as they got close enough. You see, they wanted the rookies to seek for their approval before taking any of the high-ranked missions. I guess they wanted to keep themselves up on the scoreboard. Of course, when they don't get a reply, they assume that these rookies were not taking them seriously. They were taking every single thing as a sign of disrespect, which is kind of stupid in my opinion. Sidhu was completely stunned. She saw the demons that they had killed, and remembers how much effort it took to capture them. Her eyes looked soulless, and she was lost for words. In her eyes, you could tell that she was raging. She was holding her anger back, doing her hardest not to lash out due to all their efforts that these so-called seniors had wasted. The redhead guy asked who the team leader was, and wondered why the leader hadn't led them to greet their seniors yet. However, our girl Sidhu was not in the mood to listen to any more ego-driven bullshit. She was angry, and she was not going to let them keep talking trash. She lunged at the redhead, and spun around with her foot flying ahead, trying to roundhouse kick him. The redhead had fast movements though, and he matrix dodged out of the way. He was pissed now, asking her how dare she attack her seniors. He degraded the whole squad, calling them a bunch of undisciplined rookies. The heroic team leader of our squad was still pissed, and each word the redhead said made her angrier. She was going in for another punch, and this time she wouldn't miss. However, Lan Snow and Makoto stopped her. It took all of their strength, while Snow tried to convince her not to act rashly because they were still up against seniors. Makoto lashed out and raged too, arguing with the seniors, telling them that they were being unreasonable assholes since they had killed the demons our heroes had spent so much effort in capturing. Redhead was annoyed. He found the notion that they considered him unreasonable as something laughable. You see, that's just how the nature of the competition was, and Redhead told our photographer gal that she was being a stupid little naive brat. City was about to blow up when she heard this. She was going to kill a bitch. This was too much chatter from a squad of dummies who considered themselves seniors. She wanted to scream at them, but instead she just started raging internally so that she doesn't lose control of herself and start fighting them. Lan Snow looked back at Aang and told him that the sun was going to set soon, so he should go ahead and talk it out with them before they lose more time. As Snow was trying to control the team leader, Aang sprung from behind him like a shadow, moving at a breakneck pace. He jumped into the air, staring into the redhead's eyes, and telling him to fuck right off before kicking him in the face. Aang's foot landed right on the dude's face, breaking off his mask and sending him flying backwards. As he was flying back to hit the ground, his team got quite concerned about him. Aang was pissed. He had never seen rookies being oppressed to this level before, and it boiled his blood. He asked them if they had any idea how much effort went into capturing those 3 demons. The team was completely shocked, with the exception of Sidu Liu, who gave our hero a satisfied thumbs up. As the redhead held his face, feeling the brunt of the kick, he questioned how Aang could dare to treat his seniors in such a way. We get a look at his face, and we see that his mouth is all fucked up. Possibly because of a fight or maybe just a demon attack. Or it could be that he was born like this. Anyway, he told his team, Black Gun, to get ready for battle. The other 3 combatants in Black Gun took up positions, ready to fight it out. However, our rookie squad was not going to let up without a fight either, especially Sidu Liu, who was going to get exactly what she wanted in this situation. The 2 teams launched at each other. Both of them had passion in their eyes and anger in their hearts, and they both intended to teach each other a lesson. Of course, the fight wasn't going to happen because, you guessed it, Tang Tang arrived at the scene. It stopped Aang's kick and Redhead's punch, grabbing both of them. It's safe to say that these 2 were fucked. There was a look of rage in his eyes. He never expected his understudies to be fighting each other. In an instant, he flung both of them in different directions. The Redhead went flying towards our hero squad, and Aang went flying towards the Black Gun. Redhead managed to land on its feet as Sidu Liu and Makoto looked at him. Meanwhile, Aang managed to land on his feet as well, just next to the opponent team, while feeling a bit disappointed that he couldn't see the standards of the modern warriors. Tang Tang was annoyed. He had an aura of rage so strong that you could visibly see the anger emanating off of him. He looked at both of the squads and told them that they have no sense of survival. He lectured them that the sun was about to set, but they were fighting amongst each other. They were acting as if they were an offering of food for the demon horde. The redhead started to blame it all on our heroes, stating that they even smacked his mask off. Sidu Liu looked at him in disdain, telling him that he was acting like a spoiled brat by complaining to the squadron leader. Thankfully, Makoto stepped in, telling the squadron leader that she has photographic proof that the Black Gun squad killed the 3 demons they had captured earlier, to the surprise of Lan Snow, who had no idea when she even got that photo. Tang Tang was confused. He couldn't believe that a rookie squad would take on a high-rank mission. Sidu Liu gave her 2 cents on the matter, telling the squadron leader that they had already completed the mission, but the Black Gun squad destroyed their efforts. Tang Tang understood the situation. However, they were about to get some bad news. You see, while our heroes thought that the Black Gun were going overboard with their actions, they actually went through the same thing when they were rookies. Of course, he also said that they were in control of how they respond to the situation. But none of that mattered, because what matters is the point system. As long as a squad doesn't intentionally harm or endanger another squad's life, everything else is on the table. These rules apply to every city where warriors are trained. He told them that as warriors, they would face even greater challenges in the future, because they won't be facing such basic threats. Apparently, Tang Tang wouldn't even have interfered if the sun wasn't setting. He just wanted the squads to return home safely, which is why he was stopping the combat. Which is honestly really disappointing. I would have loved to see them fight. However, before leaving, he told the Black Gun squad that not only did a rookie squad snatch a high-ranking mission from them, but their leader also got beat up by them. He told them to reflect on their incompetence, and the redhead could do nothing but acknowledge that. The rowdy redhead starts walking away, but instead of reflecting on his actions, he moved towards Aang. He asked our hero for his name, looking straight into his eyes. The MC stared back, his golden eyes glowing, as he stated that his name was Aang. For a moment, it looked like Redhead had shat his pants. But then, he just started laughing while walking away. He found it absurd that this kid was named after the greatest warrior who ever lived. As he walked away, he assured and warned our hero that he wouldn't let his squad obtain points too easily. He swore that this month, Aang's team would be ranked at the bottom of the leaderboard. He walked up towards his mask, placed profoundly on the ground. As he picked it up, he looked back at our hero one more time, and told him that he would get him back for this, as he pointed to the scar on his face. He had now picked up his mask, and he was putting it on as he told his squad that it was time to leave. In an instant, all 4 of them bounced out of there as Aang was just looking. Tang Tang told our heroes that Black Gun might not be the strongest squad, but they were known for their swift execution. He says that they will distract them or straight up destroy their mission progress by any means necessary. They knew how to hold grudges, that's for sure. He continues on, giving more information to our rookies about how the leader of Black Gun excels at firearms. He states that the Black Gun leader didn't use a single firearm in the fight, and if both teams end up going all out at some point, our heroes would have much more to lose than Black Gun would. This concerned Sidu Liu, but she was holding back from saying anything. After that info dump, it was time for them all to get back to the city. Sidu Liu knew that she had to stop thinking about it for now, and told her squad to head for home. As she was walking away, she asked Aang why he was spacing out. She wondered if he was trying to look cool or something. As our girl took the lead, she told him that kick to the redhead's jaw was pretty darn cool. Aang noted that she was finally warming up to him. While the squad was leaving, Lan Snow asked our boy if he wanted to come over for dinner. Somehow, the reincarnated MC, who barely knew anything about himself except for how weak his body was, had plans. Snow questioned why he was being so secretive about his plans, but Aang simply laughed it off. You see, he had a plan that you could consider straight up stupid. His plan was to capture 3 demons alive, all by himself. Now, it was nighttime, the moon was out and the wolves were howling, and it looked like a dangerous night to wander outside of the city gates. However, our hero did not care. He had a plan and he was going to get it done no matter what. On loudspeakers, there were constant announcements about not leaving the city. It was for the people's own safety, but there was a shadow in the night, sneaking about within the gates, trying to make his way outside. As Aang hid behind a wall, he noted how there were no people in his way as he was sneaking around. All he could hear was this repeating announcement. He wondered about how once the mission is completed, he wants to really check out what this body of his would call home. He peeked out from behind cover now that he knew that the people weren't as vigilant as he expected them to be. He saw a yellow signboard with text on it that said that it was for temporary emergencies only. He wondered whether the city lacked in manpower, or maybe they just thought that nobody would try to leave the city at night. I mean, all they did was put up a signboard with no security in sight. He sat down, knowing how different this was from his past life. They had to make sure it was safe. It didn't matter if it was day or night. They even had to carry out nocturnal capture missions sometimes. He thought about how he should use the forceful method from his previous life to capture the demons. Just bump them on the head until they were brain damaged enough to get knocked out. It was nighttime, so he wouldn't have much trouble finding many demons. Aang thought about how big of a genius he was, doing the mission at an unexpected time to completely disrupt the Redhead's plans to stop his team from earning points. However, it seems that he had been caught red-handed. It was none other than the squad leader, Sidu Liu. And might I say, what of you? This girl was excited on the inside. She gave a random excuse at the dojo and left early. She knew that Aang would try to make a move at night ever since he mentioned that he had plans at sunset. Aang got spooked by the appearance of this silver-haired fox, who noted that he was trying to leave the city in the dead of night. Now, the MC might have been the most powerful warrior in his previous life, but he had never learned how to lie. He told her that he was just out for a stroll. She wasn't an idiot though, and she caught his lie immediately. He gave in and told her the truth. He told her that he was going to give them a surprise. He wanted to complete the mission during nighttime so that it wouldn't get disrupted. However, now that he was caught, it couldn't be helped. He told her to not report this to the superiors and that he would be heading back now. But before he could even finish his sentence, Sidu Liu told him to count her in. She was more excited about this plan than even he was. He could tell how much interest she had in this. There was a smile on her face while talking to Aang, which is something that never happened before. She was all bubbly inside, thinking about the reaction from the redhead masked guy and his black gun team in the morning. Aang was a bit terrified. He had never seen her giggling like an evil bitch before. However, she denied and said she did not giggle. This girl would punch you in the balls and then deny doing that with a poker face. Anyway, unbeknownst to them, at the topmost peak of the wall, there were 2 little birdies standing guard. I guess they're not really standing, but while one of them yawns, the other one is chowing down on some good old-fashioned food. The sleepyhead is annoyed. Standing guard is like torture to him and he wonders why anyone would even go out at night unless they wanted to die. He wanted an end to his night guard duty and asked his fellow eater why they won't just shut the gate completely. The eater was a stickler for rules. He immediately told Sleepyhead to be quiet or the squadron leaders might hear what he just said. He explains that they leave a gap open in the big door in case of any emergencies. There was an incident many years ago where a group of refugees fled to their city begging for help while they were being chased by demons. But while the gate was being opened, it took too long and resulted in their deaths. The refugees died horribly under the demon's claws. It was a truly terrifying moment that changed the way guard duty worked. Ever since then, every single city now leaves an emergency gap in their main gate, just in case another situation like that occurs. Human life was more valuable than anything else. I guess Sleepyhead was new to the job because he had no idea about this. He apologized, and the eater told him that he would get used to it in no time. Fortunately for Sleepyhead, the eater wasn't just hungry for food. He also brought a pervy magazine for his homie to stay awake with. Sleepyhead was immediately awake. His sleep vanished away at the sight of the photo book which featured other cities' female warriors. Pervy the eater had paid a lot of money to get his hands on that, and he was going to let his sleepy comrade take a look. Bro seemed to be having the time of his life. They couldn't believe that it was the latest edition. Meanwhile, Pervy was checking out the waist on one of the models. While the 2 creeps were too busy looking at the photos, our gorgeous team leader and experienced MC made their way from under the city gate. As Aang ran towards the forest at the other end, he noted how the assessment venue looked different. Squadron leader Tang Tang was right. The fog did get denser at night. He looked at Sidu Liu and told her to follow him to the other direction. They were now far enough away from the city gate to not get detected. This is where they would make their move. Aang told Sidu to follow the plan. He was going to lure the monsters out to this area, and she would go for their heads to knock them out with brute force. He walked into the night fog alone, telling her to wait for him. She was overtaken by his confidence as he entered the nightfall before disappearing into it. In that moment, she felt an itch in her brain that she could not scratch. She was alone in the forest outside of the city, feeling as though the darkness would swallow her at any moment. She wondered if this was fear or was it simply excitement. Regardless, she had no time to think about any of that, and it was time to concentrate. She had to be prepared to follow up with her attacks as soon as Aang would return. After that, Aang started to appear and would bring the demons with him. His expertise in luring the demons was incredible to witness. He managed to lure out non-fin demons each time, making it easier to capture them alive. Liu had never heard of capturing demons by using brute force before, and she found this new method completely unique and exciting as Aang would bring them out. Each time he brought a demon with him, he would holler at her to take the lead. Together, they would attack the demon in their own separate ways, but they both aimed for the head. The demons were huge, so they had to make their way towards their head by either jumping off tree branches or launching themselves off the ground. Aang and Liu were consistently landing blows at the demons' heads, striking them down one by one. They kept taking out demons, toying with them by repeatedly attacking their heads and causing them to pass out. The old-fashioned method of bumping the demons' heads had once again been useful after half a century. The process was going smoothly. They kept bumping their heads until they passed out, and then they would tie them up. It took up a lot of their strength and stamina to do this, but they had finally accomplished it. As our hero wiped the sweat from his face, he remembered that he needs to keep training this body, because in his past life he could have done this with one hand. Liu told Aang that this was the third demon, and that they were finally done. She noted how this was so much more tiring than the dojo strength training, as Aang told her to just leave them there. She was curious to know why they would just leave them be after coming so far. And Aang gave her a lot of info at this moment. He told her that non-fin demons are dumb and don't know how to save their kind. They were also not going to get too close to the city walls, so leaving them was not going to be a problem. He told her that after all those hits to the heads, they were not going to be waking up anytime soon. They had all the time till early morning to come back and submit the mission. This made her even more curious. She wanted to know how he knew so much about the demons. Aang realized that he had said too much and found himself at a loss for words. But their conversation was cut short by the sound of terrifying voices, telling them that they had been found. It was two demonic faces, barely visible in the broken trees and the darkness of the night fog. These were two one-fin demons, who had finally found their target. One of the demons noted that Aang smelled like them. Liu was terrified. She couldn't believe that they faces with two of those monsters. Meanwhile, Aang was losing his shit. He was panicking internally, knowing that they would definitely lose the fight against them if they engaged. They were far away from the city gates, but the spotlights started going off and alarms started blaring. All three of the squadron leaders had made their way to the top of the wall. The emo boy told the two warriors standing guard, Sleepyhead and Pervy the Eater, that they had picked up signs of one-fin demons in the area and ordered them to scan the area with spotlights. They obviously had to oblige. Jessica Rabbit wondered why one-fin demons would reappear in this area and questioned if this was the same one that appeared during the assessment. But Tang Tang had seen the cave, and he knew for a fact that the creature was dead. The spotlights landed in the trees outside the city, and it caught both of the demons hanging around. Pervy let the squadron leaders know that their targets were found, and these two demons looked quite robust and scary. There were two of them, so this wasn't going to be a fun fight. Our emo boy was confused. He had no idea why two of them would appear at the same time, unless something attracted them. He told his subordinates to not panic and just shut the city gates so they would go away. He also told them to ready the defensive turrets, and the guns that surrounded the city began to glow immediately, ready for some brutal demon destruction. However, Tang Tang screamed, telling them not to shut the gates. Jessica Rabbit was confused. Why would he say that? But Tang Tang noticed that there was someone out there. The emo boy ordered the spotlights around once again. As the lights hit the ground, we see Tang Tang boiling with anger as he wonders why the fuck those rookies under his care would be outside at this time of the night. It was Aang and Liu, Tang Tang noted. They were caught between the two one-fin demons, and they were in a world of pain if they couldn't manage to escape this situation right away. Tang Tang had noticed something off in the distance, almost as if there were people down there, people who were visible now that the spotlights had done their job. He realized what was going on. It was those two brats trying to get a head start on tomorrow's high-ranked quests. They sneaked out in the night to get some extra points. It's exactly as he had seen. The two rookies were stuck between a rock and a hard place, as the two one-fin demons lurked their way above them through the trees. Jessica Rabbit was confused. She wondered why the hell those rookies were outside of the city at this time of the night. They stood atop the wall, looking down at the terrifying situation, having no idea what to do. They had to figure something out, or those two were going to die. This is where Tang Tang noticed the three ensnared demons, and everything had cleared itself up pretty easily. He understood what they were trying to do, and he told his comrades that they probably wanted to do the mission of capturing no-fin demons alive during nighttime, so that they don't get disrupted during the day. The emo boy had seen problems like this happen before. Rookie warriors always had a penchant for reckless moves like this, and they used their talent to put on a good performance but usually got themselves in trouble. This case was no exception. Tang Tang was fuming. This man was hella mad, as he started to push his body down so he could jump up into the air and go help them. He was definitely going to punish those two once they got back safely, but for now he had to ensure their safety. As he jumped off the wall, Jessica Rabbit immediately called out to the emo boy to assume command. She told him that she was going after Tang Tang to help rescue those two brats, leaving him in command of the wall. She launched herself into the air as well, following her beloved Tang Tang as they both blasted through the air, falling down off the wall, in hopes that they get there in time to save the two rookies. As the emo boy stood there, looking at his comrades jumping off, he felt a bit disappointed that a rare night of drinking was ruined just like that. The one-fin demons quickly realized that the city knew they were there, as one of them began to tell the other one. Meanwhile, on the ground, Aang was panicking as he told Lu to get behind him. He told her that they should wait for help, and that they had to stall for time in case the backup was running slow. Our hero knew that he was the target. He was the one that they wanted. This was evident by their behavior. They were talking like the one-fin demon from the cave a few days ago. He wondered why that was the case. Was it perhaps because of his rebirth into this new body, or did something really happen to him in the cave that set off all demon alarms? Lee was no coward. She wasn't going to stand back and let her comrade do everything. She walked up next to him, telling him that they would fight together or not fight at all. The one-fin demons got cocky. They asked the rookies why they would even dare to fight back. Immediately, the two demons began to pounce off of the tree and onto the ground. Somehow, only one of them managed to land on the ground, while the other fucker simply vanished into thin air. Suddenly, the demon managed to appear behind them. The rookies were now trapped between the two one-fin demons, with nowhere to go. The demon slashed, stating that they would kill the useless one first. For some reason they considered our girl a non-threat. As the demon began to slash away at Lu, its hand almost swiping through her body, Aang managed to push himself against the demon, slamming into it. The demon slash attack was so powerful, as its fist pounded upon the ground, it broke apart into pieces. Thankfully, the two rookies managed to survive the attack. Liu had managed to find herself at a slight distance from the demon, enough to launch a counterattack as the demon admired their quick reflexes. She immediately swung her foot, aiming right at the demon's head. She was going to smash its skull in. Yet, it was of no use, as she felt mere drops of water splashing onto her face. Her foot was caught in a spider web of blue strings, as her kick had missed the demon's face by just an inch. In an instant, the blue demon appeared behind her, entangling her even more in its sharp blue threads. She was completely bound now. The kinky demon had covered her in ropes and knots, as she squealed in pain from how much the pull was cutting into her skin. Aang was enraged. He couldn't believe that he had led his teammate into such a dangerous situation. If anything happened to her, he was going to blame himself for the rest of his life. However, before he could even react, the demon had made its way towards him. With its fist held shut, it mocked our hero for getting distracted, calling it a rookie mistake. The demon had almost grabbed our hero, but suddenly a fist mightier than Thor's hammer almost struck it in the face, but it blocked it using its rocky hands. That didn't matter though, as the strike was so powerful it sent the demon blasting backwards a solid half-mile, while the blue demon was trying to carry Lu away. Tang Tang and Jessica Rabbit had arrived to the scene, telling Aang that he was finally safe now. Jessica Rabbit immediately began to analyze the demons, noting that one of them was a blue core demon, which means it was a water type, while the other one was a red core demon, meaning it was an earth type. The blue core demon had agility as its main trait, meanwhile the red core demon had strength as its main trait. They had to save Lu first, otherwise she was definitely a goner, still entangled in the blue demon's sharp threads. The red demon was glad that he managed to block the attack somehow, otherwise there was no chance that it would have survived. Its head would have straight up exploded. Even now, it would feel the pain of 1,000 migraines lingering around for a while. Emo Boy was standing atop the wall, still screaming out loud. He was definitely terrified that something might happen to his comrades. He told his troops to get the defensive cannons ready. However, they weren't allowed to shoot yet because their own people were too close to the demons at the moment. A warrior woman came running towards him, screaming out his name as it seemed like she was running for a while. She came to a halt when she reached him, panting her breathlessness away, as she told him that they've detected a whole horde of lesser demons heading in their direction. He asked her how many demons were approaching them, and she simply said countless, because an entire demon wave was approaching. By the way, what the fuck is this angle? The moon was glowing red. It seems that the universe itself had a bloodlust today, as the surrounding forest was overtaken by terrifying roaring, growling and screaming. There, a large horde of lesser demons began to emerge from within it. Their eyes were glowing red, and nothing but murder was on their mind. This was more demons than we had ever seen before in this series, and it seems that the city was in more danger than ever before. It was not just a regular horde of demons, this was a literal army, and the emo boy was starting to shit himself now. The nervous sweat started as he wondered what the fuck he could possibly do in this situation. So, he ordered the alarms to be blared across the whole city. Every single warrior within the city walls had to be prepared for combat now, because they had no other choice if they wanted to keep living to see the morning. The alarms began to blare, and everybody was going to be woken up from their deep slumbers tonight. People immediately realized what was going on. It was a demonic wave of demons, and they had no time to waste. All of the warriors were telling each other to assemble at the wall, to get ready for combat because things could get really ugly. As the demon wave took the fight to the city, Tang Tang had realized that these were clearly well-prepared demons. Jessica Rabbit noted that the lesser demon wave was probably called in by the two one-fin demons they were fighting, so they needed to get this over with really quick. Liu's inner morals began to rise up again, as she told the three warriors to head back and help defend the city, and that she would be fine either way. She felt as though her recklessness had dragged the squadron leaders down, which wasn't entirely untrue. The water-type demon was not having it though. It quickly splashed her mouth with its weird juices, telling her to shut the fuck up. This pissed the three musketeers off. Tang Tang was not going to allow her to be stolen away. As the three heroes began to rush towards the one-fin demons, it was time for some open combat. The earth-type demon slammed its hands into the ground, giving the crew a menacing laughter. As the demon's hands worked their voodoo into the ground, sharp spikes began to emerge in a straight line, disrupting our heroes from being able to attack. Tang Tang yelled out to Jessica Rabbit, warning her to the array of spikes coming her way. Thankfully, both of the squadron leaders had managed to dodge the spikes safely. They had jumped out of the way, while Aang was still running towards them. As the spikes kept targeting the squadron leaders, Aang was able to safely pass through them. How did that just happen? His body wasn't agile or strong enough to be able to do that. This is when he realized that the demon had simply not attacked him. The earth-type demon had made its way right next to Aang, telling him that it was time to go. This weird champ is somehow talking to him as if they're best friends. The demon passed by our hero and rammed into Jessica Rabbit's holy grails instead. It was so obvious that they weren't targeting Aang. Even the squadron leader Tang Tang was beginning to notice. He couldn't even process the thought before the strength-type demon started to attack him down, slashing away at him at a furious pace, and Tang Tang couldn't even detect where to block from. The water-type demon put its hand out, gesturing our hero to come towards Liu and take her. She started to get pulled back, deeper into the forest than ever before. Yup, the demon was kidnapping her, using its water abilities to flow through the air by boosting itself from the trees. It seems that the demon wanted to lure Aang into the forest, separating him from the rest of them. Aang realized this though. He was no idiot. He had more experience in fighting than anyone else in the world. This was an obvious trap, and he couldn't act foolishly brave right now because his body would limit him from doing anything anyways. As he stood there, contemplating his next move, he heard Tang Tang and Jessica Rabbit call out to him, both of them telling him not to follow. He wouldn't be able to beat it alone. Yet he was terrified. The thought of something happening to her was scaring the life out of him. He remembered that gaze of hers, thinking about how he had seen it before. It was familiar to him, and it was something that brought nightmares to his sleep. He remembered the faces of all those warriors that he failed to protect. They used to call him the Warrior King, and yet he could not save any of them. He had no choice anymore. After seeing and experiencing all that, there was no way that he was going to let her be taken away. So, our boy decided that he would never abandon her, and started chasing after them deeper into the forest depths. Deep in the forest depths, where you couldn't even hear the sound of a pin drop, that's where the water demon had brought our girl Sidhu Liu. It stood over her, towering above her as she sat on the ground, tied up with its threads. It looked at her, analyzing her entire physique. It found her quite interesting, and I can't say that I blame it. It said that the one-fin demons were incredibly interested in human emotions. A little bird had alerted it to the fact that humans can scream when they're feeling a sense of despair or danger. It seems that Pervy wanted her to beg. That's what I'm going to call it now, Pervy. It wanted our girl to beg for her life. It wanted to hear her pleas. Liu was not the begging type though. Of course, she couldn't beg even if she wanted to because her mouth was covered by that weird splash thingy. Pervy quickly realized that, and decided to cut away the splashy thing that was holding her from screaming. Now, Pervy began to order her to scream, but it wouldn't hear a single word coming out of her mouth. She simply told Pervy perverts and off, saying that she was not going to beg for her life. Looking so meek was not her style. She was more of the strong and independent type. This confused the water demon. Pervy had no idea why she wasn't screaming for her life. That's what the legends had specified after all. Liu began to tell Pervy her story, the story of how she was raised in the dojo of a martial arts family. However, this was the one thing she was afraid of, and she would never bow her head to an enemy. She gave Pervy two options, either kill her right then and there, or free her so that they may have a fair fight. Pervy had no idea what to say, so it just chuckled out of confusion. It immediately followed that chuckle with a smack directly to our girl's face. The fact that she wasn't going along with Pervy's kink had pissed it off. Now that Liu lay on the ground, Perby told her why it had brought her here. She was just a bait, and only being used to catch Aang. Of course, she would have to die once the demons had accomplished that goal. Liu was angry, but she couldn't do anything for the time being. She was in a shitty situation and a horrible position. As Perby began stepping closer to her, trying to assert its dominance, it heard a loud voice calling it from behind. Aang had arrived, his dagger in his hand and a clandestine confidence in his body language. He told Perby to let Liu go and focus on its real target. Liu's eyes propped open as she saw Aang. She questioned why he would come alone to save her. Perby was overjoyed at the sight of our hero. It couldn't believe that its trap had worked. The dumb bastard kept calling our hero the target, doing a weird kind of dance for some reason. This made Liu wonder why Aang was the target, but let's see if she's getting the answer to that question. Aang took his combat stance, holding his knife in one hand, while asking Liu if she was alright. She was still worming around on the ground, but she told him that she was fine. She followed up that statement with a question, asking him why the fuck he would come here on his own. She knew that he could not match the power of a one-fin demon, and yelled at him to leave. Perby did not like that, and it kicked her in the stomach for not keeping her mouth shut. It broke him seeing her being hurt. He told the Perby demon to let him take her place because he was their target anyways. He just wanted her to be set free, to be let go so he wouldn't have another life on his conscience. Perby was not too big of a fan of that idea because it just did not like humans. It started using its water powers, using it to slither through the ground like an anaconda until it made its way towards our hero. It spawned right near Aang's face, telling him that they both must die for Perby to truly feel fulfilled. That was enough of talking, and Aang quickly used his sword to try and sneak in a slash attack on the dumb demon. It managed to dodge the attack. Obviously, its reflexes were too sharp. Perby retaliated. The attack had left Aang unguarded, so Perby used it to attack directly at his arm. Aang realized that this body cannot even respond to such a swift attack, as he grunted in pain. As Perby began to swarm around our hero, using its transformative liquid-like body, it became even more curious after smelling Aang and noticing that he smelled like a demon. As it kept slashing away at Aang, our hero did his best to parry them with attacks of his own. He couldn't help but wonder how incredibly fast the demons had evolved to grow attributes such as water type, earth type, and more in the time he was dead. The fight ravaged on, and Liu could do nothing but spectate. Aang was getting cut away by this demon, making her realize that Aang's body was too weak. He couldn't use any skills other than physical techniques, and if the battle kept continuing, Aang would die, and so would she. She was terrified for him, questioning why he would even dare coming alone. He was never a match for a one-fin. As she crawled on her belly, she noticed a sharp rocky spike sticking out of the ground. She knew that she couldn't just sit still. She couldn't just watch her friend get brutally murdered by that perverted fucker, so she started crawling towards the spike, hoping to cut herself loose. In the meantime, Aang was fighting for his life. Perby threw a punch, but Aang successfully blocked it. He realized that this might be an opportunity for a counterattack, so he slammed his sword at Perby's ugly mug, knowing that if this attack landed, he would do hella damage. Yet, Perby just liquefied itself out of the attack, and grabbed Aang's sword before it could do any more damage. It started bullying Aang. It seems that this demon really got off to humiliating people. Calling Aang weak, it mocked the fact that he killed a one-fin in the cave, but couldn't even compete anymore. Perby thought that Aang was faking his weakness, but Aang was getting aggravated the more the demon spoke. Aang had no idea what the demon was talking about. He didn't remember killing the one-fin in the cave. Of course, that was the work of King Crimson or whatever the fuck his name was. Perby was not a fan of attitude, so its humiliation kink started getting more obvious as it stated that Aang must get punished. It grabbed Aang by both of his arms and started to pull him apart. It was doing it slowly, torturing our boy to the most of its capabilities. It was twisting Aang around, turning his body inside out, and he could feel every inch of pain as his screams surrounded the forest. As Perby the demon held Aang at his fingertips, it called him a dishonest human. This demon was not a big fan of liars, so it kicked Aang into the stomach with its thick muscly leg. Before he could even fall, it kicked Aang away, sending him flying through 3 different trees before he could land on the ground. Just for a moment of respite. It wanted to know Aang's secret. Its curiosity knew no bounds, and it would kill Aang and everyone he loved in order to get it. Aang lay there on the ground. He could feel that his organs had gotten fucked from that kick. He couldn't believe the fall from grace he had. In his old body, he would have ripped this demon's head off in 1 second. Lee was watching from afar, trying to free herself using that sharp rock she had found earlier. Her wrists were getting cut up as she tried to break free. She knew that she had to hurry to his aid. Perby had made its way to Aang, and at this point, Perby wasn't interested in the truth anymore. It just wanted to kill our hero and eat him instead. It licked its teeth from the delectable meal it was about to have. It knew that eating Aang would help it evolve into a more powerful being. It decided to take Aang away to its secret lair, where it would stir-fry our boy until he was nice and crispy. Yet things were not going to be as easy for Perby as it had initially thought, as it could feel a knife grazing the back of its head. It was Liu. She had freed herself and made her way behind the pervert successfully, but her attack was a failed attempt at killing it because Pervy managed to dodge at last minute. So, she followed it up with a kick to its chest, and it wasn't just a regular kick. She put both feet on its chest, acting like King from Tekken as she drop-kicked the shit out of this demon. As Pervy went flying, Liu maneuvered herself midair so she could land on her feet. Come to think of it, she is kind of like a cat. She did a superhero landing, looking all cool and stylish and gorgeous. She was going to keep Aang safe. She was not going to let that pervy bastard hurt one of her teammates. As she stood there amidst the smoke, she knew that this was going to be a tough fight. But even Pervy was impressed by her skills. Aang lay there on the ground, seeing his friend standing up for him. This was the first time that he had found himself in a situation where he needed someone else's help instead. If these two somehow survived this, they were going to be bonded forever. He wondered how she had broken free from those bindings, as the cuts on her wrists and ankles were pretty much a clear explanation of how she had done it. Aang had a pretty nice view of the fight though, along with something else. She looked Pervy the demon dead in the eyes, and told it that if it was going to kill someone from Liu's squad, it was going to be her first. She was the captain after all. Of course, Pervy was totally fine with that. In fact, I think it preferred that anyways. Pervy started to piss water out of every pore in its body. A rain of sharp watery spikes started flowing towards Liu like homing missiles, as Pervy told her not to dodge any attacks if she really wanted to die. The spikes came flying towards her, and she had two options, either dodge them all and let Aang behind her get butchered by this onslaught of spiky water, or somehow block every single one of them. So, she did what no one else would have, she started to truly block the attacks. It was spark after spark, as the spikes of water clashed with her metal weapon. Things were not looking good, except for some things, which looked great. In his own worry, Aang told her to dodge away out of their path and make sure that she was safe. She told him that she wouldn't dodge them, she was going to protect him, and if he said another word, it would just distract her. But deep in her heart, she knew that there were too many projectiles to dodge anyways. Pervy started being even extra and told her to watch out below. The spikes now started targeting her feet. Turns out, this was just a way to distract her, because soon after, another set of binds emerged and wrapped themselves around her, picking her up off the ground. She was immediately pulled towards Pervy the demon, and it seems that this was the end of this fight. He grabbed her by the throat, mocking her fearlessness of dying in battle. This fucker enjoyed doing the opposite of what people wanted, and it swore that it wouldn't kill Liu, but it would humiliate her instead. Now, if someone wants to say the safe word, we could end the fun right here. In any case, the fun wasn't going to end, at least not for Pervy, because it was going to make sure that it pulled the screams right out of Liu. She would be screaming in pain and begging for death when he was done. The demon was holding her by the throat, lifting her up high so that she could look into its eyes. Aang was on the ground not too far away, but he was powerless in this situation. He didn't have the strength to do anything. Internally, he was raging, yelling at the demon to let her go, yet his mouth could not speak the words. As he lay there on the ground, he felt a sense of déjà vu, almost as if he was just born again so that he could witness the horrors of his previous life once more. He had been brought back to life just so he could watch another teammate die in front of him. Nothing had changed. He couldn't even protect himself, let alone the others. In that moment, the core on his chest began to break just like his confidence in himself was. Just as he was on the verge of giving up, a random boost of energy began to surge through his body as he realized that he did not want to watch anyone die. He didn't want to live with the guilt of letting another teammate die, so he slammed his hand into the ground, trying as hard as he could to get up. As he became more enraged, an aura of red energy began to encumber the area, and the demon started to notice that something was awry. Pervy looked back, trying to understand what was going on, yet what it saw was something highly unexpected. Almost like a bullet, something grazed past it, and that flash of red aura stole the girl right out of its filthy demonic grasp. It finally realized what was going on. It was none other than Aang, who had now secured Liu in his arms. The demon was confused for a second. Aang hadn't even touched it, making it wonder if he did this using only the wind pressure. Liu was covered in spikes, some in her shoulder and some on her chest, and she was bleeding from her head as well. Aang could tell that she was suffering, so he told her that she did great on her first time as a leader to bring her some mental peace. She looked into his eyes, wondering who he was. She wanted to know if he was Aang. Aang's face had completely turned half demonic. As he looked into her eyes with one of his normal eyes and the other one being as red as a demon's, he told her that he would now take care of things. He gently put her on the ground as Pervy the blue bastard was making its way towards them. Pervy finally started to sense the demonic scent within our hero and called them out on it, stating that finally it was going to get to see Aang's secret. Aang stood up and started to make his way towards the fucker. He told the demon that he didn't know what exactly happened to make him feel like this either. He held his head in confusion, sensing that the power was surging out of his chest and shooting upwards towards his head. He felt the sharp pain of a migraine as the power was rising even higher than his eye. He felt as though it was going to pierce through his entire body. He let out a loud scream, a scream so terrifying that it shook the ground beneath him and the whole forest could feel the shockwave. The core inside of his chest was realigning itself, changing its shape by twisting and turning as if it was alive. Suddenly, it had found its true shape, of a flower, a beautiful and delicate glowing red flower with a symbol that looked like two sides facing opposite directions, connected through the same handle. Kirby immediately realized what that core meant. It belonged to only one demon, and that was the Kingfin. Somehow, our naughty little Aang had the core of the king of the demons. Lee was looking at this from afar, and still unsure of what the hell was even happening right now in front of her eyes. Aang did not know what was going on, but he knew that he was going to show this demon a good time. He looked as if he had turned into a demon himself. With his claw-like hands and his demonic face, he had awakened his one-finned form. He was going to make sure the demon did not enjoy this fight, up until the point where he was going to give it a miserable, painful, quick death. Outside of the forest, we see Tang Tang and Jessica Rabbit going head-to-head with the red demon. They're still dodging the spikes that it keeps punching out of the ground. It seems that this demon also noticed Aang's transformation, because it seems like its soul left its body in this moment. Its head started to spin from the incredibly strong aura of Aang's new form, and it could sense that it was someone of its kind, a demon. While the demon was too busy sniffing Aang's feet, Tang Tang had made his way right to him with a fist ready to ass blast him. As the fist made its way to the demon's face, Tang Tang told it not to get distracted. The punch was so powerful, shattering through its chest and breaking almost every rib cage in its body. Aang had given these two a fighting chance just by transforming. Tang Tang kept following it up with more punches, making the demon truly feel like a punching bag being used by a newly divorced man. That wasn't all though, because Jessica Rabbit wanted to get in on the action as she leaped atop them, with her shiny sharp heels. She made a beautiful vertical dive, jamming both heels right into the demon's neck, splattering blood all across the dust-covered ground. The demon went flying, crashing into a busted-up old oak tree as Jessica Rabbit managed to land on her feet. And in those heels, that in itself was a feat. She wasn't done yet, as she immediately blasted off towards the demon one more time. She was showing off her power, and the demon could do nothing but watch and suffer. At this point, the demon was shitting itself. Jessica Rabbit was too strong and it couldn't even defend itself against her. It wasn't just her alone either. Tang Tang decided to join the party as the two duo up for a final attack that would end this demon's miserable existence. The two attacks landed simultaneously, blasting through the demon's chest as chunks of its stony body started falling out. They kept following it up with more and more attacks, and eventually popped a hole in the demon's lower chest. This was Tang Tang's doing. The man was a machine. And that punch was as seismic as it gets. Jessica Rabbit kicked the demon high up into the air. It seems that some Devil May Cry shit was en route for this fucking idiot. The demon looked at the big gap in its chest, and was incredibly frustrated at seeing the opening. It was annoyed now, and it was time for it to go out with a bang as it pulled out its core for a nuclear exit. Jessica Rabbit noticed this immediately, and told Tang Tang to watch out because it was trying to self-destruct while Tang Tang was trying to cover her from the explosion. The demon knew that it had them in its grasp, and it was time to blow them both up to kingdom fuck. Yet unfortunately, things weren't going to go its way as a large projectile came in and pierced through its back. The demon fell out of the sky like a missile, cruising through the air until it crash-landed on the ground. The self-destruct was a failure, as a large bolt from the defense artillery had put an end to its scary exit. Tang Tang and Jessica Rabbit noticed this. For a second they were freaked out before they quickly realized what happened. It was the defensive artillery indeed, as the soldiers of humanity were going up against the lesser demons trying to invade the city, their home. The edgelord was among them, commanding the army with a powerful display of strength as he cut through the demons with his knife. He was stopping them from being able to climb up the wall, chopping their limbs off as they tried to go up. He was getting overwhelmed though. There were way too many of them and there was no way that he could kill them all. He called the rest of his soldiers out, telling them to retreat back to the city because the demon wave was almost there. As the demons were overwhelming the city, Jessica Rabbit noted that they had to make their way back as well or the city would fall to the hordes of terrifying monsters. Yet Tang Tang had something else on his mind. The trainees were still out there, and he had no idea if they were safe or not. How could he just let them die out there? It was something he never imagined would happen. Jessica Rabbit was thinking straight though, telling him that even though she felt bad about them, she and him both had their own duties to do. She told him that they weren't just squadron leaders, they were warriors. And well, I have nothing else to say here, but I know some of you will be disappointed if I move this panel too soon. But time is up now, and Tang Tang was frustrated on the inside. He had no choice left but to head back to the city, yet he would pray for his soldiers to come back safely. So, after swallowing his pride, he started to retreat back to the city with the lovely Jessica Rabbit, because if they didn't, shit was going to get too overwhelming. We jump back into the dark forest, where Kirby the perverted demon is terrified due to Aang's new one-fin demon form. Lee was on the ground, laying there unconscious. Meanwhile, Aang keeps walking closer to the fucker, and it's getting scared, real scared this time. It was confused as to how a human could turn into a one-fin. Aang was going to give him an explanation, though he had rage and blood on his mind, and that's all he cared about. As Aang pulled up his demonic index finger and charged up a green ball of energy, he realized that perhaps this was his calling. This demonic power might be the reason why he was reincarnated. As he flicked the green ball of light back towards Liu's direction, he knew that he was given this power to change not only himself and his powers, but the whole world, history itself. The green energy flew towards Liu's wholly injured body as Aang kept walking closer to the demon. She began to receive a powerful healing aura surrounding her. The spikes embedded in her chest start to melt away as she finally begins to heal from all of her injuries. Kirby's even more confused. How did Aang even have the abilities of a wood type 1 fin demon? It just did not make sense to the demon. Aang recalled what happened. It was vague in his memories, but he remembered absorbing the wood type 1 fin demon. Aang looked the demon dead in the eyes as sprouts of root-like trees start to emerge out of the ground at an unprecedented pace. He asked him something that caught his curiosity. He asked Kirby that if he was to absorb him, would he get the powers of a water-type demon too? The demon was overwhelmed by the incredible powers he was witnessing. He had never seen a wood-type demon being this strong. Aang had built himself a throne of bark, one that he used to tower above the loser water demon. He was now ready to test the extent of his brand new demonic powers, as this could probably be the key to saving the world. As Aang stood towering above Kirby, with his throne of wood, the demon asked him how he had a one-fin demon's core, and how he could absorb the abilities of a wood type. Was Aang one of them? Was he truly a demon? Aang was reveling in this moment. He was living it up, feeling like he had terrified this demon to a level that he had never before. He had never seen a demon this scared of him even in his previous life as the king of all warriors. This demon was trembling, shaking with an uncontrollable hold of fear. It was so scared of Aang that it literally could not move. Aang gripped his feet into the bark, with the roots twisting and turning around his ankles until they were one. He shot himself off the structure, dashing towards the demon like a harpoon from an experienced whaler's hand, before pausing quickly right at its face, taunting the demon, telling it to hit him with all it's got. Aang wanted to see how strong he was in this form, while the demon in its nervousness decided to strike. It hit Aang with all it had, a seismic attack that Aang managed to dodge within a mere microsecond instant by using his wood-type root manipulation. As he landed on the ground, he was proud of himself. Manipulating elements was an extraordinary power that he couldn't help but feel a sense of pride in himself. He looked at Kirby and told it that he absorbed this power from the wood-type demon that had the bad luck of running into him. He put his hand forward and closed his fist halfway. This resulted in a plethora of roots breaking through the ground to surround the kinky demon bastard. They twisted around Kirby and wrapped themselves around his face. It was time for him to see how it felt to get caught in a web himself. The roots tightened themselves on each of its limbs, pulling it hard against its own body weight. The demon's throat felt like it would fucking explode. Aang was the puppeteer, using his hands to make the roots do his bidding. It came so naturally to him. It wasn't a difficult thing to learn for him, and he felt like it was something extremely simple to learn. The demon was getting strangled, and it could do nothing. It was completely powerless against Aang's newly grown fangs. Aang was mocking it now in the worst way, telling it to struggle. This was his way of taking revenge for everything he did to Liu. The demon had one last trick up his sleeve. This one was going to be its final major trump card. It screamed the word disintegrate at the top of its lungs, exploding itself into a splash of water. Did this idiot just kill itself, or was there something more to this? Aang stood there, waiting to see the demon's next move. He wanted to see what was coming and how his body would handle it. Immediately, it splurged out of the ground like a cyclonic wave, tearing a whole chunk of rock from around him. It dashed at Aang, its claws looking sharper than ever. This was Kirby's last chance to attack. It was confident in its ability to survive this, as its claws landed straight on Aang's arm, which he used to protect his face with. The demon grabbed our boy by the arm, claiming that since he was a wood type, he wouldn't be able to disintegrate and escape out of this grip. In a single pull, Kirby ripped Aang's arm right off of his body, turning our boy into Commander Erwin. This is an Attack on Titan reference, only for those of you who are the elitist anime fans. Kirby immediately followed up that brutal move with more slashes, and Aang tried his best to dodge each one. This demonic power was far beyond his understanding according to the demon, and he was going to exploit it. The demon kicked our hero far away, sending him flying back several meters. This time, Aang wasn't going to land on his feet. He was about to hit the ground at Mach speed, powerless and weak from all of the damage that was done to him. At least that's what the demon thought, because Aang was just testing out what this form could fucking endure. While flying through the air, he gestured his hand slightly and the ground began to tear up once more. The amount of ground tearing this one fight has had, it's kind of insane. The roots began to prop up from within, and they stopped his fall with grace. As he got off of his wooden protective barrier, he told the demon that it was right. Aang did not know the full extent of the demonic power. He had no idea what things this power could help him accomplish. At least not yet. He looked up at the demon, giving it a grin that solidified his self-confidence, as he told the demon that he was the strongest warrior in the world, and he was pretty good at learning new things. The stump where his arm used to be started surrounding itself with a green aura and roots that protruded from the ground. His arm was starting to heal with the power of the wood-type regenerative abilities. As he looked at the demon with the terrifying glare, proclaiming that the only thing he needed to do to put an end to the demon's miserable fucking life was to familiarize himself with the powers that he now had. Kirby was shocked. How did this little brat just figure out wood-type self-regeneration in a mere instant? It was something not even a one-fin demon would be able to do in such a quick manner. As he showed off his brand new regenerated arm, he told the demon that he really was good at learning new things, and another thing that he would learn today was how to kill a water-type one-fin demon. Our hero muzzled his feet into the ground, readying himself for an impactful launch. He lowered down his body like an athlete, one who had practiced in going from 0 to 100. He dashed off like a bullet from a rifle with a determination on his demonic face and a rage in his golden burning eyes. He was quickly closing in on the demon, but this time around he would do something new to throw Kirby off. He sprouted roots from below. He was going to use these to leverage himself and shoot his movement speed up even higher than what it was before. That is exactly what happened, as all of the mini roots were giving him a boost of speed that the demon could not predict. He honed into it like a missile, and just as the demon thought it knew what it had to block, it was fucked. Aang had simply passed by him like a calm breeze, which left the monster flabbergasted as to what he was doing. Turns out, Aang had used himself as a distraction and caught the demon's foot with his roots. Kirby, the perverted demon, was now tangled once more. Before the demon could even act, Aang was in front of it and he grabbed the demon's face with both of his hands. At this point, seeing the red aura glow around our hero had the demon pissing itself as it let out squeals of fear. Our hero looked straight into the demon's eyes, piercing through its brain and staring into its demonic dark soul. He told it that there was no point in running, he would always catch up. The roots began to lift our hero, as he was now towering above the demon in a power move. The demon fell to its knees, the pain was too excruciating and the fear too overwhelming. As the demon felt its insides twisting and turning, Aang stated that he was a bit tired of the fight they were having. Its body was becoming sore, large tumors started to erupt everywhere and they were glowing green. As Aang kept holding its face, the demon's screams got louder and louder as it started to cry out of pain from its body completely deforming from what it was. Eventually, that pain turns into an explosive end for the demon as the sores blow up, exploding Kirby straight into destination fucked. Aang had done it. He had killed a one-fin demon all on his own, and he didn't even need to break a sweat to do so. This was the demonic power he had unlocked, a power so strong that nothing seemed impossible anymore. As bits and pieces of the demon flew everywhere, a small piece of its flesh that held the core came into view. The water-type core was beautifully blue, and it had the one-fin insignia plastered within it. Suddenly, the injured and completely bruised Kirby came out of nowhere, still laughing as it went for one last swing at our hero. That wasn't going to work out though, because the roots sprouted from the ground and pierced through its body from almost every single direction. Aang knew that Kirby could disintegrate its body, so he already thought of a plan to just ensure that the core was visible. He knew that even if the demon disintegrated, the core would still remain in place. As he held the demon firmly in its place, he stated that it had grossly overestimated itself. Its core was being pulled away from it, and the demon had nothing it could do. It could only watch as its life was stripped away right from its grimy hands. Aang held the core in his hand, and now our boy had complete power over this loser. As he moved it closer to his mouth, Aang knew that even a 7-fin demon would die once its core is destroyed, so Kirby was just small fry. He gave it one last smile, as he told the demon that he would be taking its water-type powers. He stood towering above the demon. All of the power was his, and the demon had nothing to do but accept its death. The demon started to melt away, turning into its original form, water. It drizzled down into nothingness, dripping away slowly against the roots of our currently wood-type hero. As Aang walked away from the battle, with the red moon shining upon him, he held the core up in his hand, ready to absorb its demonic goodness. And so he did, closing his fist tightly, which made the core shatter completely. He drank the water that poured out from within it, while laughing like a maniac as he had just unlocked a whole new level of strength. Yet deep within this confident surface, the demonic thoughts had started to invade our hero's psyche. With his opponent defeated, Aang now stands under the full moon, holding its core in his hand. He crushes the blue demon's core with his half-demonic hand, and starts drinking its essence as if he was drunk with power. Needless to say, each drop of the core's essence was making his powers surge. His red aura soon transformed into a more stable shade of blue, as Aang licked his lips to comment that it didn't taste bad. He then glances over at Sidu Liu right behind him, who was still unconscious on the ground, protected by a layer of green core energy. The girl looked peaceful in her little cocoon, but perhaps her life was still in danger. With his newly devoured powers, Aang turned himself into Blue Squirt and started moving over towards the unconscious girl. Once next to her, his body started solidifying itself, giving me some serious Terminator vibes. As the liquid finally assembled back into Aang, we see that one half of his body is still demonic, almost as if he was evolving. The Demon King's voice in his head spoke to him, telling him that he's meant to devour the demons, but kill the humans. Aang, possessed and out of control, repeated after the voice in his head, ready to do its bidding. He stood tall of Sidu Liu, smiling like a serial killer toying with his victim, ready to land the finishing blow on the girl. And he didn't hesitate either, because his blow managed to shatter the girl's protection shield immediately. Blood was supposed to splatter, and Sidu's life was supposed to be forfeit. However, just as his demon claw could reach for her face, Aang managed to stop it. He bit his lip to fight back the brainwash, and cursed his pathetic self for losing control. In fact, he had to let his entire human hand get pierced in order to stop his demonic side. Looks like he had finally gained some strength to fight back the Demon King's control. Even if he is possessed, Aang was once the protector of humanity. Hurting another human goes against his deepest rooted principles, and Sidu Liu is someone he has only ever wanted to protect. So, with the mental strength of someone who can actually afford to call himself the former king of all humans, Aang shouted apart the demon in his head, fighting to take back control of his own body. This came as an immense surprise to the Demon King's spirit, who had never expected that a human would be able to resist his will. But since he found it very interesting, he decided not to put up a fight, and disappeared quietly into Aang's heart. While all of that happened, a massive human versus demon battle was still being fought at the city walls. Lan Snow and Makoto stood back to back with each other on top of the walls, where the finless demons had now started to climb up. Snow, with all his explosive power, charged up a fist to fight back the demons. His attack was aimed at the ground, and the shockwave of his thrust was used to propel the finless bastards out of the walls. Of course, Makoto managed to maneuver out of the impact with her agility. Snow was now frustrated, wondering why every other team had gathered to fight the demons, but Aang and Sidu were still nowhere to be found. As Makoto effortlessly dodged the claw swipe of a blue demon, with all her assets bouncing up and down, and her knife twirling in her hands, she informed Snow that 2 warriors snuck out of the city earlier, and were targeted by 1 fin demons. She uses the same knife to thrust into the demon's throat in a single killing blow, without even looking at it, and continues that she's almost certain that the warriors in question were their teammates. Lan Snow immediately loses his shit upon hearing that, wondering why their idiot friends would do something so irrational. And honestly, he's completely right. Makoto knows it too, but her head hurts just thinking about it. Right now, she's too worried that her friends are being targeted by 1 fin demons, whom they probably stand no chance to fight against. Snow has a lot of questions, starting with why 1 fin demon would appear in such a remote area, but the fight ahead of him takes priority. So, they both put all the questions behind them, and continue to focus on enduring the demon wave in front of them, as yet another huge blue monster scales the walls. Meanwhile, Gel and Tang Tang were charging into the enemy hordes as independent ballistic units. Even though they were managing to incapacitate them with one strike after another, the demons were seemingly endless, and a huge number of them were starting to scale the city walls. The Edgelord was fighting close to them as well, and as he cut a line through the demons, his first priority was to ask the other leaders if their cores were still intact. Over here, Tang Tang had leapt up into the air, his fist drawn back, and a large group of scary-looking demons looking at him. As he came crashing down on a poor bastard, splattering its green blood everywhere, the other demons were also forced to fly away from the impact. He then turned to the Edgelord, informing him that his core isn't exhausted, and Gel should be doing the same as well. We now see Gel, drawing her left leg back into a kick, but making me look in all the wrong places, all the while thinking that if they hadn't fought the 1 fin demon together, their cores would have been depleted of energy. Of course, her kick eventually comes out, and thwarts away a bunch of demons with the sheer gust of her force. And as they all circle together in the middle of the horde, Gel asks the Edgelord about their next plan. The dude makes the observation that the finless demon's attacks have decreased significantly ever since the 1 fin demon was defeated. And since the other 1 fin went somewhere else, the entire army has turned into soldiers without a commander. These finless guys have no thoughts of their own, and they're simply attacking aimlessly at everything. He then states how the finless demons are known to understand the fear of death, and one way to make them back out would be to make them fear the humans. He tells Tang Tang and Gel that they would use this opportunity to weaken their desire to attack, and buy time for the soldiers on the wall to call for backup. It was time for an explosive battle. Of course, as their cores glowed with surging energy, both Tang Tang and Gel agreed to the plan immediately. The demons were shaken by a sudden disturbance in the force, as both warriors went Super Saiyan mode in the middle of the battle. They jumped high up into the air, getting themselves a bird's eye view of the entire field. The cameraman once again found the best ever angle to give us all the right shots, as the warriors got ready to rain hell upon their enemies. They kicked back the air like Sanji from One Piece, and came crashing down like comets to explode on the battlefield. Their twirling motion and gathering energy was about to crash land on the finless demons. And soon as it happened, a massive number of the creatures was blown away by the cackling red thunder of the impact. A massive whirlpool of dust and debris opened up right in front of the city, scattering the demon wave in all directions. As the smoke cleared, the glowing red silhouettes of our champion leaders emerged. After the attack on the one-fin demon, this was the second time these two had to combine their core energies in a battle, and if their codes and their bodies had no limitations, they could keep doing this until they killed all the demons. But they both know that such is not the case, so they step forward once again and leap straight onto a different spot to cause yet another catastrophic impact while their bodies can still endure. Meanwhile, back on the ground, our edgelord is fighting a battle of his own. While it's true that the red cores have the most explosive energy, you can't sleep on the lethality of his blue core either. He kicks off the ground and shoots straight into the enemies with the speed of a fighter jet. His agility is unmatched, and he slices up the dastardly demons with one quick slash after another, leaving a wave of corpses in his wake. Makoto and Snow had the pleasure of witnessing their squadron leaders fight at their full power, dividing up the demons into small and smaller waves. This was the first time they had come to know about their real strength. Snow was starting to feel a bit jealous of their prowess, and he felt a strong desire to fight like his leaders as well. It has now been a while, and the edgelord is starting to get exhausted. The others are in similar conditions, but their bodies can still hold on, and their eyes are still showing focus. Most importantly, their desire to fight off the demons is overpowering their exhaustion. The three leaders stood in front of the city gates, and the enemy army had now thinned down by a considerable margin. Since the remaining demons were scared and starting to back off, the edgelord figured that it was the perfect time to cheer up the other warriors. He turned his head towards the walls, informing his warriors that the demons were falling apart, and it was time for them to replenish their strength and keep on fighting. The fledgling warriors of the city all shouted with happiness, thanking their squadron leaders and refueling themselves with newfound energy. With this, the edgelord was sure that the demon army would finally be forced to retreat for good. However, his eyes were soon shot open, as his senses warned him about the presence of an overwhelming demonic energy in the vicinity. He looked in the direction of the demons, and warned the others that something dangerous was coming in their direction, perhaps the one-fin demon who ran away earlier. As the smoke dissipated from the scene, the demons were instinctively starting to make way for the anonymous silhouette to pass through. What came out of the smoke was a true surprise to all the squadron leaders, who could hardly believe their eyes. It was none other than our boy Aang, holding the unconscious Sidu Liu in his arms. He walked casually among the demons, who kept drawing away from him with each step he took closer. His face and expression was still clouded in mystery, but his peers started calling out his name as soon as they recognized him. He had now managed to cross the demon line in the direction of the city, and no creature dared to bare its fangs against him. Jel could clearly see that Aang and Sidu were back, but she was confused as to what could have happened to the one-fin demon. Meanwhile, the edgelord is starting to notice that the demons are getting restless again, and he's worried that Aang might get attacked very soon. And his hunch turns out to be right, as the frightened and berserk demons lash out at our hero with their razor-sharp claws. Of course, the squadron leaders wouldn't let that happen, so they started rushing to the rescue. Unfortunately, they were still too far, and the claws of the demons were inching ever so closer to our hero. But then, just as they were about to deal some serious visceral damage, Aang looked back at the demons with the intense glare of their king, ordering them to fuck out of his sight. All the attacking finless halted their movement. They were too scared of the existence that stood before them. And when Aang's threatening aura started to circle him, all of the surrounding demons jumped back with fear. One of the finless was down on his knees, looking at our hero's feet and trembling. His fear made him flinch and claw into the dirt, until he eventually decided to haul ass and get as far away from Aang as possible. Watching the red demon flea grab the attention of the remaining finless, which triggered a domino effect, as they all started running to flee away from Aang. My man stood in the middle like Moses, and the red sea of demons parted ways at his presence, allowing him to walk freely in the middle. Tang and Jill stopped their rush when they witnessed this bizarre scene. And in a matter of moments, as everyone else saw from the top of the wall, the entire area was free of the demon invasion. The warriors couldn't believe their eyes at first when they watched the demons leave, but their surprise soon turned into loud cheers as the reality settled in. A battle was fought, and they had come out victorious. Some warriors started discussing among themselves why the demons would leave so abruptly, but the answer was obvious to the rest. They all cheered on their heroic squadron leader because they were sure that the enemy fled after witnessing their overwhelming strength. But things weren't so obvious for the leaders in question. In fact, they were left wondering if the reason for the demons' escape was something else. Tang was the one with the strongest hunch, because as he looked at Aang, and how fearless he stood next to the demons, the instructor knew that something was definitely wrong. And then, as our hero inhaled some large breaths, his knees finally caved in, and Sidu was dropped from his hands. Looks like he was on the verge of collapse the entire time, but his sheer willpower kept him awake. Tanting noticed the boy's fall, and with a concerned look in his eyes, he and the other leaders started running to fetch their students. Everyone obviously had a lot of questions on their minds, but Tang warned the others that their students' safety comes first. And with that, Aang could finally close his eyes to a deep slumber. The next thing he knew, he found himself floating atop a giant demon skull in the middle of a crimson sea. A voice whispered in his mind, telling him that he really likes using his powers. Aang was now conscious, and he asked the voice to reveal its identity. The voice kept resounding around him like a void, telling him that they had met half a century ago, and that Aang should be able to remember it. And sure enough, our hero already had a vague idea. He recalled the image of the two 8-fin demons who annihilated him in his last battle, and assumed that the voice belonged to one of the two. He asks the voice if there are more such demons in the world, but he gets assured that he will come to know about their existence in the future. Aang's eyes widen at that response, and as he looks to the side, the king of demons is sitting right next to him in all his naked glory. There's a very small portion of my audience who's going to squeal at this image, and I just want to let you know I don't mind. The demon tells our hero that he is called the Crimson Fin Demon, and he is the strongest 8-fin demon to ever exist. Hearing that, our boy Aang just stares at him blankly, probably admiring his incredible abs. The Crimson King smiles when he sees that Aang isn't scared of him at all, which only confirms why he was able to reject him previously. He informs our hero that he won't harm him in any way, at least for now, but Aang has some other questions in mind. He wants to know why he was chosen, and he wants to know what has been happening to his body. That's a lot of questions for their first encounter, and the Crimson King is a bit too lazy to answer. Another hand touches Aang's neck from behind, startling him quite a bit. And as we zoom out, we see that the demon made another copy of himself to answer our hero, which only tells him that there's no need to rush. After all, his plans to Aang will be revealed eventually. He slides his fingernail across our hero's hardened muscles, informing that they now share the same body. And in order to keep both of them safe, Aang will have to work hard at evolving himself in the future. I know some of you guys are squealing again, but I have to move on to the next panel before I get demonetized. The copy starts to dissipate, and the real Crimson King now stands in front of our hero. He opens his arms in his direction, telling him to quickly get stronger so he can once again become the perfect existence that he was. Aang was now gaining the strength to get up on his feet, and he was starting to grow pretty tired of being looked down upon. So, he told the bitch to not underestimate him, and came out swinging to show him who's boss. But of course, he was just dreaming the entire time. And when he opens his eyes, he's holding someone's collar. That someone is none other than Sidu Liu, and Aang is now surrounded by everyone who was present on the scene. My man's sleep-talking ended in him grabbing the collar of a white angel, and he got the pleasure of laying his eyes upon some beautifully white marshmallows. You guys don't get to experience the same view, because I still want to stay monetized. Aang was now starting to resemble a monkey, his eyes still fixated on the goods, but his brain clearly warning him that he's fucked. Naturally, he had his lights blown out in the next moment, which he seriously deserved. While redressing herself, the girl ordered the others to bury the bastard, and poor Aang was pinned down to the ground immediately. If you look closely, you can even notice her handprint on his face. But, just as Sidu was about to leave, a familiar voice from behind told her that her actions were nonsense. The 3 squadron leaders were back, and someone dressed similarly to Sidu was leading them from the front. According to him, it was wrong of her to treat her life's savior in such a brutish fashion. Everyone in the hall greeted the man as their master, and Sidu greeted him as her father. Aang was still on the ground after the beating, but his eyes perked up when he heard the word father. Looking up at the man once again, it is now revealed to us that this fellow is Sidu Liu's father, and a person of great importance in the city. The edgelord takes on the humble job of introducing the man, starting with his name, Sidu-san. He is the leader of the most famous martial arts sect in the Helios city, and also the head of the Sidu family. Aang scans the man with his observing eye, noting that Sidu's father has probably been taking care of him while he was in a coma. Once he realizes that, our hero gets up on his feet to politely greet the sect leader, thanking him for taking care of him while he was unconscious. I want to make a comment about their body proportions here, but I guess Sidu's father is a man with a huge skeleton. He's also a man with a cheerful personality, as he tells Aang to not stand on formalities, because taking care of him was the least he could do. The towering man pats our hero on the shoulder, telling him that he has saved his daughter's life, and his family would forever be indebted to him for his extraordinary courage. He then turns to the squadron leaders behind him, and orders them to let everyone in the dojo rest for today. Once everyone is well rested, they will start the celebration for the Demon Wave's retreat. The leaders refer to him as uncle, and bow their heads while accepting his orders. Once again, the kind man tells the leader to not be so formal, since he has watched them all grow ever since they were kids. Instead, he tells everyone to treat the dojo as their home, and take good care of his daughter going forward. She has a prickly personality, but he wants the instructors to train her with the same strictness that they show to the others. Tangting assures the sect leader that he has no reason to worry, since they will always do their best for the sake of their students. Of course, being the brat that she's known to be, our girl clicks her tongue in annoyance. She knows that her training will be even harder going forward. In any case, before any of that happens, Tang wants everyone but Aang to leave the hall. He's got a fuck ton of questions, and this time, he will make sure to get all of his answers. In a matter of minutes, the hall is emptied, and the 3 squadron leaders stand face to face with Aang, dwarfing him with their presence. Tang is the first to speak, and he wants to know how our hero not only managed to escape the one-fin demon in the warrior exam, but also the one from the demon wave. However, the edgelord cuts him off as he was being too careful with his question. There's a much more pressing issue that they need to find out, and they can't afford to talk in circles. So, the edgelord takes the lead, and states that he will do the questioning instead. Aang was nervous with the whole deal, but it didn't stop the edgelord from asking his question. All three squadron leaders stand menacingly in front of him, radiating their threatening aura, with the first squadron leader starting the inquiry. His question was simple. He wants to know if Aang is a demon. I wonder what our hero will answer, and is there a way for him to avoid such a direct question at all? Squadron leaders have asked him if he's a demon, and our hero now has a lot to answer as he sits there silently. His expression is numb, his eyes shot up, and he has no clue how to respond. The leaders on the other hand stay firm, their eyes observant, and their ears eager for the answer. But of course, Aang refutes the question entirely. He comments that the squadron leaders must be joking with him, because he barely escaped the clutches of a one-fin, so how could he be a demon himself? But this is where the edgelord had a follow-up question. He replies that one of those demons was killed by Tang and Gel with their combined powers. And with a smug look on his face, he wants to know if Aang is claiming that he was able to kill the other one by himself. He leans in closer to our hero, asking him directly how he managed to escape with Liu. Aang feels cornered and out of options, and he's left wondering if coming out with the truth is the only choice left. The edgelord gets even more direct this time, proposing a theory that maybe Aang was able to escape because he's in cahoots with the demons. Once again, Aang is seriously contemplating whether he should reveal the entire truth, but if he does, he is quite afraid of the consequences. Worst case scenario, he's worried that the squadron leaders will kill him on the spot. Even if he somehow explains that he's still mostly human, the threat of demonic existence inside him will put everyone on high alert, probably turning them hostile. After all, Aang's body right now is the host to the strongest demon to ever exist. It has quite literally been hijacked by a king. The edgelord is getting a bit impatient with Aang's silence, and as he conjures up an energy blade in his hand, he warns our hero that he will resort to violence if he doesn't get any answers. With the weapon dangling in front of him, Aang wonders if he should fight the leaders and try to escape, because he really doesn't see any other option. But then, the ever-beautiful Gel comes to his rescue, telling the edgelord to chill down on his edginess. Putting back her hair, the sexy squadron leader explains that only 4-fin demons and above can transform into humans. Aang doesn't look strong enough to be a 4-fin demon, and such an entity wouldn't have any reason to infiltrate a C-ranked city. Tang has one more thing to comment on that, which is the fact that demons don't have any concept of comradeship. They are selfish and ruthless, and would never hesitate to kill the humans. However, Aang risked his life to get back Liu, which would never make sense if he was actually a demon. As it turns out, the edgelord knew that as well, so he just pats our hero on the back and tells the others to not be so tense. He was just teasing him a little. As expected of the edgelord, his sense of humor is fucked. He then goes easy on Aang, telling him that he really managed to cheat death along with Liu, which must be very hard on his mind. However, Tang adds that according to Liu, she had fainted during the fight with the one-fin, and doesn't remember anything else that happened. And if Aang saved her from the jaws of death, the squadron leaders want to know exactly what happened. Gel speculates the unthinkable, and wonders if Aang really managed to kill the blue core demon on his own. Her question made our hero's shaky eyes calm down, as he figured out a way to dodge this interrogation. Until now, he had only been focusing on the demon inside him, but he forgot that the leaders were only curious about his fight with the blue bastard. So, changing his attitude entirely, our boy poked out a tongue and boldly claimed that he's a fucking genius. You might notice the reactions of the leaders at the bottom, and I want you to know that I'm making the same face. Anyway, Aang realizes that he might have gone too far with the overacting, so he tones it down by getting technical. He explains that he's able to instantly absorb most of the energy in a core, which allows him to temporarily utilize a much more explosive power. Gel thinks hard about that explanation, and wonders if Aang is talking about a similar burst of power as the squadron leaders when they activate their individual cores. Our boy doesn't know jack shit about any of that, but since the more technical explanation was provided on its own, he decides to go along with it and says yes. That makes the squadron leaders exchange glances with each other, and Aang can only hope that they believe in his story. If whatever he says is true, then the edgelord comments that Aang really must be a genius. Tang entertains the theory as well, and wonders if Aang used the same power to defeat the different one-fin demons on both occasions. Our hero now gets elaborate with his explanation, stating that the first encounter with the one-fin was when he discovered his powers. His body was able to absorb all the energy in the core, which he used to attack the unsuspecting demons with an explosive attack. And since his body couldn't stand the sudden surge of power, he ended up collapsing on both occasions. Tang looks at the boy with a stout expression, thinking that if his words are true, it would explain why the core on his chest was found in pieces. It probably happened because his absorption powers were beyond the inferior core's limits. But even if it all makes sense in theory, the leaders can't help but wonder if that is indeed the whole story. It's still a bit hard for them to narrow everything down to Aang being a genius. Still, Gel gives him the benefit of the doubt and advises him not to use his power too much, since he probably can't control it. She adds that the squadron leaders use a similar method to draw out the core's power, but their bodies can withstand it because they have undergone a lot of training. This is when Tang Ting cuts off her explanation and proposes a trial run with our hero. He wants to test Aang's powers, so he can know for himself if he's really a genius. I guess he still has some lingering doubts about our boy's identity, so he lets out a threatening aura and asks Aang to step out into the arena, where they can test him to his limits. A few moments later, we now stand in the warriors' arena, where the teacher and his student are face to face against each other. Our Aang dons his battle suit to get ready for the test, and there's no doubt in his mind that the squadron leaders are still wary of him. But all of that will soon disappear as Tang Ting slams his hands on the ground, ready for battle. He assumes a crouching animal position, taunting our boy to come and fight him. Aang is a bit nervous to see his murderous intent and worryingly states that he's hoping for a friendly match. But the squadron leader is now starting to resemble a mad bull, and even though the man's technique is very basic when compared to Aang's former self, his current body is still too weak to keep up with Tang Ting. Once again, he looks at the core on his chest and wonders if he should use the demon's power to prove his point. However, there's not enough time to think, as the mad bull is charging, and our hero has to take some action. Tang Ting's first strike is a right hook, which misses our boy as he manages to dodge out of the way by falling back. The massive leader then focuses his energy on his leg, as the ground under his foot caves with pressure, and launches it directly at our hero's face with air-cutting speed. Once again, Aang manages to dodge it. But as we can see from his expression, he definitely didn't expect such lethality. As the leader draws back his kick, and Aang looks at the devastation caused by his blow, he's now made sure that Tang Ting isn't here to fuck around. Gel gets worried that the yellow-haired hothead is forgetting to hold back, so she warns Tang Ting to not go overboard. As the squadron leader comes to a halt in front of our hero, he commends him on his agility. Even if he's weak otherwise, the leader states that his movement is not bad. Aang knows that such praise is useless for him, since he was able to move out of instinct due to his experience from his past life. But when it comes to his current self, he is already reaching his limit. Not to mention, he gets no room to breathe as Tang Ting comes down at him with yet another devastating blow. The punch hits the ground, and massive shockwaves start traveling in all directions, uprooting the arena. The blow this time was even more powerful, and it left a massive crater in his vicinity. Once again, Aang was able to sprint out of harm's way, wondering why the leader is destroying the arena as if it were his own property. But just as he pauses to think of something irrelevant, massive hands of death approach him from behind, taking instant advantage of his carelessness. The leader manages to grab our hero by the neck, which leaves him no option to escape. As Tang Ting towers over the tiny Aang, he's a bit disappointed that the fight is ending so quickly. To give him another chance, he trips our boy's legs with a sweeping kick, and sends him crashing down against a wall on the west edge of the area. The other leaders get worried about the warrior's safety when they see this, but Tang Ting stays his ground in anticipation. The edgelord is afraid that their friend might be losing control, so he wants to put an end to this nonsense. However, Gel still puts some faith in Tang Ting. She knows that he's not someone to overdo things, and wants to wait just a little longer. On the other hand, the squadron leader in question is still hoping for some proper retaliation from our hero. He wants to see the strength of a genius. As it turns out, Aang emerges mostly fine from the dust, and his focused eyes tell us that he hates being underestimated. As he gets up, our boy recalls that the warriors in his past life referred to him as a king, and compared to his power from back then, Tang Ting is nothing more than a child. He was boastful enough to call himself a genius, and he knows that he will fail the test if he can't prove his claims. But since he knows that his current body can't live up to such standards, he decides to borrow some power from the demon king inside him. It may be childish of him, but as Aang stands there relishing in his overflowing power, he feels that he has all the right reasons to act a little selfish. All three squadron leaders witness their student's new aura, which is clearly overtaking the visuals of the entire field. With the force of 1,000 men behind him, Aang moves towards Tang Ting with a dramatic gait. The avatar of his former self can be seen behind him, as he warns his instructor that it's time to switch up the roles. But you see, Tang Ting is able to sense something even more horrifying in his aura. Not only is he being stared down by Aang's original avatar, but the massive presence of the Crimson King behind him is straight up overpowering the poor leader. Aang is standing in a red field of his own, and his radiating demonic power is starting to do a lot more than threatening the squadron leaders. In fact, his synchronization rate with his core is rising rapidly, and even though the core itself is low-ranked, it's showcasing power far beyond its capacity. The other leaders can sense the rising synchronization rate as well, and Gel is now actually convinced that the Helios city might have found its first real genius. Judging from his aura, Tang Ting is sure that the synchronization rate is above 40%, but crazily enough, it still shows no signs of stopping. From what he remembers, Sidulu's synchronization stopped at 39%, and she was already labeled a genius for that. But now, Aang has surpassed her by quite a sizable margin. But Tangting has no room to draw some analysis, as Aang brings his attention back to him. Our hero tells him to not get distracted, because the real fight is finally about to begin. In the very next instance, Aang is inches away from the squadron leader with his fist drawn for some serious damage. The punch finds its mark, and a burst of red energy tells us that the impact was quite strong. But of course, being the behemoth that Tangting is, he blocks the attack with his bare arms, while also managing to commend Aang for his doubled stats. But the show isn't over, and Aang has some vicious follow-up attacks in his sleeve. You see, the first punch was just a feint, and this next kick is the real attack. Aang targets Tangting's legs with the kick, and he definitely finds his proper mark. While reeling back from the pain and losing his balance, the squadron leader couldn't help but admire the young warrior's flawless technique. Not only did he catch him off guard with the feint, but he's also aiming for the weak spots. And now, the same self-proclaimed genius is down to the ground, winding up yet another sweep for the falling Tangting. The kick comes out like a bullet and hammers the squadron leader's shoulder with pinpoint accuracy, stammering him backwards. By now, even the Edgelord is impressed at Aang's way of fighting. His style shows that he's someone with decades of experience, which is really hard to understand from a mere cadet. But then, someone put a more astute observation to the table, claiming that it's actually not a smart move to engage in close combat against someone like Tangting. The new commentator is Sidhu's father, Uncle Zun, and I guess as someone who runs a literal dojo, his words should have some weight in this fight. Both Gel and the Edgelord greet him with big smiles, and apologize simultaneously for using the dojo's arena to test their young warrior. Uncle Zun is afraid that the damage done to the area is beyond expectations, but the Edgelord assures him that he will make Tangting pay for everything. Of course, Sidhu Zun laughs it off by saying that he doesn't mind, since he is also interested in seeing the fight of someone who bears the name of the strongest warrior to ever exist. That strongest in question is currently in a bit of a pickle, as Tangting has managed to catch his kick with his hand. Thanks to his huge build, the squadron leader wasn't toppled off the ground, and our hero is now the one with the disadvantageous position. Tangting's eyes gleam with excitement, and he warns his student that he's not one to lose his grip. This is when we get some background info dropped to us by Uncle Zun, who comments that Tangting was always someone who was able to take advantage of the tiniest gap in his opponent's defense. Which means that for Aang, freeing himself from an ankle grab won't be easy. And as the squadron leader goes for yet another right hook on our hero, it is clear that Aang is basically fucked. But of course, that would only be true if our boy wasn't the main character of this manhwa. He shows an undaunting smile in the face of imminent danger, and as his aura avatar pops behind him once again, Aang announces that he's the one who has the squadron leader in the palm of his hands. He then jumps up into the air, arching himself back completely, while Tangting stops for a moment to see what the fuck he's doing. And in the very next moment, Aang recoils back with a concussing headbutt to the squadron leader's forehead. His maneuver leaves everyone else surprised on the scene, because with the impact of the headbutt, Tangting loses his grip entirely, and our boy has managed to free himself from the ankle hold. Tangting is now holding his head from the pain. He really never expected the old headbutt technique. Aang is now airborne, and the giant human is repeatedly stepping back to stop himself from falling. As soon as Aang touches his feet on the ground, he immediately gets ready for the follow-up. In an instant, the boy launches himself forward like a bullet, and the squadron leader is once again on the defensive. But even with his forehead bleeding, Tangting isn't one to go down so easily. He assumes a defensive stance to intercept our hero, fully ready for the onslaught of his attacks. The Edgelord recognizes the furious expression of his comrade. He knows that Tangting will no longer hold back. And before Aang can reach the leader at all, he jams his fists into the arena, creating a blockade of concrete around him. While still charging forward, Aang knows that his instructor is trying to attack and defend at the same time. And if that's the case, our boy pulls out his left arm to launch the perfect counterattack. A hand made of demonic aura shoots out from his arm, and after thoroughly crushing the concrete wall that protected the squadron leader, he has now turned the Crimson King's palm into a fist. Of course, nothing could have possibly prepared Tangting for this situation, and he's forced to just stand there in a daze. To follow up on his majestic display of fighting prowess, Aang disappears right in front of Tangting with his superhuman speed. He then reappears in the squadron leader's blind spot, still surrounded by the screen of dust from his attack earlier. Gel recognizes that to be the same technique as the one that Tangting used earlier to grab our hero's neck, and the Edgelord calls him petty for resorting to such tricks for revenge. Obviously, copying the instructor's technique wasn't so simple, and Uncle Zun is the first one to point that out. In fact, he comments that it's a showcase of the boy's incredible learning ability. Meanwhile, Tangting is upset that his techniques are being used against him in the fight, so he decided to show Aang his place by attempting to crush him under his palms. But just as Tangting's arm crosses paths with Aang's fist, it becomes clear that he had missed his target. Uncle Zun immediately notices his miscalculation and informs the other squadron leaders that their friend has already lost the match. And he wouldn't be wrong either, because our boy has literally torn a torrent through the air with a single punch, which the squadron leader was obviously unable to block. But naturally, Aang made sure to miss the leader, and Tang Tang knew right away that he did that on purpose. After that, he concludes the spar with the most badass way possible. He saves his instructor the embarrassment of loss, and comments that he could only win because he was going easy. If Tang Tang hadn't shown him mercy at the start, he would never have stood a chance. And if in case you were wondering how the squadron leader missed his attack earlier, it was due to the concussion. Tang Tang was actually seeing multiple images of our hero in front of him, which made him misjudge the actual target. But in any case, it is an undisputable fact that Aang now stands tall in the arena as the victor, and no one should have any further doubts about him being a genius. Tang Tang closes his eyes in defeat and thinks about the meaning of the word genius, because the giant imprint of Aang's fist behind him makes it a bit difficult to conclude his extraordinary abilities with such a simple word. Even Uncle Zun is impressed beyond words, since this is the first time in his life that he has ever seen a warrior with such boundless potential. Just as the spar ends, everyone starts hearing multiple footsteps heading in the direction of the arena. And as it turns out, Aang's whole team has come to pay him a visit. The ever-so-bouncy Makoto is in the front, with Sidhu Liu and Lan Snow just behind her. Looks like they followed the sounds of the fight to check out what was happening. But of course, Makoto would have never expected to witness such an absurd sight. She looks at the utter destruction in the arena and asks Aang what the fuck happened while they were away. Aang tries to sweep it under the rug and simply replies that most of the damage was caused by the squadron leader. As the edgelord and Gel approach the two fighters, Sidhu takes a look around to admire the damage. She's a bit skeptical that a simple spar would have caused such chaos. Meanwhile, the edgelord teases Tang Tang, telling him that he lost quite miserably. But while the big man might be embarrassed at his loss, Aang continuously tries to cheer him up by saying that he's a lot more used to fighting demons. At his continued show of maturity and respect towards his seniors, the dojo master couldn't help but laugh wholeheartedly. He tells the young warrior that there's no need to be so humble, and since he has sparred enough, he calls everyone back to celebrate the day with a good dinner. Aang thanks the master for his hospitality, and goes ahead while stating that he was really hungry. I guess summoning a demon king's power will make anyone's stomach rumble. Uncle Zun watches the boy leave, but his eyes stay as observant as ever. Aang is a young warrior, who's not only strong, but also has the will of a seasoned veteran. He knows to handle things and let his seniors save some face, and he shows no lack of intelligence or potential. With all of that in mind, the dojo master turns to his daughter while showing a hint of seriousness on his face. I guess our old uncle found him a suitable partner for his daughter, so he asks her if she's interested in him as well. I swear, it's always the uncle characters who jump the gun when it comes to relationships. Needless to say, Sidhu's face was immediately blushed with awkwardness and confusion, because her father dropped the bomb out of nowhere. Although, I would be lying if I said I wasn't interested in knowing what she thinks of our boy. Continuing the heartfelt moment, everyone is present at the dinner table to munch down on some delicious food. Uncle Zun raises his cup to propose a toast to thank everyone sat at the table before him, and on behalf of the entire city, he thanks all the valiant warriors who fought for the citizens to the end. He addresses our boy as his eyes sparkle and widen. He thanks him for saving his daughter. But our hero, being the most respectful, bends down to honor the sect leader as he exclaims that there is no need to thank him. What kind of a father would not want such a man to be with his daughter, am I right? Aang raises his cup to drink when suddenly Tang Tang smacks his head with a fist of rage, and he asks why he is drinking when he's not even an adult. Keeping in mind the fact that all warriors need to be 18 to participate in the warrior exam, our hero attempts to convince the squadron leader that he is an adult. Gel laughs as she points out that Tang Tang is using this opportunity to enact revenge on Aang. And it seems Uncle Zun shares the same thought as he tries to break up the tension. He then looks at his daughter, telling her that everyone here is an adult so there are no restrictions on drinking tonight. Although, as Sidhu puffs up her cheeks like a hamster, it seems to me like she's not quite happy with her father at the moment. She sighs with a distressed expression as she recalls the moment, a short time earlier when her father dropped the bomb on her out of nowhere. He stands before her as he points out that the young man's potential is no different than hers. Sidhu gapes her mouth open in confusion as her father strangely, and in a weird manner, tells her that even someone who has a superiority complex would feel attracted to that young guy. I guess our boy really is rising in popularity among the fathers who are looking for a suitable guy to marry their daughter, and Sidhu, in a state of frustration, questions her father's traditional thinking. Sidhu clenches her fist in anger and frustration as she recalls the time when our boy pulled her collar and exposed her goods. She's convinced that Aang is a dummy. Meanwhile, Makoto seems to be enjoying herself being in Aang's company as she gazes at the food with such astonishment, you'd think she had never tasted meat before. Lan attempts to avert everyone's attention back to something important and questions Aang about how he managed to scare the one-fin demon away. While Aang struggles to generate a guided answer, Tang Tang fills out his words to tell that Aang is able to take a portion of the core's strength and use it temporarily to quadruple his strength. Jill, being as sexy as ever, mentions that Aang's ability is similar to that of their squadron leader, and she suggests that he must have unlocked the dormant ability when his life was in danger. She gazes at Aang with her pearly blue eyes to warn him of the dangers of utilizing this ability. It will put a great strain on his body, and the injuries will get progressively irreversible every time he uses it. The edgelord, in a conflict of taste, calls everyone's attention to tell that Tang Tang and Aang had just sparred. He raises his cup with a wide smile and commends Aang's incredible strength, yet he taunts that he needs more training, otherwise his body won't catch up to his strength. Our boy contemplates in a state of seriousness, as he is conflicted to tell the squadron leader that he has already absorbed 2 one-fin demon cores, one of them being the wood-type regeneration ability, allowing his weak body to regenerate instantly. A model of the nervous system tells of the fragile and fragmented parts of his body, as Aang exclaims that the amount of backlash his body experiences is not comparable. But, in a show of maturity, our boy decides that it is better for him to just let them think that his ability is similar to theirs, as he nervously laughs in agreement to their claims. Lan and Makoto seem to be quite impressed by Aang's amazing feats, as the pink bundle of energy captures a photo, while Sidhu glares at him under her shadow. Sidhu gazes upon Aang to realize that it's no wonder he was able to save her, since he possesses such incredible abilities. It seems to me that she's finally starting to see him in a new light. In a slight change of tone, Tang Tang mentions that Aang and Sidhu were initially to be met with the fate of punishment for sneaking out at night, but a loud sigh of relief is heard by everyone, as the squadron leader reclaims them to be redeemed for defeating the one-fin demon. The edgelord breaks up their short moment of pleasure as he reminds them of the team competition, and Jill adds to the gloomy pit to tell them that they are the lowest in their group. Aang shows a sense of commitment and determination as he clenches his fist and exclaims that their team will reach the top. Aang and the team members have worked diligently, as at this point we are told that a month has passed after the demon wave, and the competition for points have reached its peak. Seeing how they were still lagging behind the others, our party discussed between themselves to come to the important decision that they would find a fat sheep. The red-haired asshole from earlier grunts to ask who is challenging them for points, and his confused look is explained as we are told that Aang's plan was to bet on other teams using their points. The Black Gun group stands proudly, as they ask Aang's team if they can even recall the last time they had fought. Sidhu crosses her arms in confidence like the badass girl she is, as she calls them out for 10 points in a solo battle. Continuing with the display of arrogance, the red-haired asshole puts up a mask over his mouth. There are a lot of points on the line, but he still agrees to the challenge, and he warns them that there won't be a squadron leader this time to stop him from beating them to a pulp. Aang's team faces off against the Black Gun group as the face mask on the red-haired guy sparks and crackles, and he instigates the fight to begin as he asks Aang to come at them. A number of people have gathered in the town battle arena to see the battle between the two teams take place. It seems like the crowd is not happy with the choice of teams that are supposed to fight. Our hero is as relaxed as ever, while the red-haired guy sparks a dispute among them as he asks Aang to back out while they still have the chance, if they don't want to come crying out that they were bullied by the other teams. But Aang calmly waits for the fight to begin, and mentions that the winner is yet to be decided. He then looks over to ask the red asshole why he is not representing his team as the captain. And the dude expresses concern as he believes that since the person Aang has up on the battlefield is a girl, they will use it as an excuse to not give them points after losing. But he mentions that thankfully, their team's captain is also a girl, and he believes that she is capable enough to face all of them. Aang smiles widely at this absurd claim, and he gazes upon the guy to advise him to not look down upon their captain either, because Sidhu Liu is not your average helpless girl. Meanwhile, Makoto is busy doing Makoto things, and taking pictures of the fight before it even begins. Up on the stage, Liu slowly steps forward to her opponent, and she asks her to end this battle quickly as the sickly green aura of her wood core starts lining over her body. Sidhu's opponent recognizes her as she mentions that she is known as the unsmiling Rakshasa. The girl then raises a sharp needle in her hand as it gives off eminent dark energy, and she questions to see how well Sidhu will do against her. Best girl Sidhu, with her amazing show of strength, appears before the girl in an instant as she warns her of her presence. Sparks fly upon the impact, and the girl is startled as she grits her teeth to block Sidhu's powerful punch. Black Gun's vice captain was clearly caught off guard, as she didn't expect the agility of a blue core from someone who carries a green core instead. Sparks crackle over the girl's arm when Sidhu touches it with a straight hand, and as she slides across the floor, she uses that energy to disarm her opponent. Sidhu is right to conclude that though the older teams became warriors before them, they rely on their teamwork and cannot do shit against them when it comes to a solo battle, having no idea how to defend or attack. There is no chance for the opponent to break out of this situation as she realizes Sidhu's trick. She has inserted her energy into the muscles so they would spasm out of control. Best girl Sidhu undoubtedly wins this fight as her opponent is rendered motionless, which is an opening for her to attack. It is a well-known taboo in close combat. Sidu does not stop for one moment to let her opponent catch her ground as she bombards her with punches. And the red-haired guy does not believe his eyes as his best recruit fails to deliver, receiving strikes on all her tendons and joints. The Black Gun Group's team captain falls outside the bounds as Sidu looks down on her, and with a sense of superiority and grace, she informs her that the Sidu family is the best at close combat. By the way, let's take this chance to praise the cameraman once again. Dude is going way above his pay grade to provide us with excellent angles. Anyway, Sidu proudly walks away from the battlefield as she flicks her hair back and thanks her opponent for letting her win. The crowd of people chatter at the commendable performance from Sidu, and the Black Gun Group members rush out to call for their vice captain. Aang calls out to the asshole to remind him that he makes sure to transfer the 10 points to their team. And of course, he cannot accept the humiliation, as he hardens his facial expressions to show anger towards the incredible Sidu Liu. In order to redeem himself and his team, the asshole steps forward to ask Sidu if she dares to go against him next. He wants to increase the bet to 20 points, which definitely gets our girl's attention. She undoubtedly agrees to the fight, because she is convinced by the offer of 20 points as the idea seems desirable. But Aang raises his hand in between to leisure her from the burden, and he tells that their captain just finished fighting, so she will take a break. I guess our boy is finally attempting to make a move on Sidu, as he points at himself, passing a smile at her to tell that he will be going up instead. It seems like our hero has already gotten into the head of his opponent, because the red douche is only interested in fighting the captain. Aang knows how to deal with guys like him, and so he tries to reason with the guy by saying that he will only get a chance to fight Sidu if he manages to get through him first. He instigates anger in the opponent, like the persistent guy he is, and shrugs him off to say that it is okay if he does not have the courage to fight him. The Black Gun Group help their vice captain up, as she claims it to be a terrible attempt to start a fight. However, Aang's tactics work on the rage-filled bastard, as he agrees to fight Aang while mad-mouthing him like a child. Meanwhile, his team members simultaneously gape their mouth in shock that their captain actually got baited so easily. Lan turns his head to grab Makoto's attention towards Aang's fight, but she's just busy flashing pictures with her camera. A crowd of people step up close to the battle arena, as it is apparent that the two opponents facing each other are about to start their fight. The opposing captain raises his right arm and conjures up a blue weapon that emerges into his hands. The dude's strange new weapon is a modified blaster, which uses non-lethal air bullets instead of actual core energy. In other words, Aang doesn't have to worry about dying, but the bullets can still hurt him like a bitch if he gets hit. Aang is surprised to see the new advancements made in technology, as he recalls the time back in his day, when if gunners wanted to hone their skills, they had to bring out real guns to the battlefield. Regardless, our hero is as prepared as ever as he skips over the ground to warm up his limbs. The Black Gun Group's members all share the same arrogance and pride, which is quite evident when one of them hysterically mocks our hero and praises the captain's aim to be regarded as incredible amongst all warriors. It is hard to understand the moral context of the red-haired captain when he offers to let Aang use whatever weapon he wants and warns him not to blame the older teams of bullying when he loses. But being the well-calculated person he is, Aang strokes his chin to think about the weapon he wants to choose. He reminisces about the weapon he had used in his previous life, wondering if it is still in that place where he last saw it. Coming to conclusions to not use any specific weapon, our boy shows great confidence as he remarks that he will just use his bare fists. The red-haired captain widens his eyes as he smirks at our protagonist and questions his absurd statement. The other members of the Black Gun Group also share the same expression of astonishment when they hear the words come out of Aang's mouth. The red-haired captain arches his back to point and laugh loudly at our boy. He exclaims and questions if all newbies are this arrogant. Hasn't everyone had enough of the guy yapping around? Our hero shares the same expression, while he plugs his ear with his finger and states that he should have a silencer up in his mask. A lion and rabbit are used as a metaphor as the red-haired captain tries to make a point, that even a tiger hunting a rabbit will make its best efforts in killing the rabbit. The captain does not forgive the humiliation he has had to face after they lost those points, and he viciously glares at our hero, determined that he will take back those precious points. Our hero's core shines bright red. That's when you know he is ready for some action, and he calls for the captain to step forward as they begin the fight. I think I speak for everyone when I say that we agree with Lan when he says that he can't wait for the opponent team's reaction to the information that not only did Aang single-handedly defeated the one-fin demon, but he also won a spar against their squadron leader. All this talk about how great Aang is makes Sidu question if the guy really is better than her. She exclaims that as team captain, she cannot be weaker than her teammates. But her face blushes up with awkwardness as she can't help but accept the fact that every time she sees the dummy's face, she is reminded of what her father had told her a month ago. Love is in the air, and I'm sure you can feel it too. The instructor's arm waves in the air as he asks both warriors to be ready, and he swings to begin the fight as Aang glares into the captain's eyes. The captain immediately moves away at a great speed as dust scatters all over the place. He is zipping through the arena, believing in the fact that the longer the range of the weapon, the stronger its damage gets, and he is determined to pierce 1,000 holes in Aang's body to enact his revenge. It seems like the odds are against our hero when Sidhu realizes that the captain is looking for a better position to shoot and immobilize Aang. But Aang stands it firmly as he closes his eyes and tells himself that since the squadron leaders know the extent of his strength, there is no point in hiding it any longer. As he envisions the Demon King's avatar reaching for him through the smoke, he realizes that if he is to fight him, he will need to regain the strength he had in his previous life. Or rather, he needs to get far stronger if he wants to stand a chance. The redhead is still skipping through the arena with his fancy show of footwork. He notices that Aang is spacing out, and the fury and rage filled inside him is evident as he shouts at his opponent to die, just as he fires the weapon. A bullet made of compressed air shoots out of the weapon, and the severe recoil swings it hard in the captain's hand. No one compares to our hero when it comes to being the absolute badass, because his ember yellow eyes are dead focused on the bullet's trajectory, and he's ready to use his demonic powers. He instantaneously dodges the air bullet zipping beside him, making ample use of his seasoned battle instincts. With the momentum of his dodge, our boy curls up in a ball on the ground, before explosive forward towards his opponent. Aang speeds and cuts through the air as he approaches the captain, but the captain appears to be ready for Aang to rush him. He immediately adjusts the settings on his weapon, and pulls it out to point it at our boy using his right arm. He calls Aang a dumb fuck, as he shouts that his right arm is loaded with tracking bullets. Those same bullets zip through the air, leaving behind a trail of blue core energy. Not only are they hard to dodge, but even if a single one hits their target, the rest will follow suit. The bullets make up the shape of a net to try and capture Aang, as he bends down to find his ground and avoid getting hit at all costs. Water droplets emerge into the air from our hero's body as he concentrates on charging forward. He believes the situation to be perfect for him to showcase his strength. With the help of the water-type blue core, Aang manages to bend his body in such a way that all the bullets zip through the openings left out after his contortion. The Black Gun Group members are in a state of shock, as they cannot believe their eyes when Aang turns into literal water to dodge all the bullets. Meanwhile, the Red Captain is forced to lift up his heels to pull out the last trick up his sleeve. He is now airborne in front of Aang, with the tip of his weapon pointed at him, and claiming that he didn't want to resort to his ultimate weapon. A Black Gun Group member smiles grimly, as he knows that their captain's weapon is able to passively store up power, and can shoot out a powerful beam of energy when needed. Blue light shines brightly over Aang's face as the weapon boots in continuity, and the captain yells at Aang to see how he dodges the strengthened explosive bullet at such a distance. Our boy always has a way out of dire situations, and this is no pickle. He reaches out his hand as it glows green, and upon his command, roots protrude from the floor down below to hold down the captain as he looks to see what is happening. In concern of what is happening below, the captain turns his attention away from the gun aimed at Aang, and it misfires completely by shooting into the sky. Just as his line of sight was impaired, Aang emerges from the smoke to strike a powerful punch to the captain. The captain did not see this coming at all, which is evident by the fact that Aang is able to easily get close to him and break his hold of the gun with a single strike. Shoes squeak onto the floor as Aang swings his body, toppling over the captain. And with that momentum, he strikes a gut-wrenching kick to the captain in the chest. The Black Gun Group members call out in concern for their captain simultaneously, realizing the truth that their team has lost, once and for all. Aang holds his upper body kick position as the red-haired captain slides across the arena from its impact. Aang then stomps the captain's gun on the floor, and with his leg on top of the weapon and a huge-ass smile on his face, he demands the promised 20 points to be given to his team. The red-haired captain trembles in shock, not believing the fact that he has lost to a mere rookie. Meanwhile, Aang's team members cheer on for him to commend yet another feat, while Sidhu concludes that even she was not able to track his movements. After Aang won 30 points from the Black Sun Group, rumors started to spread like wildfire. Other young warriors were eager to battle their team, as you see tiny figurines represent our favorite group to be portrayed as devils, wound up in a circle as they mop the floor with all the challenging teams. Liu's team, after testing the fruit of their labor, started to use the rules of point battles to gain more and more points. Lan Snow won all of his fights with ease, and the girls of the team were undefeated in all of their matches as well. Needless to say, Aang kept making a name for himself as he easily outmaneuvered his every opponent. With each battle, there was a tremendous rise in their ranks, and we were now approaching the end of the month. The gang had reached the first place among the ranks of Tang Tang's squad, ultimately qualifying to participate in the final competition. Now, the final 3 teams will face off against each other in the grand finale. The enigmatic voice of the Edgelord praises the enchanting setting of the place, emphasizing its prehistoric significance. He also notes that as the final competition approaches, he has been observing the progress and growth of each team. The Edgelord then questions the rapid advancement of Liu's team. He inquires about the time it took for them to climb the ranks, acknowledging the challenge such a feat presents. Sexy Gel answers the edgelord's query, explaining that the team engaged in matches against other teams to accumulate points, resulting in more wins than losses. In frustration, she clasps her head, commenting on the messy and desperate nature of such a method. She directs her protest at Tang, implying he failed to intervene and rectify the situation. Tang responds that the team relied on their inherent strength to amass points, justifying his non-interference. He highlights the team's initial strength with the presence of Liu and Eng. Expanding on the commendable team members, he praises Snow and Makoto, mentioning their notable contributions among the formidable members. The trio halts before a gate leading to the archaeological site. Breaking the silence, the edgelord remarks that it's been years since a new squad has entered the finals, underscoring the event's growing reputation. Tang motions for his team to follow as he places his palm on the gate. The gate opens with a radiant glow, splitting into two halves. The team passes through the gate and is greeted by the massive battle arena before them. Team members from other squads seated along the pathway turn their heads to watch the passing team. Tang now eagerly anticipates discovering the champions of this competition. A pink-haired squad member remarks on the rise of a new, unnamed squad in the ranks this time. She directs her question to squadron leader Tang, inquiring about the secret to their team's remarkable strength. Frustration shows on the girl's face as her squad members whisper to avoid being overheard. The squad is revealed to be the Starflower Squad, led by Gel, an attractive and capable leader. The edgelord's winning team is named the Brilliant Squad, and their leader responds to the girl's query as he casually occupies his seat. He informs her that the unnamed squad is actually composed of newbies. Initially thinking they were exaggerating, he admits that their strength has proven to be true. Meanwhile, Makoto is busy stretching her body in a rather interesting manner, her legs reaching for the sky. She observes the buzz among the seats, concluding that everyone is preparing. But unfazed by everything, she continues capturing pictures with her camera. Snow strikes a pose for Makoto's camera, mentioning that the Starflower and Brilliant squads, led by the edgelord and Gel respectively, are the strongest. This popularity contributes to their reputation in Helios City. He then goes on to share rumors that 3 squad leaders who will replace Tang might be chosen from among these 2 squads. Aang overhears Snow's speculation, stretches in preparation for battle, and questions the strength of these squads. He acknowledges the rumors, suggesting that their team might need to put in more effort if such is the case. Aang starts to speculate on his own, expressing his belief that while his body is his weakness, his secret ability, similar to the strength of the one-finned core warrior, allows him to face anyone with confidence. With a touch of arrogance, our hero wonders about the reward for reaching the top position. On the other hand, Gel gracefully strides onto the battleground, drawing everyone's attention. Once all eyes are on her, she calls for all squads to gather up. Once again, I can't give enough praise to the cameraman for such immaculate angles. Anyway, the Starflower Squad rushes up to Gel at her first call, their excitement evident as they squeal upon seeing their team leader. Comprised entirely of girls, the squad gathers around Gel in admiration of her beauty, expressing their readiness to secure the first place in the competition. And if they win, they implore her to lead them to B-class cities for shopping. At that very moment, another squad approaches Gel. The squad leader warmly embraces Gel, and their voice reaches out to the Starflower Squad, advising them to set more substantial goals. The leader of the Brilliant Squad steps forward, stating that his squad eagerly anticipates encountering formidable warriors in B-class cities and engaging in sparring matches with them. The leader of the Starflower Squad reacts strongly to the display of arrogance and belittlement. She shouts, emphasizing that purchasing clothes is just as significant for the girls as meeting strong warriors. Tang and the edgelord make an entrance before the squads, gracefully landing on the battleground amidst swirling smoke. They comment on the youthful enthusiasm displayed. Both squad leaders marvel at the dramatic entrance made by their seniors. Joel, the squadron leader, observes the squabble between the 2 squad members and jests about whether they're going to fight until they fall for each other. This directs the ire toward the edgelord, who's questioned about his consistent flirtatious comments. Realizing the absence of the 3rd squad, Tang scans the area to locate them. Upon spotting the distant group, he calls out to Team Liu, urging them to gather nearby. Then following Tang's instruction, Team Liu follows Sidu Liu as they advance, preparing for the final battle to unfold. Needless to say, they all look ready for the challenge. The teams line up before the squadron leaders as Tang addresses them, stating that since everyone should be familiar with each other, introductions aren't necessary. Tang explains the battle rules, outlining that the finals will consist of 2 segments, a team competition and a solo battle. He emphasizes that the victor will be determined by accumulating points from each segment. Gel adds that they will provide detailed rules as the battle begins, but to ignite the squad's competitive spirit, she teases that they will reveal the competition's rewards. With a wink, she confidently declares that she knows everyone's aiming for the top spot, promising that the reward will not disappoint. Fueling excitement, the edgelord announces that the first-place team will have the opportunity to intern for a week in a B-rank city. The announcement triggers applause and celebration, as everyone appears elated with the competition's reward. However, our hero stands puzzled, seemingly not fully grasping the excitement. Snow engages in conversation with Makoto, expressing enthusiasm over the unexpected reward, and inquiring about her plans for their time in the B-rank city. Predictably, the girl declares that she intends to acquire another camera. And then, Tang summons the team leaders to step forward and draw the lots. The 3 team leaders comply, stepping forward simultaneously while the commotion behind them continues. Evidently, the B-rank city is a sought-after destination for everyone. Conversations among the team members around our hero revolve around the exciting features of the B-rank city. Meanwhile, Aang is just lost in thought while stroking his chin. He sinks into profound contemplation, admitting his ongoing confusion since his reincarnation nearly a century ago. He remains bewildered by many aspects of his new reality. As he reflects on the world's hierarchy of cities, he recalls a time when cities fought for survival individually in his past. He also remembers Snow informing him that Helios City falls under the C rank, one of the lowest ranks, and the hierarchy progresses with each city assigned to its respective rank. With this enlightening information, the system of hierarchy in this world becomes clear. C-rank cities house warriors with 1 or 2 finned cores, while higher up in the hierarchy, they include warriors with 2 or 3 finned cores. He notes that warriors possessing finned cores extending up to 5 fins are considered at the top of the hierarchy, classified as A-rank cities. Beyond that, an S-rank city exists, the unique Breaking Dawn City, which assesses all other cities. The Breaking Dawn City, known as the City of Hope, occupies a central location and is touted to be enormous in scale. It stands as the sole city containing the world's strongest 7-finned core warrior. Aang ponders his past life, comparing his leadership of a city to the grandeur of the Breaking Dawn City. He wonders how his own city fares in comparison. But a sigh escapes him as he contemplates whether his city still exists after the massive battle that unfolded 60 years ago. Lost in these reminiscences, he also speculates on the fates of his comrades from that time, contemplating whether they managed to survive the intense battle. His reverie is broken when a voice calls out to him. Joined by Snow and Makoto, they step forward. Snow playfully chides him for his frequent daydreaming, while Makoto urges him to focus on the present. She points towards Liu, who stands by the lotting box in front of the team leaders, and excitedly exclaims that it's their time to shine. Liu holds a card displaying the number 1, tilting her head to convey that they're the first to compete. As Team Liu faces off against the Brilliant Squad, the announcer's voice resonates in the air. The announcer informs that all weapons have been switched to training weapons, as the first round kicks off between the 2 teams. Makoto points out that their team is still without a squad title, encouraging them to brainstorm cool squad names. Snow chimes in, agreeing with Makoto that they should come up with a name that makes their team sound impressive when it's announced. Aang joins the conversation, noting that the idea isn't half bad, and suggests discussing potential names after the ongoing battle. As the other team members playfully discuss potential names, Liu's nerves become evident as she expresses her anxiety. The Brilliant Squad leader glares at their opponents, questioning how a seemingly lackadaisical team intends to secure the first spot in the competition. Ready to face off, he instructs his team members to choose their opponents, while he takes on Sidu Liu. Naturally, his team members respond obediently to their leader's call. Sidu Liu confronts the Brilliant Squad leader, while Tang and his team stand above. Tang raises his arm, and with a sweeping motion, signals the start of the competition. The Brilliant Squad leader promptly orders his team to scatter, positioning himself to face Sidu Liu. His team members heed his command, dispersing around the battlefield to encircle our hero and his companions. Sidu Liu analyzes the opponent's tactics, speculating that they are aiming for solo battles, and if the opponent's strength surpasses their own, she acknowledges it as a viable strategy. Nonetheless, she laments that they will fight as a united team. Leading the charge, Sidu Liu and her team rush forward, their respective auras pulsating through their bodies. Aang also assesses the situation, deducing that Sidu Liu understands the opposing team's strategy. He concludes that their best approach is to target the opposing team's leader immediately. Aang perceives Sidu Liu's determination as he identifies a major flaw in solo battles, which is the fact that each individual fights for themselves. In a team battle, if the team leader falls, it negatively affects the team's morale. Aang praises Sidu Liu for recognizing this vulnerability and turning it to their advantage. A Brilliant Squad member observes the situation and contemplates whether they should also target the leader first. Based on this insight, the Brilliant Squad shifts their focus back to our heroes, deciding to change their strategy. They collectively charge towards Sidu Liu, now aiming to take down the opposing team leader. Sidu Liu observes the approach of the rival squad and swiftly coordinates her own team, urging them to stick together and provide mutual cover. The team listens to their captain as she rushes forward to approach the Brilliant Squad leader, while the others hold off the squad that approaches their leader. The Brilliant Squad leader's eyes grow narrow as the realization dawns upon him: Sidu Liu is targeting him. He prepares himself to face the opponent, assuming an assertive stance and wielding a blade. He exclaims, questioning if she thinks she can take him on, and warns her not to dare look down upon him. With a powerful step, he cracks the ground beneath him and lunges forward with full force to confront the oncoming opponent. Squad members battle fiercely, showing determination to protect their leader, while the leaders roar with determination, fighting for their respective teams. Proceeding, Sidu Liu approaches the Brilliance squad leader, both prepared for their impending confrontation. The Brilliance squad leader raises his palm, generating a potent energy blast that radiates with brightness. With her arms crossed, Sidu Liu confronts the luminous energy blast advancing towards her. The Brilliance leader triumphantly exclaims, urging her to be consumed by his luminous attack. Recognizing the threat, Sidu Liu turns to her team members, warning them of the danger. She directs them to shut their eyes and shield themselves, explaining that her opponent can channel energy to create blinding light explosions. As the radiant energy blast envelops the surroundings, even the Brilliance team members are impacted by the brilliance of the attack. Both Tangting and the other squadron leaders are taken aback by the unexpectedly intense light attack. Tangting questions whether the edgelord had cautioned the Brilliance leader against using such an attack, which is more suited for solo battles. But the edgelord sighs, stating that he has given him advice on numerous occasions, even if he hasn't heeded it. The radiant light fills the battlefield, prompting the edgelord to surmise that perhaps the Brilliance leader needs a setback to reconsider his combat style. As the intense light subsides, unveiling the battlefield, the Brilliance leader stands firm, his determination unshaken. He adjusts the blade in his hand, confident that someone new like Liu wouldn't withstand his light attack. He firmly believes that her team will crumble once she's eliminated. But just as the Brilliance leader is about to unleash the light attack, our courageous hero steps in, positioning himself between the attack and his comrades, shielding them. Aang wears a specialized watery visor over his eyes, allowing him clear vision despite the blinding light that affects his friends. He confronts the Brilliance leader and questions whether he's aware that this attack also harms his own teammates. He then lifts his leg, arching his body, and then brings his leg down forcefully onto the Brilliance leader's shoulder. The staggering strength and impact of the attack catch the Brilliance leader off guard, sending him hurtling backward. Bewildered and surprised, the Brilliance leader recovers from the assault and clenches his teeth in frustration, wondering when Aang managed to put on the watery visor. Our hero confidently points out that fighting in a team match without considering one's teammates is a grave error. Internally, he acknowledges his clever choice to employ the water element to counteract the blinding attack. As the blinding light fades, the battlefield becomes visible once more. Sidu Liu lands gracefully, acknowledging the restored clarity. However, she's taken aback to see Aang now positioned between her and the Brilliance squad leader. Liu's eyes widen at our hero's unexpected appearance, standing resolute. Aang steps back with a confident smile, instructing his team leader to handle the remainder of the battle. With a satisfied step back, our hero permits Sidu Liu to take charge. As she confronts her adversary, Sidu Liu ponders Aang's bravery, impressed by his successful thwarting of the attack while everyone else was blinded. The battle recommences as Sidu Liu charges forward to strike her opponent, and Aang moves to the other side of his team leader, prepared to engage the remaining members of the Brilliance squad. Fueled by arrogance, the Brilliance squad leader questions Sidu Liu's audacity to attack him again. He intends to retaliate with his light attack once more. Much to his surprise, he realizes his arm feels numb, and he grumbles in frustration, suspecting that Aang dislocated his shoulder when he kicked him. Before he can react, Sidu Liu lands a powerful punch to his chest, her momentum causing his body to bend forward in pain. With a taunting tone, the girl concurs with his thought that battles should be concluded swiftly. Overwhelmed and overpowered, the Brilliance squad leader struggles to fend off her continuous barrage of punches and energy blasts. Amid the skirmish, Aang assists Sidu Liu by eliminating distractions in a comical manner. He playfully tickles and pinches opponents, enabling Snow and Makoto to focus on the battle. However, their lighthearted endeavors are disrupted when something significant grabs their attention, prompting them all to shift their gaze. Sidu Liu stands triumphantly over the defeated Brilliance squad leader as the dust settles. She addresses the Brilliance squad, informing them that their leader has been vanquished, and questions whether they still wish to prolong the fight. The Brilliance squad members are observed catching their breath and displaying expressions of disappointment. Their impending defeat is evident from their demeanor. Tangting verifies the outcome of this round, officially declaring it concluded, and the edgelord lets out a sigh tinged with expectancy. Gel, the commanding officer of the Starflower squad, notices the situation and points out that Aang has yet to employ his special ability. Tangting acknowledges her insight, his expression turning serious as he anticipates the deployment of our hero's unique ability. On the other hand, the Starflower squad reacts with gasps and exclamations upon witnessing the unexpected downfall of the Brilliance squad. Their team leader can't believe that the Brilliance squad actually lost against the newcomers, and wonders if it was only because of Sidu Liu. Refraining from confirming or denying such claims, the Brilliance squad leader expresses frustration at the loss. However, he does admit that they underestimated their opponents. Acknowledging that the Starflower Squad is up next, he warns the squad leader about Sidu Liu's team and reveals their long-standing rivalry. After a short while, our hero and his team face their opponents with determined spirit, ready for the impending battle. Observing our hero's team, the Starflower Squad leader reflects on the earlier warning from the Brilliance Squad. She realizes her mood has been affected by that advice. Rising with authority, Jel, the squadron leader, declares the start of the next round. She introduces the two battling teams and announces the commencement of the duel. An intense rivalry ignites as both teams confront each other, each vying for the coveted first spot that leads to entry into the B-rank city. Charging forward, the Starflower Squad's auras radiate around them, their eyes ablaze with battle fervor. The squad leader urges her team to not let Brilliance's words distract them, and to make sure that they maintain their formation. Snow's core glows and crackles with energy as he prepares to unleash a powerful punch, channeling all his strength into the blow. Striking the ground, he causes it to crack open with tremendous force. A protective dome-like barrier emerges, shielding the team members as the ground shatters. Undeterred by the onslaught, the Starflower Squad presses forward with unwavering determination. Recognizing the incoming opponents, and considering their approach favorable now that Makoto is guarding him, Aang signals with a raised finger. Green energy crackles around his hand as he commands the roots to rise. Surprising the Starflower Squad, tree roots emerge from the ground, ensnaring them and hindering their movement. They struggle and cry out as the unexpected tree roots immobilize them. At this point, I'm pretty sure that the author watches a lot of hentai. Our hero observes the success of his attacks on the opponents, reflecting that the absorbed demon elements, wood and water, continue to prove effective. He contemplates the remaining unidentified elements and wonders what kind of use they can provide him in the future. Recognizing the opponent's immobilization, Sidu Liu signals Snow to take charge. As the warrior steps forward, he envelops himself in a dome barrier, advancing towards the immobilized foes, ready to strike them like a bowling ball. However, the Starflower Squad manages to evade the tree root's grasp and disperses across the battlefield to evade Snow's attack, while he charges through the arena. The Starflower Squad leader tightens her expression as they navigate the unforeseen situation, and with their formation disrupted, she urges her members to regroup immediately. Suddenly, Sidu Liu and the ever-so-bouncy Makoto appear before the squad leader, coordinating a joint attack. They catch her off guard, striking her simultaneously and overwhelming her defense. The squad leader urgently calls for her teammates' assistance, but she witnesses them struggling against the remaining opponents, compounding her predicament. Her gaze fixes on our hero as he lands punches on two of her team members, causing them to falter. In the middle of the battle, the team leader's eyes waver, and her thoughts shift to Brilliance's warning about Aang's strength, perceiving him as the most formidable member of their team. A scene depicts our hero shadowing over a chessboard, symbolizing the battle arena, and chess pieces symbolizing team members. The Brilliance Squad's leader remarks on Aang's ability to unify the battlefield, implying his strategic prowess. And while she was thinking about that, Makoto seizes the squad leader's momentary distraction, capitalizing on her daydreaming. But that doesn't startle her opponent too much, as she reveals that she's an agility user who can easily evade her attacks. The squad leader evades Makoto's initial attack while airborne, but is astonished when Makoto instantly appears before her, revealing her own agility. As it turns out, our bouncy girl is an agility core user as well. In the very next instance, Makoto's swirl opens her leg towards the cameraman, but it's not just to give us a special view. Swiftly, the girl uses her leg to trap the squad leader in a chokehold. The leader struggles against Makoto's hold, unable to break free, but I dare say that I would like to know how it feels. I know you're raising your eyebrows at that, but I'm just your average man who worships thickness. Anyway, the squadron leaders and Tang Tang observe the commotion, realizing that the battle's outcome seems certain. Jel notes the pattern of Sidu Liu's team emerging victorious, and the edgelord can't help but comment how they haven't lost a single match in the entire tournament. After the intense battles, the teams line up before the squadron leaders once more. They announce the initiation of solo battles, in which team leaders can challenge a member of the opposing team. The Brilliance and Starflower leaders both exchange glances with each other, ready to pick out the same opponent. Both of them gesture towards our hero, indicating their desire to challenge him, almost making it feel like they have a score to settle. Tang Tang expresses disappointment at their dispute, explaining that solo battles are one-on-one affairs. He tries to mediate and determine which of the two leaders will fight Aang first. However, our hero interjects with a solution, suggesting that both of them face him simultaneously to save time. He wants to deal with both of his challengers in a 1v2, and you can bet that the two leaders are taken aback by his unexpected proposal. But regardless, their eagerness to challenge him is still evident behind their blackened expressions. I'm pretty sure our boy will wipe the floor against these two, but I can't help but get hyped about how this battle may turn out. Do you think it's possible that Aang suffers defeat from these hot-headed leaders? Or do you think one-sided? As we left off, our heroes had come out victorious in the Warriors tournament, but the losing team leaders were given a chance to fight an opponent from the winning team before the tournament was concluded. Both leaders chose Aang as their opponent, and our boy instigated them to attack him at once in order to save time. This is now the start of the solo battle, and Aang stands smack in the middle of the arena. Adjusting his gloves, our boy reminds himself that this is the last battle of the event, so he should take it seriously and give it his best. The tomboy girl and the leader of the brilliant squad are standing on the other end as opponents, and they don't like the fact that they're being underestimated by an arrogant rookie. Once again, from an angle that gives us the best view, the cameraman takes us to Gel, who explains that the rules of the battle are the same as before and signals the start of the fight. Upon her signal, both leaders from the losing team start the battle by shooting forth at our hero like bullets. Blondie yells at the tomboy to not forget the plan, and the girl yells back at him to stop nagging her. Not sure what kind of plan they hatched before the fight, but their coordination is already a mess. On the other hand, Aang is crouched down on the ground with his left foot forward, which is sparking with a surge of crackling red energy. And using that energy, our hero propels himself at the face of the brilliant squad leader, taking him by surprise. Aang starts swinging his right hand to hit the blondie, while the tomboy shouts for her teammate to be careful. The blondie once again seems pissed that he's being underestimated, and starts gathering a bunch of light beams into his hand to counter the attack. The tomboy notices this, and gets puzzled to see that they're executing their plan already. We're then taken back a few moments, where the two leaders were discussing their strategy for the battle. The blondie was adamant on winning this fight, because this might be their only chance to qualify for a B-rank city. And so, he starts sharing his plan with the tomboy to make their victory happen. He hands her his only pair of special battle visors, which are supposed to shield her eyes from the light of his flashbang. And the moment he blinds him with his light, he wants the tomboy to start attacking him with all her might. The girl had assumed Blondie to be a stuck-up elitist, so she's quite surprised to see him hand over his precious visor so willingly. But you see, the brilliant squad leader knows better that their opponent isn't easy to take down, so he's willing to do anything to win this battle. In any case, he warns the girl to remember the flash as his signal and start attacking Aang the moment it goes off. And true to their deal, Blondie uses a flash which is 5 times stronger than normal, and he triggers it right in the face of our hero to blind him for certain. The radiance of the light is even blinding the squadron leaders in the distance. They comment that the boy is using much more energy than his core can handle, so he probably plans to end this battle quickly. And in a humorous turn of events, Makoto is finally getting a taste of her own medicine, because this time, the flash is pointed in her direction. Meanwhile, the tomboy was left unfazed thanks to her special battle visor, and knowing that Aang must have lost his sight by now, she plans to end things fast. Within a moment, she spots our boy in the light and crouches forward to increase her speed and start the offense. She appears right behind Aang with her fist drawn backward, ready to end this fight in a single attack. But surprisingly, while Blondie himself is blinded by his attack, Aang looks completely unfazed. He gazes back at the tomboy with his cold yellow eyes, confirming his doubts that she would be the one to attack him. Naturally, the girl is shocked beyond belief, not just at the fact that Aang isn't blind, but also at his incredibly sharp gaze. Her senses are immediately overtaken by fear, and she trembles as she feels herself drowning in a sea of cold water. Aang uses the precise moment of hesitation to go on the offensive, and starts water bending to subdue the girl. The water springs forth from his hand, and encapsulates the confused girl in a single instance. It then takes the form of a hand to hold the girl tight, and squeezes her enough to make her visor fall off from her face. The blinded leader of the brilliant squad can see nothing, but shouts out why his teammate is screaming when she's supposed to be the one attacking. But you see, with the visors knocked out, the girl is also blinded now, so she can only shout back to the blondie that she is being attacked. Since he knows that the girl has been incapacitated, Aang shifts his focus to deal with the blondie and turn their plan to dust. While still holding the tomboy with her water element, he uses his wood core to summon a bunch of roots from the ground and knock out the blondie. Even from a distance, this was quite a sight to behold. Our hero was in the center of the mess, and both his opponents were getting thrown out simultaneously from his attacks. They both fall to the ground at the same time, and my boy stands with his arms open, as if asking the crowd if they're not amused. I don't know about them, but I'm definitely loving his growth. He started out so weak, but now he's a total badass. Of course, the team leaders can't witness any of his ass kicking through the smoke, and Tang Tang gets worried that someone might get badly hurt because of that flash earlier. So, he jumps into the arena out of pure concern for his students, and lands gracefully on the ground to knock off the gathering dust. But when he lifts his face to look at the scene ahead of him, Tang Tang's eyes widen in shock, amazement, and fear. He can see our hero's fully blown out demonic aura gathering behind him, surrounding his presence like a cloak of supreme protection. But despite his demon powers going absolutely haywire, my man stands completely unfazed, telling his squadron leader that the fight is already over. Like I said, Aang has turned himself into a seriously cool MC. In any case, with the dust settling down, people were finally starting to get a view of the arena. Members of both losing teams could see a silhouette next to Tang Tang and were eager to see if one of their team leaders had come out victorious. But someone tells them to not get too excited because they're completely wrong. That someone is none other than our girl Sidu Liu, and she has already seen that the victor is Aang. And well, we don't really need someone else to confirm that for us, because our boy is standing in the middle of the goons he knocked out, smiling at his teammates in light of his victory. In the next few moments, all of his squad members jumped down to congratulate him for the win. Lan Snow was thrilled in particular and wanted to know how Aang managed to attack his opponents despite the flash. Since everyone else in the area was blinded, no one could really see what had happened. Aang didn't feel like revealing any secrets, so he simply presented the visor that fell out from the girl's head and claimed that he had stolen it in the middle of the battle to dodge the flash. Snow rubs his head aggressively for a job well done. And back to her habits, Makoto starts snapping some cool pictures. And while others might have been convinced, Sidu is a girl with a sharper intuition, and she thinks that Aang might be hiding something. But her attention is diverted when Tang Tang calls out to the squad Liu, telling them to stand on attention. Immediately at his command, the entire squad takes their stances to greet the squadron leader. As they all stand facing their leader, Tang Tang announces the squad's victory in the competition, congratulating them for their extensive efforts and results. He especially commends Aang, and points out that all of his battles had been a wonderful surprise for him to witness. Not to mention, his last fight with the other team leaders had left a lasting impression on his mind. Our boy stays humble and thanks the squadron leader for his overwhelming praise, but he knows that he couldn't have lost against a bunch of children, even despite his weak-ass body. But in any case, now that they have won the competition, Tang Tang announces the good news that the entire squad has qualified for a B-rank city. They can travel through the underground tunnels tomorrow and make their way towards the nearest B-rank city to start their week of internship. Needless to say, the team was extremely ecstatic to hear the awesome news. They can't wait to head out into the world and explore a different city. After the usual ceremonies, they all head out of the arena, where the squadron leader tells the squad to get ready for the journey and meet him here in the morning. The squad acknowledges his words, and they all begin to walk back to their respective rooms to pack up. They're all excited for the adventures ahead, and Lan Snow in particular is really keen on meeting the 3 Fin Corps warriors in the new city. Seeing them walk away, the edgelord couldn't help but comment on Aang's terrifying potential, speculating that he might even be stronger than all of them. Tang Tang doesn't seem to refute that claim, since he can tell that Aang doesn't belong in a small place like this. He knows a talent when he sees one, and our hero is someone who will keep moving forward, defying all expectations. The edgelord notices that Tang Tang wants to escort the group through the underground tunnels, and even though the tunnels are pretty safe, he thinks it's a good idea to have someone next to the children. Even Gel tells him to be on alert, since it's not uncommon for some no-fin demons to sometimes sneak into the tunnels. Tang Tang is a 1 Fin Corps warrior, so he's sure that everything will be fine. Besides, he knows that his squad can handle themselves even without him. But maybe things won't go as planned, so let me tell you about these underground tunnels first. They were once an elaborate and complicated pathway to transport goods all over the continent when the world was still prosperous. But now that they're abandoned, they're only used as a way to travel between the different cities. And right now, a warrior desperately is running for his life inside one of these tunnels. But he was too late to escape, as a slash of red energy came flying in his direction. The slash dismembered the poor warrior upon impact, sending his limbs flying through the tunnel. We see a hand of a demon holding onto a human body by its head, complaining that the human warriors are far too weak. It scratches its head while trudging across the bodies of his victims, claiming to be lost and not knowing how he ended up in these underground tunnels. We see his terrifying aura as he leaves the dead warriors behind, and it is revealed to us that this is a double-fin demon with unknown abilities and element. His kill record is quite a sight to behold, as he has killed 21 rookies, 9 single-fin warriors like the squadron leaders, and even 2 double-fin core warriors that we haven't even seen yet. Looks like our hero is finally going to meet his proper match. Now going back to our heroes, they seem to now be trekking these tunnels, while Makoto is busy admiring their architecture and taking pictures. She continues to snap one angle after another, while moving along with the rest and wondering how long ago these tunnels were built. Tang Tang replies that the tunnels have existed before he was born, so they're definitely quite old, but not exactly ancient. While being fascinated by a tiny cockroach walking away from a cobweb, the girl inquires if these seemingly abandoned structures are still being used regularly. We get an explanation that the entire network of tunnels was mostly abandoned after the era of their great warrior, Aang. Because when humanity lost him in the war against the demons, humans lacked the resources to expand their cities. Even the energy crystals that they relied heavily upon for survival started to decrease as well. That explanation prompts Makoto to tease her teammate about sharing the same name as the great warrior, which our boy takes in great stride. His response is simply an acceptance of the fact, almost as if he was the one who built the tunnels. That long-nosed behavior of our hero seems to piss off the squadron leader, and he abruptly starts shouting at the boy to stop being so arrogant, telling him that he only shares the same name, so he shouldn't act so smug. While the grown-ass man goes on his fanboy tantrum, the rest of the squad shares a lighthearted moment teasing the both of them. Even Sidu Liu cracks a chuckle at the silliness of their fight and calls them dummies. I guess Tangting finally realized that he hasn't been acting mature at all, so he turns around and tries to regain his composure. He switches on his squadron leader mode and immediately asks the squad to be on guard and be aware of their surroundings. It's time to continue forward. Meanwhile, our hero seems to be lost in some thoughts of his own. He looks at the tunnel with a hint of nostalgia and reminds himself that he was the person who suggested the plan of this structure. But the depth of these tunnels run deeper than what the squadron leaders are probably aware of. You see, these weren't just some tunnels to connect between the cities, but an extremely expansive maze of underground networks. Not to mention, it was also the safest and most prosperous route for trading, which the humans could use without any risk to their lives. As he touches a wall and feels the mold on it growing, he can hardly believe the state of these tunnels. Reminding himself of his past glory, the boy finds it sad that the greatest structure of his time has been reduced to some ruins after his death. While Aang was lost in nostalgia, Lan Snow had some questions for the squadron leader. He wanted to know more about the energy crystals that he mentioned earlier. Tangting answers him by saying that the crystals are a byproduct of the demonic cores that they harvest from demons. A single demonic core can provide an immense level of strength to a warrior, but they have to go through a process of refining first so they can be used by humans. When the process fails, the cores gradually merge into a big massive volatile energy, which is called the energy crystal. These crystals were strong enough to be able to provide power to an entire city, almost like the electricity production of the past. For the sake of obtaining demon cores and refining them into these crystals, many high-ranking cities would often organize large-scale demon hunts. After obtaining them, these crystals would then be distributed according to the rank of each city. Tangting explains that the party is currently heading towards a B-rank city called Peather City, and it's not just for them to increase their knowledge and experience, but also because he needs to collect the energy crystal for their own city. If the cores are so important, Makoto wonders what might happen if they were to be depleted of power, and the city lacked a new one to replace it right away. And with a serious face, Yao Tang replies that such a scenario would result in the entire city getting crippled, as all of its operations would be halted because there's no power. That startles all three members of the team except Tang, as they once again realize the grim reality of their world and their crucial role in its survival. Tangting continues to elaborate on the consequences of such an event, where the lack of energy from the crystal would make normal life in the cities become unable to continue. Not to mention, the city's most important function, defense mechanisms and weapons, would become completely useless as well. Lastly, without those protective mechanisms and the inability to continue functioning normally, people would be forced to leave their homes and take refuge elsewhere, which is no less than a calamity. The entire squad goes silent after that explanation, not knowing what expression to make at this sudden hit of reality. So in order to break up the serious mode, Tangting laughs it off by saying that they already have enough power in their energy crystal to last them for 3 months. They're only heading to fetch a new one as backup. It's not because there's an emergency. Feeling a bit relieved, Makoto starts showing her tongue to their squadron leader for scaring her so much for no reason. Still, Tangting tells his squad to be prepared for Peather City, because not only do they have a lot of double-finned core warriors, but also 2 triple-finned cores as well. In fact, he explains that one of those warriors has also managed to get an astounding 69% synchronization rate with the core. That makes the whole squad exclaim in joy, as they've been really excited to meet up with stronger warriors. Of course, with the exception of Aang, who was already once a monster that was a 7-finned core warrior, with a record-breaking synchronization rate of 96%. Anyway, Makoto comes across a big red button at the side and couldn't help but try to press it, when Aang suddenly yells at her to stop at once. The squadron leader noticed that, and the poor girl was met with a bonk to the head. While crouching there like an innocent puppy, Makoto cries that she just couldn't resist trying to press such an appealing button. But of course, Tangting is angry that she was being so careless, thanking Aang for stopping her in time. While rubbing the sign above the button to reveal the lettering, the squadron leader explains that this is an emergency button to forcibly close the tunnels, and is used to separate one tunnel from another when an emergency situation occurs. And with the lettering now visible, we now see that the sign reads as absolute closure. Tangting then points out the circular seam above them, which is actually a gate to a thick metal wall that comes down when you press this button. Of course, it's only used in case of extreme emergencies, so the other cities and tunnels can remain safe. Aang seems a bit pleased to see this mechanism in working condition, as it was the most important defense feature of the tunnels. But then, his senses spike with all the wrong signals, as Aang notices something extremely terrible ahead. He can sense an intense surge of bloodlust, and his warrior instincts are warning him of the danger. The feeling is coming from the front, and it seems to be getting closer and closer. Triggering his core to conjure up a weapon, our hero pushes ahead of the squadron leader to get ready for the trouble. For a second, Tang doesn't realize anything, but then his nose picks up an almost overwhelming scent of blood. That makes him look at Aang, confused at the fact that the boy was able to detect it way before him. But now is not the time to think about such things, as the squadron leader orders his squad to assume their positions and get ready for combat immediately. Up ahead, the stench of blood was only getting worse, and streams of thick red fluid could be seen inching in their direction. As soon as he stepped on it, Tang realized that the liquid was blood, and unfortunately, it seems to be coming from the direction of Peather City. A humanoid figure with a glowing chest walks out from the darkness, and the squad assumes that it might be a demon. However, as the figure steps into the light, they all see that it was, in fact, another warrior. The warrior seems bruised and battered, but he can still recognize that our heroes come from the Helios City. However, before he could talk any further, his eyes rolled out from exhaustion, and the poor fellow falls lifelessly on the ground. Tang rushes to his aid and asks him what the hell happened to Peather City for him to end up like this in the tunnels. With his last remaining strength, the warrior explains that the city was hit with a large humonic wave, and Peather City has already raised the abandonment siren. Hearing those words makes the squadron leader lose the color on his face. He can't believe that such a thing has actually happened. Sidulu doesn't know what the city abandonment siren means, and asks the leader if they should rush to save the people. Tang finds it hard to look the girl in the eyes upon her innocent question, and slowly answers that regardless of the rank of the city, there is only one scenario where the abandonment siren goes off. And sadly, that scenario is when all the warriors in the city have perished, and no one is left alive to protect the people. Naturally, the entire squad goes numb upon hearing that explanation, unable to face the reality. Aang is almost about to burst in rage, since it's hard to imagine the number of lives that must have been lost for the city to raise the siren. And then, when he was distracted by his anger, Aang notices a sudden spark in the darkness of the tunnel. That spark turns into a whip of energy, which shoots forth to pierce the fallen warrior on the ground, while the others try to dodge away from it. Trying to shield himself from the attack, Aang curses himself for getting distracted. And then the whip of energy retracts back into the shadows, taking the warrior along with it. The warrior then ends up in the massive hand of a demon, who seems quite happy to have found him. But after seeing that there are still more warriors left to kill, the demon gets confused where they came from. The warrior tries to warn the others to run, but the demon is already excited to kill its new prey, claiming that he won't be able to report his mission a success if people are left alive. And since the warrior was being noisy, it snaps off his neck in order to make a statement. The demon then smashes the head against the tunnel's wall and steps out into the light with his abhorrent face, ready to continue his killing spree. It is now that we get to see that the creature has a red core and uses the fire element to fight. His kill record has also been updated, and he now has one more single-finned warrior added to the list. On paper, it is clear that this demon is far above the power level of our team, so how will they come out alive from this fight? Will sacrifices have to be made? Or will they all manage? We left off. A horrifying double-finned demon had annihilated all the warriors inside the tunnel passage, and was now aiming to destroy our heroes. Holding a rope with a bladed end as his weapon, the demon looks pleased to see that more humans are alive in the tunnels, which means he has more targets to kill. It swings his weird weapon in anticipation and thrill of the hunt, deciding on which target to kill off first. Opening its disgusting mouth and licking its grotesque teeth, it now seems to have made the decision. And with that, the demon finally thrusts the blade in the direction of its chosen target. It seems to have aimed at Lan Snow, and the weapon was coming directly for his face. As a red beam of slash cut through the darkness, the scene faded and to reveal that Snow's squadron leader had managed to block the attack just in the nick of time. Tang held the bladed edge with his armored gloves and a knife, but the force behind it was so strong that it ended up tearing his right glove to shreds. Fortunately, before the blade could cut through him, the squadron leader managed to deflect it straight into the ceiling above. Seeing this feat, the demon scratches its head, and comments that the warrior seems stronger than the ones he was fighting earlier. But contrary to his high praise, Tang was already at his limit after facing a single attack. His hands were trembling, and as he realized that the demon was far stronger than he had ever expected, he knew he wouldn't be able to tank another blow. But now wasn't the time to consider such an option in the first place. The man knew that he had to do anything possible to protect the kids. And so, without a single moment's delay, he grabbed Aang by his arm, and along with the rest, he started sprinting away at full speed in the opposite direction of the demon. Of course, the demon wasn't going to let that happen, so it crouched down to propel himself forward and chase after the enemy. With its burning hoofs on the ground, it shot itself into every wall to ricochet and build up momentum, until it turned itself into a ball of fire to tail behind our heroes. Sidulu spotted the emergency button they had left behind earlier, and asked everyone to step behind the doors so she can press it to stop the demon. But it was already too late, as the nightmare of a creature was already above their heads, moments away from slicing them up with his claws. In a moment of desperation, Aang brought it upon himself to save his comrades and push them forward to safety while staying behind. All 4 members of his party went tumbling across the gates, and Aang started rolling forward to go behind the scene while the demon was still confused in his tracks. As soon as they stopped on the ground, everyone looked behind to see if Aang was safe. It looks like the boy had stopped his tumble by jamming a knife into the ground, but the demon was right behind him to spell his doom. With the fire trailing behind him, the 2-finned creature once again shot forward like a bullet, but with a new target in sight. Of course, Aang saw him approaching, and he had never been more ready to take the action. In a single heartbeat, he turned around and smashed the plastic cover to press the emergency button, and the gates were now starting to close between him and his comrades. City was the first to sprint forward to somehow bring her friend back to the safe side. But as Aang stood there with the doors closing, and the charging face of doom and hell right behind him, it became clear that she was already too late. Our hero knew the same, so he turned his face away with a determined look, ready to see this through the end. His sacrifice and decision-making was great, and I swear, he's really turning out to be one of the best MCs of all time. Sidhu and Nakoto leaped forward while screaming his name, but the massive gates of steel closed on them before they could do anything. Unable to accept such a fate, our girl started banging on the doors in desperation, screaming at Aang to tell her if he's okay. On the other hand, Tangting was remembering the last words of our hero before he pushed everyone away. He had told him to keep his friends safe. He forces himself to collect his senses and tells everyone else to calm down. Aang has given them a chance to survive, and he doesn't want to waste that opportunity. Of course, that doesn't fit right with the remaining 3. Lan Snow and Makoto make the argument that Aang can't survive against a double-fin demon, so they have to head back and save him right away. The usually calm and collected Sidhu is furious as well, and suggests the absurd idea of breaking open the metal doors to save their teammate. Tang understands their feelings, but he explains that the gate is a level 3 security measure that can withstand attacks from 3-fin demons, which means that breaking it is impossible with their strength. The squadron leader finds it pitiful, but he knows that they have no choice but to give up. But once again, his team members beg him to do something, to come up with a way to save their friend. It looks like they're ready to do anything for the sake of our hero. Tangting replies that even if Gel and the Edgelord were here to help them, there's nothing they could have done. But just then, his eyes shot open as an alternate solution suddenly jumped in his mind. He remembers another route that they can take, so of course, the party starts running immediately until they come across a bunch of tunnels that split into different routes. They can get to a high-ranked city from here and ask them for help. The squadron leader skids to a halt when he spots the tunnel he needs to take, and all 3 of his students follow right behind him as he rushes into the shadows. Tangting knows that it will take a while to get to anywhere useful, but in his mind, he knows that Aang will hold out. Meanwhile, green blood was splattering on the closed metal gates from earlier, and we see that Aang and the demon was having a go at each other. The blood had come from the demon itself, and it was thanks to our hero plunging a knife in his chest. You can also note that one of his eyes is glowing red. With great force, he kicks the demon back to create some distance, but it also ends up spinning the knife out of the creature's chest. After that, our hero proceeds to regain his balance by placing one of his hands down on the floor, and immediately, he transforms into a half-demon with a horn sticking out of his forehead. A threatening red-colored energy surrounds him, and our boy claims that he can finally use his full strength. His new appearance comes as a surprise to the demon. It questions whether it's fighting a human or another one of its kind. Aang replies that he doesn't really know that either. He's only sure that he would have had to transform in front of his friends if the demon was taking his fight seriously. But since no one is here to see him now, Aang is free to go all out and rain his terror on the demon, and lust after its red energy core. From his aura alone, the demon is startled that the human is giving off stronger energy than a single-fin demon. But the real fight has only just begun, and Aang starts utilizing his green core to bring out some tree roots for offense. The many roots start to lash out like whips towards the double-fin menace, and it's looking like the attack will deal a lot of damage. However, it seems like the demon isn't afraid, as its fire-type element is the perfect thing to counter the wood that's easy to burn. So of course, it unleashes all of its energy into a huge ball of fire, burning every approaching object in its vicinity. Aang sees that his attack was rendered useless, but he doesn't show any shock on his face. Meanwhile, the demon is now fuming with scorching hot flames in its mouth, ready to consume its opponent and add his abilities to its arsenal. It cocks back its head to gather up a concentrated blast of fire, before shooting it in a straight line at the direction of our hero. The attack seems huge and undodgeable, but Aang was nimble enough to duck under the fireball with ease. The fire ended up hitting the metal door, and our hero was now heading straight towards the abominable demon. It started enveloping its entire body in flames as it saw that Aang was trying to engage in close-quarter combat, and the burning coat made him feel like he had the advantage. But as it stood there like a pillar of fire, Aang was ready to trigger his second power to deal some damage. With a fistful of water element, he punched the living fuck out of the cocky bastard, knocking the air out of its lungs. Seems like the claw had managed to penetrate its body, and the creature was confused how a human could possess the power of two different elements. But this was Aang's turn to shine, and he didn't waste any time in grabbing the demon's core from its body. The overcharge of volatile energy ended up in a massive blast. But amidst the fire, we could see that our hero was already enveloped in a bubble of water. Soon the dust settled, and Aang emerged from the ashes, holding the double-finned demon's head in one hand, and its red fire coat in the other. But that doesn't seem like the end of this battle, because in an unexpected turn of events, we see a horde of charging demons stampeding across the tunnels. Aang picks up on the noise and looks to the side to see what's causing it, and to his surprise, a massive wave of finless demons is at his throat, most likely attracted by the sounds of their fight earlier. Aang looks at the red core gem in his hand that he extracted from the double fin, wondering if it could give him another boost of power. And so, he crushes the core with his absurdly strong grip, and the sheer wave of its potent fire energy scares off the approaching demons. As he holds the burning core in the air, he states that the devil's fire will become his power. And with those words, he brings it closer to the embedded core in his suit, which immediately starts absorbing the fire energy. Aang opens his arms and closes his eyes, fully focused on absorbing the life essence of the incredible gem that he has just consumed. Cracks of light begin to course throughout his body, fading away the black color of his eyebrows. At last, he stomps down on the ground with an incredible display of power, and we see that yet another horn has popped out of his forehead, along with a bunch of white hair on his head. With both of his eyes turned demonic, and the face of the Demon King showing through, our hero gets ready to utilize the surge of fire energy in his body, and take down his enemies. The author informs us that his third evolution has been completed, and he's now in his double-fin demon form. Countless finless demons are rampaging in his direction, and he decides to counter them with the move he encountered in his latest battle. Cocking his head back, he mimics the move of the double-fin demon by gathering a ball of fire in his mouth. And of course, he used it to absolutely blast away the approaching demons into ashes and dust. His fires wreaked havoc in the tunnel, and out from the burning flesh of the demons and the rampaging flames, he emerged completely unharmed and unburned. His face looks wicked with anger, and he's glad to have burnt away the bastards for what they did to the innocent soldiers in the tunnels. The king's aura radiates around his body, not with the golden glow of the fires, but instead by the crimson-red layers of the Demon King's power. The next panel takes us to a seemingly closed but destroyed emergency opening in the ground, and we see a lot of destruction around it. Out of nowhere, the opening is blasted away by a pillar of fire, sending out some parts of the demons along with it. It was the doing of none other than our hero, and he's now walking up the stairs to head out of the tunnels. Before taking his last step out, he lifts his head to look at the horrifying sight around him. As we zoom out, we see the bodies of the B-ranked city's people scattered across the area. And as we zoom out a little more, Feather City paints the scene of such chaos and hell that it sends shivers down your spine. The entire place has gone up in the flames, and it seems like no one has been left alive to tell the tale of what happened. Aang sees the level of destruction, and almost finds it hard to believe how such a great city could have been razed to the ground. He walks among the corpses and the scabbing crows that feed on their bodies, witnessing the horrors of a demonic wave. He comes across a warrior impaled by spikes made of wood, and it doesn't take him long to guess that he was probably killed by a wood element demon in a single strike. On his left, he comes across some burned ground and charred bodies, assuming that an area of affectability was cast over here. Most likely the work of a fire element demon, who had its fun burning alive the helpless victims of its cruelty. Walking along further, he recalls that his squadron leader had mentioned how there were 2 triple-finned core warriors in this city. But he didn't have to think hard about what could have happened to them, as the flocking crows gave away the suspense. As Aang looked above, he saw the feet of the warriors, who Lan Snow and his other friends were so eager to meet at the beginning of their journey. Both of them were impaled by wooden spears and hung up in the air to set an example for the rest. We know that they were the triple-finned warriors, because of the 3 lines on their dead demon cores. With his own demon core glowing red with 2 lines, Aang stares at the warriors in silence. He summons a bunch of roots from his wood element powers, and reaches for the warriors to bring them down. Gently, he places the man and woman on the ground, commending them for being admirable warriors and valiant defenders of the city. Of course, to not let them see this horror from beyond this world, our kind hero closes their eyes to make them rest at peace. He once again commends them for fighting bravely, and wishing them a good rest in the afterlife. As he crouches in the midst of their bodies, Aang can clearly picture the terrible fight they must have had to endure until their inevitable demise. In the end, he can't help but feel enraged at the effects of war. Just then, a boy approached behind him with a knife, calling him a demon and demanding him to step away from the bodies. Aang's eyes shot open. He couldn't believe that a survivor still remained in this ashen place full of corpses. It's quite clear that the boy is scared out of his wits, but he still stands strong in his pride, surmising that a demon who can mimic the looks of a human must be very high level. He states that the triple-finned warriors have saved his life, and he would never let another demon bastard taint their honor. But unbeknownst to the both of them, his loud commotion has alerted a few lurkers. Aang is glad to see a survivor, but he knows that the boy would never trust him in his current appearance. But before there's even a chance to explain, the poor boy gets attacked by two demons from both sides. They swept their claws at him, and Aang was too late to react to anything. As soon as he watches the boy falling down to the ground after getting struck by the demons, his gears start to turn. In a fraction of a second, our hero bursts forward with a flaming kick, tearing apart the body of one of the demons, while also utilizing his wood element to impale the other. And before the boy's head could touch the ground, Aang was there to support him by the neck and hold him up. Lifting up his injured torso, our hero promises to heal the boy of his wounds by the use of his wood element recovery abilities. But sadly, the boy can hardly open his eyes after that blow, and he slowly lifts up his finger to point at his savior, asking him if he's a demon or a human. And with that, as sad and regretful that it is, the boy draws his last breaths in the arms of our hero, who still can't seem to cope with the reality. He puts his body back to the ground and asks the boy's question back to himself. Right now, he's not sure himself if he's a human or a demon. However, as we zoom out to see him surrounded by yet another wave of finless demons, there is only one thing that seems certain in Aang's mind. He gets up from the ground, burning and seething, and absolutely fuming at the disgusting creatures all around him. He looks at those hateful bastards with his golden glowing eyes, ready to shred every last one of them into pieces. That's right, as he stands there with wings of fire sprouting out of his back, Aang knows that his identity or humanity doesn't matter. He's only sure that his determination to kill every single demon on this planet remains the same. What do you think will happen next in this saga? What will our hero do after fighting off this monster wave? And will he face yet another high-ranked demon in the city which he can devour? And what has happened to his comrades? Look overlays the fury our hero feels as he slumps over himself in the face of the enemy. He sighs and takes a deep breath before rushing forward, mouthing his desire and determination. He will kill all the remaining demons that stand before him. With his two-fin demonic transformation complete, Aang is now an adversary even the strongest fear to face. He positions himself to charge at the horde of demons that march towards him, with the ground cracking beneath him. And with the blink of an eye, Aang is present among the roaring finless demons as they reach for their target. Aang swiftly charges through the weak enemies in heroic fashion, dropping behind a seat filled with explosive liquid over the demons as he flies away from the blast. And the demons remain dazed and confused as the explosion ensues. More explosions follow as our hero stands heroically before the flying bodies of the demons. He contemplates and notices that he can use the flames to ignite explosions, though he expresses disappointment upon acknowledging that he cannot use it to fly. Following the contemplation, Aang mysteriously projects himself into the sky as the flames propel him at an insane speed. Among the ensuing battle, he approaches a strong demon and grabs him mid-air, and while holding the demon firmly in his grasp, he attempts another move. The demon growls and roars violently as he gets dragged through the air by Aang, before being slammed and shot into the ground with an amazing blow. Aang reveals his attempt, elaborating that he planned to embed the flames into the demon's body before shooting it through the ground below. A loud blast echoes through the battlefield as the demon crashes into the rubble. Shockwaves are sent throughout the area, and our hero shows a menacing smile in amusement. Aang now realizes that the demons can be used as weapons if he embeds the flames into their bodies to turn them into bombs, and he acknowledges the thought of more ideas to use the elemental energy. Up from the sky, he now observes that the remaining demons have begun to run away from the battlefield, and this is not something that he can allow. Our hero charges onto the demons as he crashes into the ground, breaking the foundation below. He warns the demons of their cowardice before burning them all to the flames. He now stands atop the burning bodies of the demons as their ashes scatter away through the wind. Deep in thought, Aang recalls how his whole squad was planning to visit this city for education, and now it has been reduced to a ruin. Aang expresses his squad leader's desire to collect the energy crystal, and he reflects upon his actions as he acknowledges that Helios City's energy core will last them for up to 3 months. Contemplating his actions, our hero now determines that he needs to find the place that hides the crystal that was originally here, or else he endangers the lives of all the people who live in the city. He wonders where he should look first for the crystal, and takes a glance over the horizon before he reflects upon the resources he currently has in his inventory. Before the realization dawns upon him, he uses his wood element's energy, spreading vines across the city grounds to search for energy fluctuations, revealing the exact location of the crystal. The elongated vines spread throughout the city as they all lead back to our hero, covering him from head to toe as he focuses on finding any fluctuations. Not long after searching, Aang notices a change, and immediately breaks free from the vines covering him, rushing forward through a broken pathway into the ground. He reveals that the crystal is underground, but the energy fluctuations are weak, which probably means that the crystal has been protected well. Celebrating the big reveal, he jumps down the hole in amusement, and notices sparks of lightning that surge throughout the hole as he leaps through. Landing onto a foundation, Aang observes a peculiar tower standing before him, and he expresses that it seems to be the system that maintains the B-rank city's energy. Curious to know where the crystal is located in such a place, our hero takes a look around before an automated broadcast siren calls for soldiers to protect the energy crystal. Aang follows the sirens into a hall as he celebrates the reveal of the energy crystal's location. But his celebration and joy are short-lived, as the horrifying sight at the end of the hall make him take a step back in absolute shock. Our hero grunts and grits his teeth in frustration at the damned demons, who got to the location before him and got hold of the crystal. And he observes the corpses of the poor soldiers that died as they desperately attempted to protect the crystals. Observing the situation, Aang concludes that this was an instructed attack, and the demons seem to have become much more intelligent than before, because not a single crystal was left undamaged inside the sealed storage. Contemplating the detrimental effects that will follow if our hero is unable to get a hold of even a few crystals, Aang grits his teeth yet again and determines that he must find the crystals before Helios City goes into a paralyzed state. But before he can do that, he needs to go to a military base to get some supplies before setting off again. And he does just that, now fully determined that he must find a new city within 3 months, then bring the energy crystal back to Helios City. After the battle, headlights from a military vehicle flash through the battle preparation station as the gates slowly start to open. The engine revs violently as our hero presses against the pedal and comes out blasting through the walls. With shades on and driving in true heroic fashion, our boy now embarks on a new journey as he makes it his goal to find a new city to save his friends. Driving through the abyss, Aang acknowledges that the wilderness outside the cities has never been explored before, and he expresses that the mist will thicken as the night falls. He now approaches the desert terrain, which is a huge city covered in a sandstorm in the past. Aang drives through the broken buildings of the city as he expresses that the buildings teemed with life in the past, but now they have become nests for the demons. Our hero makes his way through the dirt road as he takes a quick glance at his map, looking over at the next city that has been pinpointed. But just then, a mysterious figure observes the trespassing hero coursing through his territory and cuts down on a rope that follows a barrage of falling wood upon our boy. Aang desperately curves the vehicle to avoid getting trampled by the wood, and succeeds in doing so. Following the commotion, he gets out of the vehicle as he wonders if it could be the doing of a demon. But of course, he was wrong, and just as the realization dawns upon him, a voice yells at him as a gun cocks and is aimed at the trespasser. The voice belongs to a mysterious woman, who instigates and demands Aang to reveal his identity. She threatens his life while wondering if he belongs to the hunting team, and Aang expresses a look of disappointment upon hearing this statement. The mysterious Ravager shouts in a threatening tone, demanding that the trespasser reveals his name, while our hero, calmly observing, expresses it to be a troublesome situation, as he did not expect to come across a living human in such a place. Aang attempts to de-escalate the situation as he raises his arms and submits himself, explaining that he is not someone from a hunting team, but rather a normal human warrior who has come here out of necessity. Of course, the Ravager does not seem to buy this explanation, and exclaims that it is impossible for a human warrior to come all the way here, all by himself. The Ravager feels threatened and claims that our hero is a scout from the Silver Wolf hunting team, but Aang seems to be confused and clueless upon hearing this term. In another attempt to calm things down, he expresses that he is not from such a hunting team, and he elaborates that it is hard to explain. But before Aang can mutter another word, the Ravager's gun clicks, and a shot is fired from the weapon she holds. The bullet fortunately strikes the ground as the woman makes a statement, yelling and demanding that the trespasser stay quiet. Desperate to know, the Ravager exclaims that people like our hero are just bastards who are seemingly worse than demons, and she questions Aang, asking him where he's keeping her comrades from the Branded Guns hunting team. The Ravager demands that he answers her question, but Aang is completely clueless. He immediately contemplates the facts that the Ravager has presented, concluding that her comrades must have been attacked by the Silver Wolf hunting team that she mentioned earlier. Aang attempts to reason with the Ravager as he tries to explain that though he has no way to prove himself, she will not be able to talk to anyone if she keeps pointing a gun at him like so. However, just as the Ravager lowers her gun in agreement with our hero, Aang's eyes widen as he suddenly realizes that more of the hunting team are coming. Just then, a bullet is shot through the Ravager's arms as they pass through, making her drop her weapon. She is helpless as she falls down, and Aang turns to the revving motorcycles that approach them. It only takes a quick glance to realize that the scouts from the Silver Wolf has come to hunt them as well. 2 scouts break their vehicles against the ground as they put on a wide menacing smile and scoff at the sight of remnants left from the Branded Guns hunting team. The Ravager falls down in despair as she realizes her helplessness because she can't use her arms to pick up her gun. At last, the scouts from the Silver Wolf approach the woman as one of them grabs her from the hair to take a look and calls for his partner to state that the remnant is actually a pretty woman. The scout laughs hysterically as he mentions his desire to make use of the woman they have found, but that's when our hero makes his entrance and smacks the man away with a strong kick to the face. His partner's mouth is left wide open as he gazes upon the shocking turn of events, while our hero heroically lands on the ground before the scouts, protecting the helpless woman. Upon questioning why she wants to go along with him, the woman explains that the nearest city is the Manhwa town, an extremely small rank C city, though she elaborates that it's already been taken captive by the Silver Wolf hunting team. You see, she went there a few days ago to rescue the town with her own team, but ended up failing and losing all of her comrades in the process. The woman further explains that they originally had a chance to win, but they failed because the leader of the Silver Wolf hunting team had broken through to become a triple core warrior, overwhelming them with his strength. Their own leader was a double core warrior who could not contend with the overwhelming strength of their enemy, and so their forces failed, leaving only herself as the sole survivor. The woman expresses her wish to save and rescue the city if it does not affect any of his other plans, exclaiming that she will do anything to assist him in the process. After hearing the explanation, our hero deepens in thought as he contemplates and recalls that in his previous life, the hunting teams were never able to do things like this, and he questions what the new and current management is doing to allow such things to happen. The woman also mentions that the reason why the Silver Wolf is taking over cities is that they are in search of an energy crystal, though she confesses to not know the reason. Now that he knows that the hunting teams dare to even take the city's energy core, he asks the woman to take him there, exclaiming that she has given him more than enough reason to be furious at those bastards. Following the heroic determination, our hero continues to embark on his journey to save his friends and comrades from eternal doom as he travels under the pale moonlight and through the forest terrain along with the woman. The woman guides Aang through the forest as she claims that the Manhwa town is right ahead, and as they approach nearer to their destination, they plan to hide inside the vehicle near the town. Now arriving at their destination, our hero steps out the military vehicle to observe that he does not have any memory or impressions of this town from his previous life, and he also mentions that the town did not appear on the map in his time either. Stepping forward through the woods, he plans to walk in there to check out the situation from inside the town. But when he is not looking, large pointy teeth emerge from the shadows, and the woman yells out to warn Aang of the demonic threat that they are about to face. However, to her surprise, our hero is more than capable of handling such a surprise attack. Large vines protrude from the ground up as they attack the demons, and render them motionless in just the blink of an eye. The demons are slammed and held onto the ground by the vines, as our hero elaborates that he does not plan on killing them, because in doing so, more of them will come, attracted to the scent of blood. Aang urges the woman to move forward, and she joyfully agrees with sparkles in her eyes as she glares at her savior in awe. She then proceeds to rush after him, expressing that she's glad our hero gives her hope. As the duo emerges from the woods, they hide behind bushes and see that the town's gate is wide open. This makes them quite concerned, since such a sight is quite strange when you always have to watch out for demons. Just when they speculate upon the possible reason for such an event, Aang notices someone walking out while holding a corpse in their arms. The mysterious figure is revealed to be a man, who desperately makes his way out whilst holding his comrade into his arms, desperately asking for help. But his cries go unheard, as a hunting team warrior slams down on the man, striking him onto the ground. The woman observes this moment with rage filling her thoughts, as she firmly grips her gun and aims at the damned Silver Wolf. Aang urges her to calm down as he lowers her weapon, and elaborates that such an action will reveal their location. Before he can do something to help the man, his eyes catch onto a mysterious demonic hand that extends through the town's gate, and swiftly grabs hold of the helpless man. Aang and the woman gasp in utter shock, and are left speechless with their screams stuck in their throats, as they both acknowledge the presence of a demon in the town. Our hero quickly tries to assess the situation, and concludes that if there is a demon in the town, they cannot use their original plan to attack anymore. Rather, they must save everyone else that is stuck inside the gates. With the blink of an eye, Aang has seemingly vanished right in front of the woman's eyes. She stands there in a daze, before noticing her savior charge through the town's door as he strikes off the hunting team warriors. The woman rushes after our hero, asking him to wait for her as this was originally her plan. But just as she moves past the fallen warriors, her facial expressions show a look of pure horror. The reason behind such an expression is the disfigured faces of the fallen warriors, and she stops for a brief moment to look at what happened to these people. Judging from their complexion, it seems obvious that they have been dead for a number of days. The woman's eyes then look up at the sudden commotion from inside the town, as she observes the battle of the zombie-like Silver Wolf soldiers. Meanwhile, our hero charges through the horde of warriors, and takes them out in quick succession to clear the way. And acknowledging that the soldiers are corpses who have been dead this whole time, he lets loose without restraint, because there's no longer a need to hold back. Finally making his way through all the warriors that stood in his way, he exclaims that he will slaughter them all, before silently observing the black energy that leaves the corpse's body once they are defeated. He elaborates and expresses that the corpses are likely being controlled by a black string-like aura that is attached to their heads, and concludes that demons that have such unique abilities usually work alone. Noticing the black aura travel through the town as it leaves the corpse's body, he assesses that he needs to find the demon based on the aura that will guide him. And he goes off in a rush, addressing the woman as he states that he will now go and find the father-son duo, while keeping an eye out for any other survivors. The woman agrees with this statement, and our hero leaps off from rooftop to rooftop, before approaching a grim castle in the middle of the town. He exclaims that this is the place, and lands a mighty kick to the castle door to make his way through. He steps forward, but it seems not everything has gone according to plan, as is evident from our hero's face. His facial expressions harden, and he grits his teeth in frustration as the power of two-fin demon comes out, while he gazes the corpses of the father-son duo, held up by the demon. It seems our hero is too late, and he now faces off before the demon that terrorizes this poor town. The creature menacingly expresses that everything in this town belongs to him, whether it be dead or alive. And he elaborates that he had let the father and son duo live, because he wanted to play a game of cat and mouse, but they crossed the line when they attempted to escape the city. The demon now addresses the latest visitor into his castle as he slowly turns his head, and he is revealed to be a triple-fin demon with a vicious set of abilities. Our hero, too, is startled to observe the absurd number of energy crystals that are seen to be embedded into the creature. He begins to assess the situation, and wonders if the motives of the Silver Wolf hunting team had also attracted the demon here, curious to know what it wants to do with the energy crystals. The demon now slowly paces over at Aang as he acknowledges the stranger's face. On the other hand, Aang now nervously begins to step back as the demon questions if our hero is a human or one of his kind. As the bastard walks towards our hero, Aang observes the rare purple core embedded into the demon's chest, elaborating that such an energy core allows the demon of the unique ability to create illusions. He now addresses the demon, and remarks that the group of the Silver Wolf hunting team must have already been killed by him. And even if their leader had broken through to being a triple-core warrior, he did not have a chance against a triple-fin demon with such powers. The demon seems to be amused by this assessment and the mentioning of the triple-core warrior, and before our hero has a chance to dodge, the sly monster shoots at him, questioning if the stranger is ready to face him at all. Our hero is struck with a heavy blow by a mind-controlled warrior, and slides away in a desperate attempt to dodge. He then notices the corpse to be that of a triple-fin core warrior, the Silver Wolf hunting team's original squad leader. Adding to the tension, more corpses emerge from the shadows into the main hall, as the demon menacingly welcomes them and asks them to greet their guests. Aang nervously observes the situation, and concludes that the demon has gotten a hold of not only the Silver Wolf hunting team, but all of the warriors of the town. Even for someone like our hero, such a number of warriors is too much to handle by himself. The demon notices our hero's nervousness as he lets out a manic laugh, and orders his minions to welcome the stranger to his party. Without a moment's delay, the corpses rush forward to attack, as our boy is left alone to fight them all. Things have gotten a lot more trickier than expected, and it's hard to tell if Aang's current strength is enough to deal with his latest predicament. If you also want to know how he manages to overcome a triple-fin